Jaryong looks like just an average 15-year-old student from an average high school. But what no one knows is that he already solo clears dungeons while all the rich and talented students from top schools are just preparing and training before entering their first dungeon. It's illegal and dangerous, but he's doing it to pay the bills for his ill father, who used to be the strongest warrior in the world and trained him from childhood. But now he's retired and weak in this cruel world. This whole apocalypse and solo leveling thing started one day when the sky was filled with portals, allowing monsters to pour in as if they had VIP access. Later, scientists stepped in and explained that this had something to do with another world somewhere out in the universe, a world similar to Earth that was blown up. The remnants of this planet came crashing down, all heading straight for Earth. The impact left everyone completely stunned. But that wasn't all. Pieces of the other world began fusing with Earth itself. A giant tree taller than any building grew up from the ground. That marked the start of what came to be called the adhesion phenomenon. From that moment on, the world fell into chaos, with terrifying creatures hunting humans down. About 17% of Earth's surface was completely destroyed and filled with monsters. Those areas turned into massive danger zones where monsters spared no one in sight. It seemed like there was no hope for humanity, and conventional weapons couldn't help against those otherworldly monsters. But soon, humans started gaining unnatural powers too. With new skills and mythic strength, it was humanity's turn to fight back. They managed to push the monsters back into the portals. Over time, these strange breaches all over the world came to be known as dungeons, and those humans with powers were known as adventurers. And a lot of schools and academies were formed to train awakened children. Among them, the best of the best is the Adolescent Training Facility in the Republic of Korea, known for producing top-tier adventurers. For the past 25 years, they've been sending out some of the finest, and that place is none other than the world-renowned Soldier High School. Even normies talk about this school full of specialized freaks, noting how they treat dungeon dives like regular tests. What's more, these students aren't even afraid of dying, and they get official approval to enter those dangerous zones. Their confidence is just insane, which is probably why so many people want to sign up for the school in the first place. Suddenly, the two overhear a commotion from a group of girls and a crowd of students gathering to catch a glimpse of some insanely good-looking guy. Just from a glance, anyone can tell this dude is unreal, and being a mixed elf only adds to the mystery. One of the guys is completely shocked and has no idea what kind of being he's even looking at. That's when the nerdy one chimes in, saying the guy's actually pretty famous on TV too, and it's kind of weird the other hasn't heard of him. So it gets cleared up that this guy is Diav Choi, son of a famous adventurer and an elven mother. A lot of people have high hopes for him, thinking he's a genius who will easily land in the top 10 ranks by the time he graduates. At just 17, Diav is a first-year student at Soldier High and has already tried entering dungeons 14 times. Even so, his friend doesn't really get what all the hype is about, especially since Diav isn't some idol or celebrity. While they're chatting, the nerdy kid turns to Jaryong and asks if he's working today. He brings up something about a karaoke place where Lee Yoonji went with her group, but Jaryong, focused on his phone, doesn't seem interested in things like that and just says they can go have fun without him. The normies try to get Jaryong to hang out with them after the exam, but this busy bee shrugs it off and ditches them again, promising to catch up with them next week. Later on, people start to wonder why Jaryong is doing all of this. Turns out, he's got a sick parent at home, and the medical bills keep stacking up. So even when he doesn't feel like it, work keeps calling him back. Meanwhile, Diav, right in the middle of getting snapped by paparazzi, notices Jaryong walking out. One of Diav's guards leans in and quietly asks if the boss has a problem with that kid, but Diav brushes it off, saying he's just imagining things. Jaryong, even though he's not in the mood, drags himself to an old abandoned station, where the broker, Im Jaewon, introduces a new client. The moment the client sees him, he flips out, yelling at Jaewon for not assigning his best person for the job. Calmly but firmly, Jaewon tells him that Jaryong is the best. Still, the client isn't buying it, and makes it clear he's not looking to get scammed. He says straight up he only wants top-tier talent, and in his eyes, Jaryong's not it. This bald, loud-mouthed client demands someone else, threatening consequences if he doesn't get what he wants. Suddenly, Jaryong turns to the big guy standing next to the noisy client and asks if he's an adventurer, because honestly, he's starting to feel sorry for the guy. The guy calls him stupid for defending the baldy, clearly not impressed. That's when the big shot speaks up, saying a broken arm or leg should be enough to teach the brat a lesson. That man is Lee Pilgyu, a former silver rank adventurer who's made it back from the dungeon at least 81 times. The broker quickly advises Jaryong to get on his knees before things get ugly. But instead, Jaryong powers up and tells them straight he doesn't know how to beg. That's Yu Jaryong, Dongkang High's first dungeon smuggler, who's made an illegal return from the dungeon 371 times. When it comes to the most dangerous criminals who put the world at risk, dungeon smuggling is at the top of the list. It all starts when adventurers break the vow they made before entering the dungeon. After clearing out all the monsters, they go on to search for the hidden treasures buried deep inside. Once they get their hands on the loot, they head for the exit. But that's when the inspectors step in to check everything. The reason is simple. Those treasures often hold massive power. If even one of them slips through without being checked, it could fall into the wrong hands and cause chaos beyond imagination. Because of this very reason, the Adventurers Association always inspects and registers the items first, then sends them off while applying taxes based on their value. That part really stings for adventurers, seeing their hard-earned treasure get chipped away by taxes. Among them are those who break the rules and find sneaky ways to work the system illegally. These people convince adventurers who hate paying taxes to smuggle items for them. If these pocket treasures go undetected, society takes a major hit. That's why the association encourages everyone to report these shady people and stay out of that mess. Right as MJ1 lights a cigarette, Baldy glares at him, clearly annoyed that he's letting a couple of adventurers with temper issues spar inside their hideout. Baldy lets the broker know that Pilgu didn't get kicked out because of his injuries, but for assaulting his own teammates. The guy could choke out anyone who dared to go up against him. On top of that, Baldy warns the broker not to expect this gorilla to go easy on the kid, since they might end up having to clean up his corpse afterward. While stretching his body, Jaryong doesn't give a damn about Pilgu's hobby of assaulting teammates. He casually asks if the guy's actually a criminal, though Jaryong knows he's not really in a position to be asking questions. Pilgu, flashing a sinister grin, says the pathetic guy was dragging him down, so he just took care of that trash. For a second, Jaryong is confused, not really getting what this jerk is trying to say. Then he figures Pilgu's calling himself trash, and the broker can't help but smirk at the joke. Jaryong figures Pilgu's trashy attitude is probably what pushed him to throw away his license on purpose. Right in the middle of the talk, Pilgu snaps and nearly smashes his face with a crushing punch. But Jaryong, cool as ever, dodges it without flinching and says it's pretty rude to attack someone without warning. That's gotta sting the big guy, whose anger shoots through the roof. As the gorilla charges at him, Jaryong decides it's payback time and lands a rock-solid kick right to its face. Baldy's jaw drops watching his guard get beaten down by a kid. The broker, wearing a sinister grin, reminds Baldy again that he told him he was bringing in his best and most skilled man, and that's Jaryong. Pilgu can't even snap out of the shock from that kick to his gums. Meanwhile, Jaryong honestly expected this so-called big shot to be way tougher, but the disappointment is real. Little did this trash know, he seriously messed up by brushing off the smuggling teen as just another kid. What really sets Jaryong apart from the rest isn't just his guts, but his insane reflexes and the raw power behind his kick. Pilgu, now shaken, can already tell this brat's strength is creeping into pro territory. The broker watches with a smirk, figuring the big guy finally realized his chances of winning are close to zero. It's just not his day. Still, Baldy tries to play it cool, pointing out that the kid might be top-notch, but that is just one kick. When Baldy tries spitting some facts about Pilgu, the broker already figures out that the big guy was a tank. Baldy's a little shocked to see just how sharp the broker's eyes are. Meanwhile, Pilgu's fired up and ready to teach this brat a lesson, insisting that no cheap trick will change the fact that Jaryong's just a smuggler scum. Right then, he lets out a surge of power, ready to show Jaryong what he's really made of. After the adhesion phenomenon, people began awakening abilities that pushed past normal human limits. Everyone ended up with different builds and unique talents, which eventually led to the discovery of various latent abilities. From that point on, adventurers started going through training based on the skills they awakened, and got assigned roles that matched, like the tank. Pilgu starts showing off with a full-on display of his bulk-up, iron skin, and giant strength. Jaryong pretends to be all impressed, acting like he's amazed by Pilgu's power burst. The tank's role is all about protecting teammates from the dangers of a dungeon. Basically, they're the frontliners, the ones who stand face-to-face with monsters and keep their squad safe. Their bodies, trained to the absolute limit, are so tough that they can shrug off bullets from regular personal weapons without breaking a sweat. In times of war, those top-tier tanks can easily withstand the overwhelming firepower of missiles, since they act like a walking barrier. Jaryong is honestly surprised to see what a real adventurer looks like. Just as Pilgu is about to crush him, the kid hops out of the way, leaving Baldy stunned to his core. The broker pops out of nowhere to catch Baldy, who was close to collapsing. Spotting the two about to throw hands again, the broker wonders if these weirdos are seriously about to make a mess on someone else's turf. Meanwhile, Jaryong locks eyes with Pilgu, giving him a stare that screams business. First, he dodges a solid punch from the big guy who punches a hole straight through the wall. The gorilla actually has the nerve to ask why Jaryong isn't pulling those cheap tricks like before, but the lad just lets him know he's not dumb enough to fall for an obvious trap. The broker, on the side, is taking mental notes of Pilgu's raw strength, guessing it's around the impact of a decent-sized truck. One hit and bones are getting pulverized. Just then, the broker yells out to Jaryong to wrap this mess up already, warning him that any more damage to the place means his pay's getting cut. The gorilla, still ticked off, tells Jaryong that those cheap tricks won't work against a pro like him, but the chill dude's ready to prove him dead wrong, gripping the metal rod like he's just getting started. That cocky attitude flips Pilgu's lid, and now the madman's charging straight at Jaryong, looking to end this once and for all. To the public, tanks seem invincible because of their extreme durability, but even they have a clear-cut weakness. That's why they're naturally vulnerable to anyone who can concentrate destructive power into a single point. Damage dealers, for instance, have no problem breaking through defenses like that. So when Pilgu lunges at Jaryong, the kid's already waiting with a metal rod in hand, ready to land the final blow. One clean strike, and the so-called gorilla is coughing up blood. Baldy looks like he's having a stroke from the shock, while the broker just grins like he expected it all along. Bleeding from the mouth, Pilgu growls and demands to know where Jaryong learned to swing like that. But Jaryong just shrugs and says he's mistaken, though he figures that guy must have seen that kind of move before, maybe from his dad. Most adventurers are split into 4 basic ranks based on their experience and abilities: Gemstone, Copper class, Silver class, and Gold class. Each rank comes with perks like dungeon access, tax benefits, and more. But the top 100 adventurers, the rankers, are in a league of their own, and they're assigned special color ranks beyond the usual system. Taking a trip down memory lane, little Jaryong always looked up to his dad as the greatest adventurer, and not just because he was his father. He used to sneak peeks at his bulky old man training out in the field. His dad's name was Yu Xiong, one of the first-generation heroes, also known as the first-ever adventurers. For people who haven't witnessed the tragedies from back then, the history of the first generation feels more like a legendary tale. In battles that came without any warning, those first adventurers took heavy losses, one after another, and Jaryong's father was there to see it all. For them, it was a living hell. On top of that, they had a huge need for intel, but barely had any solid information to deal with the chaos. No one had a clue what dungeons were truly capable of, or even what kind of monsters were hiding in there. When they first stepped in, those early heroes had to fight creatures like Gekameloth. Sure, by today's standards, those monsters might be easy to beat, but back then, for the first generation who weren't prepared at all, they were seen as terrifying unknown disasters. Back then, Yu Xiong fought fearlessly against those monsters using nothing but his metal rod. It was a time when there were no such things as skills to help in battle, no flashy powers or special abilities, just pure grit. The impact of the fight was so intense that the rod's titanium, which already had low erosion resistance, started to melt. Even common items weren't all that common in those days. Through clenched teeth and sheer determination, Yu Xiong faced the beast alone, gripping his metal rod tightly. In those desperate conditions, he held firm and swung with all his strength, landing the final blow that brought the monster down. The first-generation adventurers went through countless trials and errors, putting their lives on the line. One day, when reinforcements finally arrived through the tunnel, they were left speechless by the sight of Xiong sitting calmly after taking down the monster. The survivors from those early battles passed on their experience and achievements to the next generation, earning the title of heroes. Jaryong's father became known as the Dragon Slayer Yu Xiong after defeating and killing a dragon. The day he slayed that beast, people were absolutely blown away, and he rose to become Asia's top-ranking adventurer. Jaryong looked up to his father with deep respect and admiration, watching him train with excitement and awe. To him, his dad was invincible until the day he coughed up blood. The cause turned out to be poison. Seeing that happen crushed Jaryong, and he cried his eyes out. During an exploration, Yu Xiong came across a lethal poison. Just like every other time, he tried to push through and overcome it. When he got admitted to the hospital, his body couldn't handle it anymore, and he started puking blood often. All that overworking and pushing himself through hell had finally caught up to him, and after decades of living like that, his body was completely worn out. The colleagues he once trusted with his life took advantage of his weakness and stole his fortune and achievements. That betrayal hit hard and pushed him into a full-blown mental crisis. For a long time, he suffered both mentally and physically. Many years later, his son Jaryong came to visit him after school. By then, the world had already started to forget the Dragon Slayer Yu Xiong, and his father's hair had turned completely white. He no longer carried the presence of a hero. Struggling with an incurable poison and having lost everything, his life had taken a heavy toll. He was no longer the hero he once was. Only a forgotten adventurer remained. That memory flash only brought pain, and Jaryong let go of the metal rod, walking away while Pilgyu was still knocked out cold. Baldy couldn't believe his eyes, watching Pilgyu lose to a kid. The broker didn't think much of it. He never believed Pilgyu was that big of a deal anyway. As Jaryong walked out, he muttered loud enough to be heard that bragging about beating your own teammate is a clear sign of weakness. And that, right there, happens to be one of the two reasons why good adventurers call it quits. To Baldy, Jaryong casually mentions the two reasons why a good adventurer retires. Either their body can't handle the grind anymore, or they end up dying during an expedition. He also tells Baldy just to fire him if he's getting paid more than minimum wage, since anyone can act tough for a moment. The broker smoothly slides into his business talk, saying the pay for the job just doubled. Baldy tries to lash out, but broker shuts him down quickly, reminding the guy that he was the one who stirred up the fight in the first place. They don't exactly run a charity. Realizing he can't argue back, Baldy steps in line and signs off on the order. Later, Jaryong's just chilling and sipping water when Broker suddenly drops a bomb, asking if he's heard of the Imperial Wasp. That's enough to make Jaryong spit out his drink, shocked, asking if they seriously have to go up against that thing. Because yeah, that's kind of a lot. The Imperial Wasp is one of the most dangerous monsters in the entire world. It built its nest in Uedo, which eventually turned into Korea's Demon Realm, known for having the highest level of difficulty. Even top-ranking adventurers find it insanely hard to take on just one of these wasps. J1 thinks this kind of mission is way beyond some smuggle-level brat, especially since those things are flying around completely unchecked. But for a white-rank adventurer, the situation might be different. According to Baldy, who's currently crushing Pilgyu under his foot, a huge raid went down yesterday, but the public hasn't heard a thing. Turns out the government army and 7 white-rank adventurers teamed up to form an elite attack squad. When asked, Jaewon confirmed that those 7 are Korea's biggest stars. Just 2 of them showing up is enough to make the media lose their minds. More importantly, he reveals that while the attack squad failed their main mission of complete eradication, they did manage to hunt down the Queen Bee. But here's where it gets wild. One of the 7 actually stole the Imperial Wasp's royal jelly. Not only that, they had a subordinate in the squad smuggle it out. When asked about it, Broker explains that the jelly is a powerful nutritional supplement used to feed a newborn queen. But what really doesn't sit right with him is why a white-rank adventurer would stoop so low as to smuggle it out like some black market thief. There have only been a handful of times when royal jelly has ever been found in the world. And the craziest part? If a human eats it, they can literally come back from the dead. That piece of intel hit Jaryong the hardest. On a side note, one of the 4 adventurer categories is called Gemstone. It's a temporary license granted with the association's permission, allowing someone to enter dungeons of any level. The pathways leading into the dungeon are said to be strictly monitored, or at least, that's what the government and the Adventurers Association claim. But Jaewon knows better. There's no truth to those claims at all. Standing before a massive door covered in ancient spells, he channels his mana and blows it open with a burst. He warns Jaryong not to get clumsy and end up losing his life in there, especially since this part of the job is going to be particularly annoying. Right then, the brat pulls up his black mask, while Broker casually blows smoke right into his face. Jaryong tells him to knock it off. Apparently, Jaewon caught him zoning out and had to snap him back to reality. Jaryong dismissed thoughts of the drug that could revive the dead, deciding there was no point in dwelling on it since such claims always end up being exaggerated. Deep down, Jaryong knows that even if there were an antidote said to be the best in the world, it still wouldn't be enough to save his father. If something like that truly existed, his father wouldn't have let go of hope. Just then, the massive door creaks open, and a flash of light hits his face. As he steps through the entrance, he takes in the surroundings. After the phenomenon known as adhesion, dungeons began appearing all over the earth. In Korea, there are two of the most notorious. The first is in Jeju-do, where a dungeon is merged with the volcanic mountain range. The second is in Uido, once the heart of Seoul, now known as former Boromai, a D-rank dungeon fused with the Igar jungle. With Uido at the center, the dungeon spread out and swallowed up the surrounding districts, Mapo, Yongsan, and Yeongdongpo. Even now, a large portion of the area remains unexplored, and countless adventurers continue to lose their lives trying to uncover its secrets. Apparently, one of their subordinates somehow traveled from Uido to Boremi D, but after reaching the meeting point, he completely lost contact. Jaryong figures the guy might have run off with the prize, but it's more likely he got hurt or ran into trouble along the way. Jaewon did mention his lackey stumbling into all sorts of crap trying to make it out. Either way, the broker hands Jaryong his mission. If he finds the item the guy had, he needs to retrieve it. Basically, he wants the brat to stay focused and not get distracted. Jaryong shoots Jaewon a smirk and asks if he really thinks he'd run away. The broker doesn't think the kid is that dumb, but he still wants him to be extra careful. He also reminds the bonehead that royal jelly from a sky wasp is insanely valuable. With that, the pro smuggler dives into the adventure, hearing Jaewon's final warning that it's not just humans willing to risk their lives for that stuff. As he drops to the ground, he expects the forest to smell like it too, but that's when his eyes catch something unexpected. Giant footprints pressed into the earth. He's certain of one thing now: the scent is going to attract all sorts of things. Meanwhile, deeper in the forest, a girl is running at full speed, gasping for breath and trying to hide. This girl is Jin Seram, a first-year student at Warrior High, currently facing the most stressful situation of her life. What was supposed to be a simple dungeon trip for her midterm has completely gone off the rails. Fate had other plans, because now she's being hunted by a terrifying giant anomaly that's way too close for comfort. She should have never run into this kind of monster. Even so, she's doing everything she can to dodge her fate, but there's something weird about the air around her. The test was supposed to be a basic one. Just collect as many coins as possible scattered throughout the dungeon within the time limit. Even though the test was designed to mimic actual combat in a low-rank dungeon, it should have been easy because the area was known as a beginner's training ground. Though she ran out of luck pretty darn fast when this freak of nature titan suddenly found Seram, this place was supposed to be swarming with weak monsters that had low-level intelligence. But the moment her eyes met the titans, it practically felt like her soul was leaving her body. The monster started charging straight at her with the clear intent to crush her, and Seram, completely overwhelmed, already knew there was no way to escape. At that point, all she had left was a tiny bit of hope. Either that or some kind of miracle. With no other option, she grabbed her bow and got ready to fight back. The Titan ape, still just a juvenile but ranked at a 3-star dungeon level, did nothing but glare and growl at her. She jumped into the air and fired off a bunch of arrows at the freak of nature, but he blocked them like they were nothing. This whole thing is starting to scare her even more. Suddenly, the Titan ape slams his fist into the ground, but Seram hops out of the way just in time. She fires another arrow, already knowing it's useless since none of her shots have enough power to pierce through the ape's thick skin. On top of that, this freak doesn't even bother dodging or blocking. He just takes the hits like they mean nothing. Still, she keeps hoping for just one chance where he lets his guard down. Getting a little closer, she powers herself up with a fiery boost. Seram is a magic ranger, a class that lets her infuse magic into her arrow tips, and now she activates flame bombardment, which draws from nearly limitless magic. As her last resort, she chooses to go all in with an explosion of the highest power she can manage, enough to take down any monster with a danger rank of 3 stars. That's true, but the catch is she actually has to land the shot, and if this ape freak keeps dodging, then it's all for nothing. She can't believe how this creep can even see through her attacks, and now she's got nothing left. The only thing left on her list is to run away from this beast. Just as the freak charges at her full speed, ready to smash her down, that's when Jaryong suddenly drops in on this freaky mess. Bronze-class adventurers just got their fresh licenses and finally got permission to enter low-rank dungeons. Seram's jaw drops when she sees some dude pop out of nowhere and smack his metal rod right into the Titan ape's chin. And just like that, the nature's freak is down. Jaryong's chilling up on a tree branch, but he knows that hit wasn't nearly enough after catching a glimpse of the Titan's hideous face. As the Titan ape charges at him again, Jaryong calmly loads some kind of mysterious tool in his gear and dives straight down. Seram's brain is practically exploding in shock as she watches this crazy idiot go for a full-on frontal assault like he actually thinks he's got a chance. Meanwhile, the Titan is all set to let loose like a cannon, ready to smash that guy's face in. Seiram's absolutely sure this mysterious dude is done for. Right then, Jaryong tells Seiram to close her eyes while he and the Titan are just seconds away from colliding. As they get inches apart, Jaryong's gun flashes right at the hideous ape, and he closes his eyes too. A burst of lightning shoots out, lighting up the Titan's entire body, leaving him stunned like a statue. Jaryong lands on the ground and starts whining about how his bottle's running low now since he used up the whole stunning torch on this giant thing. The stunning torch is made from the scales of the flickering fish that lives in deep-sea dungeons, and has this insane ability to paralyze whatever it hits, especially for how cheap it is. It used to be a super popular tool that tons of adventurers loved, but because of how powerful it was, and how poorly some people used it, a lot of adventurers ended up losing their abilities. Now, the whole thing is strictly forbidden to use or even produce. Seiram steps forward, trying to talk things out with this mysterious guy. He tells her bluntly to take responsibility for her own life, since she only had a few seconds left back there. The guy knows that if an adventurer isn't paying attention to what's going on inside a dungeon and isn't directly targeted, others usually won't step in to help. One big reason is that adventurers are often seen as cockroaches, just like how a broker once revealed that the bounty on a smuggler's head is pretty decent. If a smuggler causes trouble, they're just about ready to be crushed like bugs. Suddenly, he notices Seiram thinking of coming closer, but Jaryong dials up his speed and vanishes from her sight in a flash. She's stunned, and he was right there a second ago. Out of nowhere, the guy jumps on her, pins her down, and starts checking her out like he's trying to figure out what her deal is. Seiram says she just wanted to thank him for saving her life, but Jaryong clearly doesn't buy it and thinks this girl is trying to play him for a fool. Seiram comes clean and admits she already knows Jaryong is a smuggler, which is exactly why she's got a job for him. This weirds him out for a moment, but more importantly, he spots a familiar logo on her shirt. He, letting out a sigh, mutters to himself that he's not planning to overlook this a third time. He didn't care about the crazy antics of a spoiled high schooler. Not to mention, Jaryong's more than ready to send her straight to the grave if she dares get in his way again. But the bounty on smugglers is 50 million won, and the bounty for poachers is 400,005,000 won. Jaryong looks like he's about to explode. But then his eyes suddenly catch sight of Enkel's blood, a rare and precious tool that's almost impossible to buy, though 5 smugglers like him could probably afford one. Surprisingly, this girl calls it a down payment and says she'll pay the rest if he helps her with her midterms. Jaryong thinks this is totally insane, especially coming from a girl he thought was just some spoiled brat. Now he's starting to figure she's filthy rich, but clearly out of her mind. The girl tells him none of that should matter except for the Enkil's blood, which could seriously change his life. Jaryong kind of saw this coming and realizes he never really had a reason to kill her in the first place. Seiram doesn't get what he's rambling about, and just as a creepy shadow looms over them, he reminds her that she really only has a few seconds left. The Titan ape is about to crush them. Just in time, both of them leap out of the way. Jaryong yells at her, saying he didn't give her a chance just so she could throw it away. Right then, he tells her to do that fiery strike she pulled off earlier. He insists the girl cast the spell at the end of his staff and toss it back to him. But right then, panic hits her as she suddenly remembers she's completely drained. There's not even a pinch of magic left in her. Jaryong snaps at her to figure it out fast, because there's no way he can keep the Titan's attention off her with just his bare hands for much longer. Even with all the tension, Seiram does her best to channel what little magic she has left into his staff, but it's barely a quarter of her full power. She's almost certain it won't even scratch the monster's thick skin. Fear starts creeping in, and for a moment, she seriously considers running away on her own while the dude keeps the Titan gorilla busy. Still, she throws the magic-infused staff at Jaryong, and although he catches it, he looks a bit disappointed that she only managed a quarter of her power. That's when it's Jaryong's turn to fuse his own magic into the staff and take things to the next level. Students at Warrior High School have heard it a dozen times. Brute strength alone isn't enough to take down a monster. What matters is timing and precision. Seiram's jaw drops in shock as she watches the spectacle unfold. In a blink, Jaryong slashes across the Titan ape's face, setting it on fire. The blast shatters his goggles, but his grin says he's satisfied. Silver-class adventurers, returned from more than 50 dungeons, have proven they can handle monsters ranked 3 stars. Even so, they aren't allowed into intermediate-ranked dungeons without special clearance. Commonly, adventurers belong to this rank. At dusk, a bunch of kids pour out of school, chatting and laughing, when a little girl catches sight of a man dressed in black standing beside a sleek car. Little Seiram waves goodbye to her friends and quietly slips into the car. Her friends, watching from behind, can't help but feel a bit envious. After all, she seems to have everything she could ever want. And honestly, it's not far from the truth. If her eyes land on something, there's a good chance it'll be hers in no time. That's the kind of life you get when you're the daughter of Jinsung Group, the 4th-ranked business in South Korea. This powerful family had a successor who ended up getting engaged to an elf from another world. From that union, Jin Seiram was born, a girl who admired adventurers deeply and dreamed of becoming one more than anyone else. But her dream took a hit when a big guy bluntly told her that her elf blood was too weak, so she should just live like a regular human. That same guy even had a talk with Seiram's father, urging him to stop letting her chase a fantasy and help her face reality. But her father, Jin Sung-gyu, the head of the Special Development Department at Jinsung Group, made it clear he was fully supporting her choice and cheering her on. Jinsung says that elven talent isn't necessary to become an adventurer, so it has nothing to do with Seiram's choice. The blonde coach agrees she's not too bad either, for a human, but even then, Seiram is still just a bit above average. He also points out that Jinsung's daughter isn't exactly from a normal family. It's true this girl doesn't know when to quit, just like her sister. Still, he can't place her in the same league as those monster rank humans. That said, if Seiram keeps pushing forward, she could actually reach a decent level, one that brings praise and recognition for a regular human. Plus, she's got plenty of things making up for her lack of natural talent, like her wealth, name, and bloodline. He thinks her efforts will be pointless, and people will either envy or mock her, leading to her isolation. And honestly, he's pretty sure Seiram won't be able to handle that for very long. Talent isn't something that just falls out of the sky or something you get lucky with. Seiram's completely stunned after seeing Jaryong take down the Titan ape with just one clean slash. He casually walks off like it's no big deal, while Seiram just stands there, her face frozen in disbelief. She can't wrap her head around how someone around her age could pull off something that insane. Meanwhile, Jaryong suddenly remembers that the broker gave him those goggles and told him not to break the expensive item. Yet here he is, already smashing them in his very first fight with the Titan ape. Jaryong believes it's a clear-cut 5001 item, something you'd find at Daiso. However, the broker says it can stop facial recognition, change your voice, and even has over 4 magic spells on it. Jaryong's seriously annoyed since nothing about this day is going his way. Just when he thinks it can't get worse, Seiram goes and asks if he's a sunbae from her school. That sets him off even more, and now he's demanding the price she owes him. Without missing a beat, she hands over the Enkel's blood necklace. While he's checking to see if it's the real deal, Seiram casually asks if he needs more money. She's cool with him not being enrolled in any school, since she knows how expensive the Adventurer Education Center can be. Still, she says she's willing to cover his tuition, but Jaryong cuts her off, saying flat out that he's never attended any school or even been near one. That leaves one big question in Seiram's head. She wants to know who taught him to fight. Jaryong gives it to her straight. He taught himself. Seiram's mind short-circuits a little because that answer is just too blunt for her to handle. Seiram can't even deal with the answer he gave her, refusing to believe that some regular guy could teach himself such sharp moves and perfect timing. She starts yelling like a cranky old twit, but Jaryong shuts her up by slapping a tag on her face, which only makes her lose it more. But then she looks at the tag and sees it's his identity card, Yu Jaryong from Donggang High School. He casually mentions that it's just a regular humanities school. Seiram is absolutely shocked, since this is not the kind of truth she was hoping to find. Jaryong then asks her for her identity card in return. She hands it over, and he sees she's the same age as him. The card reads Jin Seiram of Warrior High School. While he slips her student card back into her pocket, she freaks out, but he just reminds her she said something about having a job for him or whatever. She demands to see his identity card too, just to make sure he doesn't bail on her later. Out of nowhere, Jaryong tells her to come closer, then suddenly wraps his arms around her. It makes her blush, but for him, this is just his way of sealing the deal. No contract, just a little smuggler-style proof of being partners in crime. He reminds her that an accomplice gets the same punishment as the smuggler himself. That's when Seiram gets serious chills, realizing she's gotten herself tangled up with someone way more dangerous than she thought. Jaryong's sly, Dracula-like grin is all the proof she needs. She knows it's already too late to back out or slam the brakes, because from here on out, there's no turning back. The gold class is given to those who've taken down a 4-star monster or have major accomplishments under their belt. They're allowed to enter lower-ranked dungeons and are considered elites, part of the top 10%. After snapping a selfie with the dead Titan ape, Jaryong gets back to business and starts talking pricing. He asks what exactly Seiram wants him to do. After thinking it over, she mutters that she needs him to collect coins. The task is to gather all the scattered coins within a 6-hour time limit across various locations inside the testing center. On top of that, she also needs to find a specific coin box in one of the locations and prove she's really a student. For now, she's found 1 coin already and just needs 1 more to pass the whole thing. That sounds doable to Jaryong, until she says the second coin is at the old ruins of the Eugene Mall. That catches him off guard, because it's the exact place he's heading to for his own mission. Seiram gets hit with a wave of shock at the thought of the Imperial Wasp, but Jaryong casually clears it up. It's not the wasp, just some honey stuff or royal jelly. He mentions it has a strong smell that draws in monsters, like the Titan ape. He still plans to head over there and asks if she knows any other locations with coins, but she's got nothing else. All the other coins must have already been taken by the other teams. That's when it finally clicks for Jaryong why she's out here all alone while everyone else is in groups. Jaryong says that works for him, but if an emergency comes up and he ends up doing extra work, then he's definitely charging more. He also checks if Seiram has the strength to run, and once she nods, he flashes ahead with the girl doing her best to keep up. Meanwhile, the weirdo quietly regrets not asking for more money. Then the bimbo throws out a question, wondering if he really taught himself completely. He admits it wasn't entirely self-taught. Just as he's about to spill something from his childhood, he spots 2 monsters casually lurking up ahead. Right away, he tells her to get ready, because they're about to face Claws Raptors, a native species to what used to be Boramaidong, and classified as 2-star monsters. Just as she gets her guard up, she realizes this guy doesn't seem like someone who got professional training. Apparently Yu Jaryong has this power because he's used to risking his life. but there's one exception. Back in his childhood, he used to closely watch his father's precise movements, and from that, he managed to learn 3 techniques. As Jaryong steps up to face the Claws Raptor, he gets into position. The first movement is called Needle, a strike that needs full speed, power, and weight, all focused on stabbing the enemy's vital point. Just like that, Jaryong flashes back to the Titan ape fight in Seram's mind, where he slammed his metal rod into the beast with pinpoint accuracy, making it cough up blood. It's a simple-looking move, but not something easy to pull off. It takes real experience, sharp instinct, and raw talent, something even top-tier adventurers struggle to pull off. But Yu Jaryong nailed it perfectly. Meanwhile, Seram figures that Claws Raptors usually move in groups of at least 5. That's when Jaryong chimes in, saying she's not the only one who's taken hits because of the royal jelly, which means there are probably way more vicious monsters hanging around the ruins. With the chance of running into one of those, Jaryong decides to take a short break before stepping into the danger zone. Seram agrees but circles back to the question she didn't get to finish earlier. Once again, she asks if he ever got personal training as a kid. Not looking her in the eye, he says he just watched someone train for a long time. That hits her pretty hard because she thought she was being slick, trying to dig out some big secret, but it turns out to just be a couple of copied moves. She blurts out that she doesn't like him at all, and Jaryong's left confused, not understanding where that even came from. Just then, Seram tosses something golden at Jaryong, and he catches it reflexively. It turns out to be a stamina ample C-type, which usually sells for around 1 million won. She tells him to drink it since he's clearly running low on stamina. Jaryong teases her, saying a gesture like that definitely says something about whether she likes him or not. She seems like the type to hide her feelings behind sharp words, but instead of drinking it, he casually slips it into his pocket, which completely throws her off. What's even stranger is that he plans to sell it later, like it's the most obvious thing to do. She snaps at him, asking if he even realizes how expensive that stuff is. That's when he explains that on the black market, it could easily go for at least 1 million won. Seram just can't figure out how this weirdo thinks. Jaryong says they should get going since she already chugged hers, so there's no reason to waste time resting. From his point of view, this rich, spoiled brat is just plain weird. On their way to the Eugene Mall, Jaryong decides they need to revise the plan a bit, just to stay safe. He makes it clear that their goal is simple, which is to grab what they need and get out without picking a fight or becoming prey. He's firm about sticking to the rules. He wants Seram to move on his command and stay strong, no matter what kind of monsters are waiting inside. Even though he knows Seram has gone through some special training, he points out that his strength lies in survival skills, which is why he wants her to trust him. Meanwhile, Seram can't quite explain this eerie feeling creeping up on her. Just half a year ago, she was a total outsider at school, and now this is her first dungeon run with someone at her side. As they finally step into the Eugene Mall, something instantly grabs their attention. Their minds nearly short-circuit when they realize what they're looking at. Even Jaryong, when asked, admits he has no idea what this is. It's a brutal scene where the monster remains scattered all over the mall floor like a full-on bloodbath. Right inside the grave-like walls of the Eugene Mall, it becomes clear that humans are far braver than they give themselves credit for. They're the kind of beings who, with the right resolve, can face just about anything head-on. Still, the horrifying scene inside is starting to get to both Jaryong and Seram. The sheer sight of the monster sprawled across the floor has Seram standing there with her jaw practically hitting the ground. It's a mess no one could have predicted. And now, only unexpected circumstances that things go way off from their original plan could change how this plays out. He's pretty sure these monsters aren't even native to this area, and they're dangerous enough to give even pro adventurers a hard time. Seram is quietly panicking, wondering what kind of nightmare could be hiding deeper inside that caused all this destruction. Suddenly, Jaryong warns her not to lose her head, because whatever's in here is seriously dangerous. He figures she must have sensed something from the start, and the only real shock is just how much messier things turned out to be. Then, just like that, she spots something moving, and Jaryong instantly raises his guard. Out of nowhere, a slasher lip, a 5-star ranked monster, bursts onto the scene like a twisted reveal. The smooth operator Jaryong swings his metal staff to take it down, but the hideous thing leaps into the air and wraps its freakishly long tongue around his weapon. In one slick move, the slasher lip yanks the staff away and goes in to slam Jaryong, but Jaryong's already airborne, aiming a rock-solid kick right at the monster's face. As he kicks, Seram stays right at the back, ready for his orders. After kicking that trash, Seram tells Jaryong that that's one scary thing with such a high survivability. Then Jaryong comes clean that it kept him alive for a reason, and it's all on purpose. He explains that if someone has a stroke of bad luck to enter this place, this can serve as a warning alarm. Turns out, Slasher Lip has the feature of screaming to alarm its allies if the monster is at risk of death. Even while still in shock, Seram demands to know who this thing is alarming. Out of the blue, a guy shows up and casually claims that it's probably reacting to him. He says the whole cleanup job wore him out, so that mess was kind of his doing. Seram is stunned to see another adventurer just hanging around, but something about this guy instantly puts Jaryong on edge. The new guy, on the other hand, finds it odd to see two youngsters acting like smugglers in a place like this. Then he catches a glimpse of the symbol on Serom's shirt and jumps down without hesitation. He asks if they're students from Warrior High School. When they confirm it, the guy mutters that it's really unfortunate they're about to die in a place like this. Things start getting real intense, real fast for Serom. Jaryong quickly reminds her that this guy isn't just some regular adventurer, he's a full-on villain. He warns her not to waste time chatting with someone who clearly showed up to kill him and steal the royal jelly. Jaryong makes it clear that this guy has nothing to do with his commissioner, then demands to know how he plans to deal with someone else's stuff without even asking. The so-called bad guy just shrugs it off, saying consequences only matter if you get caught. Besides, he claims his luck's been pretty great ever since he heard about his buddy's recent smuggling scheme for a high-value item. Turns out, this guy originally had a plan to ambush his own comrade, but he failed to finish the job and could only confirm that the guy managed to escape. Unfortunately for him, his bad luck led him right here, since his comrade happened to choose one of the smuggling spots. That's when Jaryong realizes the reason he lost contact wasn't because of the sky wasp's poison, but because of this wicked bastard. Even without a single clash, Jaryong can feel it deep in his bones that this guy is a way bigger threat. The madman promises to kill them on the spot, but swears to make it a little less painful. There's no doubt now, this opponent is on a whole different level compared to someone like Pilgyu. Jaryong quickly tells Serom to look for the coins and make a safe exit while he buys some time. He also reassures her that there won't be any more danger lurking around, since this lunatic has already wiped out almost everything. As the madman gets inches away from Jaryong, the smooth operator coldly says that her presence here doesn't change a thing. As they clash, he yells at the bimbo to make a swift exit, because she needs to be alive to give his payment. As Serom heads out, the madman says it wasn't a smart move, claiming that sticking together gives a better shot at survival. But Jaryong calls that total bullshit and charges up his power, ready to clash with this villain guy. After reading his sword pattern, Jaryong smoothly leaps into the air and slams his foot right into the guy's face before he even sees it coming. The bastard is stunned, completely caught off guard that this kid tricked him into using his gear. He honestly never expected this youngling to pack such serious power, way above the average pro. That surprise pushes him to take the fight seriously now, especially if he wants to deal with the girl from Warrior High School. He also makes it clear to Jaryong that it won't take long to finish him off, as he transforms into something vicious and deadly. That's Yang Dogyun, a gold-class adventurer. Back in the hideout, the water's boiled, and the broker casually enjoys his cup of noodles while telling Baldy to sit down, since Pilgyu isn't waking up anytime soon. Baldy's pissed, ranting about how this gorilla couldn't even lift his own weight after all the money he dumped into him. He's fed up with this loafer who talked big, bragged about being a former adventurer, and had the nerve to walk around like he owned the place. The broker tells him to chill, saying Pilgyu lost because he had to, even if he sucks. Jaewon chimes in, pointing out that people always forget adventurers aren't trained to fight humans. In Pilgyu's defense, he probably only had experience in hunting and exploring, not one-on-one combat. Plus, the guy he fought didn't even know him, and it's honestly normal to lose against a smuggler. Baldy snaps that adventurers do fight each other, and the broker agrees. He explains that the higher they climb, the more valuable the locations get, which means the chances of fights breaking out get way higher. Even comrades who've got each other's backs end up tempted by greed and stab each other in the back. Baldy couldn't believe they killed each other, but the broker told him it was true that dungeons have no rules, no matter what happens. Broker also reveals that they can always just say a monster killed the guy, and they don't even need an alibi for that. The higher the adventurer's rank, the more training they need for potential fights. That's why Pilgyu's class wasn't enough to take this guy down, and it ended the way it did. Assaulting a comrade might sound dramatic, but seeing how easily the gorilla got caught just shows it was a light scuffle outside a dungeon. That kind of fight doesn't involve full gear like armor or weapons meant for hunting. Sure, it's not always a game changer, but if Pilgyu had been geared up, he could have at least put up a decent fight. When asked about it, Jaewon explains that equipment holds up to half the combat power of an adventurer. Meanwhile, back at Eugene Mall, Jaryong's sweating bullets because Dogyun didn't even dodge his attack. His kick landed straight in, and it's freaking him out. Not only that, his blade is on a whole upper level when it comes to defense, while the madman tells Jaryong to keep his focus here. In a flash, he charges in, aiming to slice Jaryong's head clean off, but the metal rod blocks the upper level blade just in time. Then, with a heavy kick to the gut, he sends Jaryong flying like a rocket. As Jaryong scrambles to get his bearings, Dogyun swoops in again, taunting him to fight seriously now. That's when Jaryong quickly realizes it's not going to work. Dogyun is wearing a shade jacket. That's an A+ rank armor that drains the user's blood to boost physical abilities and forms a high-level defense against impact. This man, Dogyun, has got a berserker style of combat. Although Jaryong knows he might find a few openings, he also knows that if he goes for the wrong counter, it's lights out for him. As they face off, Dogyun pulls a slick move that catches Jaryong off guard, landing a clean shot right in his gut. Even so, the madman gives him a bit of credit for holding out this long. But Jaryong just brushes it off, yanks off the jacket he liked, and casually asks if today's some kind of special occasion or something. That line hits Dogyun harder than the kick did, especially since he figured Jaryong was just average strong. Jaryong admits that he was scared at first by Dogyun's nasty vibe, but now that he's seen what the guy's really got against a high schooler with no gear, it's kind of disappointing. He even calls him out, saying someone at his level shouldn't need fancy equipment just to handle a kid. That's gotta burn. Jaryong also remembers that Dogyun's the one desperate to take him down and shut Serom up, but that's not happening as long as he's around. The longer he stalls, the more on edge young Dogyun gets, and Jaryong knows exactly how to use that pressure to his advantage. As their fierce fight drags on, Jaryong starts picking up on the second technique just by watching closely. Turns out his own strength isn't enough to pull it off, but if he uses his enemy's strength against them, he can land a massive blow, something he could never do on his own. It's a tricky move, one he hasn't even fully mastered yet. It's called Swell. After using Swell, Jaryong coughs up blood. He never thought he'd actually use it in a real fight, and definitely didn't expect a pro adventurer to be the type who just charges in again and again like a madman. But Swell hits hard. It blows off Dogyun's wicked mask and slams him straight into the wall. Jaryong tells the guy it's over for him. Dogyun isn't the kind to go down easily. This freak's still standing and swears he's going to kill him no matter what. On the 5th floor of the department store, Saram's gasping for air is getting worse as she comes to a stop. Her eyes lock onto something, and it turns out to be exactly what she's been looking for. She places her hand on it, letting the scanner confirm her identity. With this in hand, she figures the only thing left to do is head back. But just then, something unexpected happens and catches her completely off guard. She remembers Jaryong's words telling her to run and stop standing around like an idiot, that she has to stay alive if she wants to give him his full payment. It takes her a second to realize that nothing's going to change just because she runs away too. Clutching the coin tightly, she thinks about Dogyun, and knows Jaryong wouldn't have picked a fight with him unless he had a plan to make it out alive. Back in the day, taking a trip down memory lane, Dogyun was busy bullying some guy, beating him up while the poor kid begged him to stop and promised not to act up again. Even as a kid, Dogyun was a genius. Everything came easily to him. He had talent, got recognition from adults, and dominated anyone around his age. But there was one thing he couldn't get, and that one thing drove him nuts. His rejection letter from Warrior High. He knew Warrior High was all about money and connections, and no matter how talented he was, there was no way he could force his way in. They cared more about money than raw ability. But at Gangyun High's welcome ceremony, things were different. That school was all about pure skill and talent, and there was no chance Dogyun was going to fall behind in a place like that. Sure enough, he crushed the entrance exam, rising above the sea of average students who couldn't even dream of keeping up with him. That's how he earned the title of genius, standing tall in the minority. Everyone there knew he was on a whole different level, and he had no problem being grouped with those so-called future rankers, because even among them, he stood out. At graduation, the principal walked up to Dogyun to congratulate him for being the valedictorian, saying he knew Dogyun would become a great adventurer. He wished him well and hoped he wouldn't grow conceited, but would keep pushing forward. Dogyun smiled and shook his hand, acting all respectful on the outside, but deep down, he saw the guy as washed-up trash, a loser who quit early and now teaches kids because that's all he's good for. Dogyun promised himself he'd show this clown how it's really done and rise to heights a normie like that could never even dream of. Fast forward to the present, and that same normie is now a grown adventurer, shaking in his boots in front of a massive, hideous monster. He's frozen in fear, completely out of his depth, while Dogyun steps in and takes care of the creature like it's no big deal. The guy's practically trembling, chills shooting down his spine, totally shocked that Dogyun wiped out something that slaughtered his entire party on its own. Meanwhile, Dogyun casually mentions that he got the call about a dangerous situation, but honestly, it was way too easy. He gives the man that same familiar look of disgust he's always had for everyone else, like nothing's changed. That day, he finally realizes that his old principal's advice wasn't just some throwaway speech. The words about him being a great adventurer were actually meant as comfort, not praise. It hits him that he was never some chosen one, just a little better than average. Someone for regular folks to look up to, nothing more. Back in the present, Dogyun comes clean to Jaryong, telling him the truth about the jacket. It's made entirely from a live vampire who gave full consent to let the blood from his heart flow straight into Dogyun's. That too comes at the cost of murdering Jaryong, but the kid doesn't buy any of it, saying the whole thing sounds way too risky to be true. Dogyun dials up the creepy and charges at him full speed. As his pace gets darker and more intense, Jaryong notices the sudden boost in speed. They clash in a brutal fight that leaves the kid bloody and panting hard. Dogyun sees that Jaryong somehow blocked his attack, so he gives him credit for his quick reaction and natural talent. That pushes him to ask why someone like Jaryong ended up as a smuggler. Honestly, it's weird for Jaryong to even accept a compliment from this arrogant jerk, but he just shrugs it off, saying it's not his business to explain his life choices. Even though he's still on high alert, Dogyun suddenly thanks him for some reason. Then, out of nowhere, he bursts into a vicious laugh, mocking Jaryong for giving him the chance to crush someone with real talent. In a flash, Jaryong jumps into the scene, fully aware of the toll it's taking on his health points. Even though they still seem more than half full, his body feels fine and moves without issue. Meanwhile, the creep is practically begging to see more of Jaryong's flashy moves, but the kid couldn't care less about what this lunatic wants. He's certain Dogyun can't keep up this powered-up state forever, and that gives him hope. It's only a matter of time before this freak show burns out. So Jaryong starts cooking up a plan. If he can bait Dogyun into using even more blood, there's a good chance he'll short-circuit. He figures the needle technique might be the key, but Dogyun claims he's already predicted that move. The madman grins and declares that Jaryong's a little too late. Just then, out of nowhere, a fiery arrow shoots through the air and blasts Dogyun in the face. The explosion catches Jaryong off guard, and he's stunned to see Seram, the rich kid, stepping onto the field, even after he told him to run. Jaryong ends up smiling, while Dogyun looks completely disgusted. That little stunt from Seram only lights a bigger fire in Jaryong's chest, fueling him to keep fighting with everything he's got. As the dust settles, Jaryong finally knocks down the A-rated adventurer who was all smug talk and arrogance. Dogyun, all beat up and bloody, is lying flat on the ground. Seram looks over and wonders if that big shot is actually dead. Jaryong assures her that someone like him doesn't die that easily, so she should just chill. He also points out that Dogyun won't be coming after her for revenge either, not when it could mess up his career. Jaryong picks up his staff and casually reminds her that he saved her life, so she owes him big time. Seram raises an eyebrow and asks if that means she's paying double now, once for defeating the Titan Ape, and the second for when she decided to follow him into this mess. Jaryong gives a smirk, saying he'll be generous and call it even since she came all the way down here despite being told not to. Seram reminds him that he could at least say thanks too. After that, the two of them finally manage to find the royal jelly, which gives off a sweet scent. As they follow the smell even further, it leads them into a golden mist, where they find a man lying injured, guarding the item even in death. Jaryong feels bad for being late, while Seram is completely shocked. Seeing her reaction, Jaryong jokes that it's her fault for following him just to witness something special. Now, he turns his attention to the item he's supposed to retrieve. The moment he opens the box, both Jaryong and Seram are stunned. The look on their faces says it all. They've never seen anything like this before. The scene in front of them is beyond anything they've experienced. After grabbing the lantern of royal jelly, the smell of it is so sweet and endearing that one's thought fades away to nothing. No doubt all the monsters were going nuts and felt attracted to this very thing. Also, he wonders if this sack in the lantern contains the royal jelly too. After confiscating this box, this chill smuggler decides to pack up and leave rather quickly before anything happens. The dude is having a hunch that something will creep up on them if they stick to this palace any longer. For that, Seram blindly follows this guy down to the first floor of the department store. Right then, Seram's stunned to see there's no body of Dogyun. That's when they hear the madman's voice, claiming to take revenge, as he has locked their stupid faces deep in his mind. He swears to do whatever is in his power to kill them and make them regret this day. Just as happily, Dogyun hops out of the Eugene Mall, the Titan Ape was hanging out, and lunges at him to eat this jerk in one go. This view made Jaryong and Seram hit their jaws to the floor in shock. Also, this smooth operator believes it's better to take the back door. After coming out of there, Jaryong sees the sunset, carving this location to be the safest of all. When asked, Seram mentions that she has enough time to pass the test. On that, he shakes her hand, saying it was a nice time together, as they are both done with their goals already. Seram agrees, and they both shake their hands. Also, he tells the girl to keep the total secrecy, and make sure to pay up. Plus, he warns her to take caution if she doesn't wish to see him again, but Seram wonders if it's possible to see him again too. Afterward, Broker sees Jaryong coming back, asking if he had fun on his trip, but Jaryong isn't feeling like talking about it. Then, he lets the broker have the real thing. Jaewon can sense the amount of insanity this would have attracted if released to the public while holding the lantern of royal jelly. This thing is enough to buy a couple of buildings. Now, he praises Jaryong work and wishes to send the dude his money by tomorrow. Suddenly, the broker feels something is off, and he asks if he is feeling bad about the adventurer who died on the scene protecting this thing. Jaryong says the guy didn't die during their fight, so there's no reason for him to feel guilty about it. Then Jaewon presses him, asking if anything unusual happened or if something else was going on, but Jaryong just wants the broker to drop the topic and forget it. He also asks if he can take the rest of the stuff since it doesn't look like royal jelly. As agreed, everything except the specific item requested by the client is up for the smuggler's taking. The broker wonders who the kid is that's going to eat that thing. When asked, Jaewon explains that this lantern of gold can actually bring someone back from the dead, but there's more to it. If eaten, it can raise a person's talent ceiling. The catch is, it only works on people who haven't hit adulthood yet, since it's not meant for those who've already run out of potential. Jaryong figures it's probably meant for someone from Warrior High School. With that, he gets ready to leave, but the broker tells him to send greetings to his dad. Jaryong shares that his dad's not doing so great, so he'll say hi if he gets the chance. He remembers back then when he asked Seram if she'd developed a crush on him or something, after she said she wanted to meet again. That's when she told him about the entrance exam coming up in the winter, saying he's got a good shot even if they only accept a few. Seram wants this chill dude to join Warrior High, and now that thought keeps living rent-free in his head. As per the rules, no adventurer is allowed to enter a dungeon solo, no matter how skilled they claim to be. There are way too many unpredictable situations inside that no one can handle alone. It's nearly impossible to fight the unknown on your own. That's exactly why parties are needed. A party is made up of adventurers with different strengths who work together to handle whatever comes their way. They cover for each other's mistakes and balance out each other's weaknesses, and that's how dungeons get cleared and monsters get defeated. On top of that, Seram mentions that Warrior High has a bunch of political factions in each grade. Jaryong doesn't really get the point of factions and just guesses that it's probably for fighting or something. Seram calls that a childish assumption, and explains that in their grade, there are two main factions, each led by one of the top 3 students. That's when Jaryong, being the smooth operator, asks if people only form parties within the same faction. He also figures out that Saram isn't part of any faction yet. She confirms that teachers don't interfere, since it's up to the students to get into one themselves. Judging by Jaryong's expression, Saram can tell he's already figured out that her lack of skill is probably the main reason she hasn't been accepted into any faction. This no-skill girl knows full well there's pretty much no shot for her to become a top student, but that doesn't stop her from joining a party anyway, since other kids without factions have been forming their own. On top of that, one of the faction leaders totally despises Saram, and has been working behind the scenes to isolate her and leave her out to rot. Jaryong jokes and asks if Saram stole her boyfriend or something to cause that kind of maiden rage. Right now she's still flying solo, but she knows that in future grades, that won't be enough to keep going, which is exactly why she wants to team up with Jaryong. With his skills, she knows she actually stands a chance at surviving. All these thoughts keep spinning around in his head while he's lying on the bed, wrapping himself in bandages. He can't help but think that Saram's kind of a funny girl. Meanwhile, Saram's off wandering somewhere else and finally shows up at the dungeon barrier, the 12th location in Gangnam. Even now, she can't shake off the surprise of running into Jaryong, the smuggler. She's getting second thoughts, thinking that maybe that big shot won't reach out to her again. Just then, Kang Jungkook, a class teacher and the melee combat instructor at Warrior High, is standing under the shade of a tree, waiting for her. Saram knows the test is still going on, so she's a little confused. Jungkook explains that there's been some kind of system issue, and a bunch of monsters showed up in places they're not even supposed to live. Thankfully, no deaths have been reported so far. He also mentions that some students had to stop their tests and request rescue because of how rough things got. On top of that, Jungkook found out that those monsters showed up in the same area where Saram picked up the coin. When he asks about it, she says she didn't see anything unusual and tries to play it cool. Jungkook seems to buy it, but Saram's body flinches as she suddenly senses something eerie creeping up behind her. She's completely shocked to see another Titan ape, this one even bigger than the last, lurking deep within the dungeon. Jungkook finds it strange that a monster like this would show up here when this isn't even its territory. Saram wonders if the sweet scent from earlier drew it in. Jungkook then repeats his orders, telling her to stay back and be his support. As the Titan ape steps forward, it's clear the creature means business. Jungkook shifts into a serious mode. After all, the teachers in the dungeon fields are all former adventurers, and many of them graduated from Warrior High themselves. Outsiders usually assume they're just teachers who had to quit due to injuries. But Jungkook proves otherwise. He throws a punch so fierce it's like watching a fighter of tyranny in action. With one blow, he explodes the Titan ape's head clean off. Back in their early 20s, guys like him were already given the title of Ranker. As his arm casually regrows, Jungkook tells Saram she's pretty lucky she didn't run into something like that herself. Still, this tough warrior is glad Saram made it back in one piece, and now it's about time to head back. Saram thinks that people tend to overlook things, but Jungkook, being a warrior himself, is the one teaching her. Young warriors do have the option to become teachers too. At Warrior High's practical base camp, one of the staff members knows that those who requested rescue will be given a retest, though they're lucky to get that chance at all. He also mentions that one of them is arriving right now, just as Jungkook leads Saram back to the base. Jungkook plans to do roll call and confirm everyone's numbers before letting Saram go get changed. As she's finally relaxing, a voice calls out, saying her timing is sharp and that they knew she'd be okay. It's Anisha, the blonde, who admits she was really worried about Saram. Saram finds it a bit funny. The leader of this faction, who also happens to be her older sister, seems hurt by the idea that Saram thinks of her as someone cold-hearted for not showing it. 6 years ago, Zeke Saram, who is Saram's uncle, personally tutored her and told her to focus on increasing her output. He genuinely believed that this girl could push her limits even further as she tried to gather magic in her palm. He instructed her to develop her focus when she was just 11 years old. Saram was sweating bullets, struggling like crazy to concentrate. Right then, Zeke stopped her training and pointed out that she had improved since the last time, but only a little. While Saram was completely exhausted just from producing a tiny ball of magic in her hand, things were very different on the other side. Anisha's display of magic at the same age was absolutely mind-blowing, and her tutor couldn't be more impressed with her blazing talent. Anisha Saram, also 11, was doing a spectacular job. Zeke observed her, and noted that it wasn't just her looks that didn't match those of a mixed blood. Her mastery over magic was near perfect, even better than most purebloods. Still, Zeke gave Saram a word of advice. If she continued walking this path, she would always be compared to Anisha, again and again. But then it suddenly clicks, and Zeke realizes that instead of worrying about being compared, Saram should actually be more careful. That's when Anisha's demonic eyes catch a glimpse of her, and Zeke becomes certain that one wrong move from Saram could ruin everything. In the present, Anisha puts on her fake concern, acting like it's such a shame no one picked Saram to form a party. But before Anisha can spill more nonsense, Saram cuts her off and says, if she's that concerned, then she should make a party with her. That hits hard, and Anisha politely refuses, even though both of them are ranged damage dealers. She points out that there's no use having two people with the same role, especially when Saram isn't on the same level. Then she cracks up, admitting it's already a hassle for others to handle as it is. Still, she assures Saram there'll definitely be a retest, and she can try again. Saram gets up close and tells this Miss Blondie that she doesn't give a crap about the retest, because she already passed. That catches Anisha completely off guard, realizing Saram pushed herself to the limit. Blondie then says there's no need for Saram to go this far when she's the one inheriting the company anyway. That stings too hard. While Anisha, this beast in disguise, clearly wishes Saram would just quit struggling altogether. Afterwards, Jaryong slams the door open in shock, gasping to catch his breath. When he sees the doctor standing beside his father's bed, he immediately asks if something's wrong. His father is on a ventilator, and Jaryong worries it might be a relapse. The two medical professionals exchange uneasy glances before finally breaking the silence. They explain that the patient has an extremely rare condition, possibly the only known case in the world. With no recorded instances of someone being infected by dragon's blood and surviving this long, they honestly don't know what to say. Given the current state of medical technology, Jaryong already knows that a full recovery seems impossible. At best, he figures they can only suppress his father's pain with strong medication. That's when the doctor brings up a new problem, saying the real issue now is with the ingredients needed for the painkiller. He finally admits that the only possible antidote at this stage is the milk of an extremely dangerous monster, the Sky Tiger, a 5-star ranked beast. Jaryong clarifies that he has enough money for this, even if it's a rare condition. He makes it clear that money isn't the problem. Then, the conversation shifts to a rumor going around among adventurers about a potion that boosts strength and resistance for a long time, even with just a small dose. The main ingredient for it is also the milk of the Sky Tiger, which can be bought if you have enough money. It was once considered useless despite being rare, but now things are completely different. The doctor reveals that companies and adventurers have started buying up all the stock. Jaryong starts yelling, furious at the idiots who think he's the kind of person who only wants to save his dying father for selfish reasons. The doctors let him know that isn't the real issue, but the amount required for the dose to keep his symptoms under control happens to be almost the same as what's used to make loads of those potions. If there were more patients, the government might have stepped in, but since he's the only case in the entire world, there's no chance they'll get involved. Still, the doctors assure him they'll do their best for his father. Even so, without the ingredients, there's not much they can do besides throwing money at it. After that, Jaryong steps out to get some air, letting out a deep sigh while sitting on a bench in the park. Feeling overwhelmed, he ends up calling the rich, spoiled brat Saram, who's busy working out at the gym. One ring on her phone takes her breath away. On the line, she hears Jaryong's voice asking if it's too late. This gym rat doesn't mind at all, and Jaryong admits he has no choice but to accept her offer. Right then, he lays out his demand, and Saram thinks she can work with it, saying she'll look into it. Jaryong is stunned that this girl can actually pull something like that. Turns out her company's development team is in charge of producing the exact potion he needs, and the amount he's asking for isn't even that much. The guy's floored by how ridiculous the world works, but he makes the deal with her. After that, Saram checks if Jaryong is free this Sunday to prepare for the entrance exam. This girl's already in a different mood, pumped up and planning to crush it when the big day comes. She says it's always better to be ready ahead of time. At the Research Institute of Jinsong Group's Special Defense Industry, Jaryong shows up a bit early. Saram, cool as ever, walks in like a slick baddie and casually asks how he's feeling. When he asks about the place, Saram reveals that this is where they're making his potion. After the world changed, humanity gained access to limitless power. Before the adhesion phenomenon, normal humans were capped at rank D except in magic, and only geniuses ever reached rank C. Anything rank B or above was considered superhuman territory. Back then, to even qualify for the dungeon, a person needed at least rank C in all 5 stats, except for magic, which was the bare minimum. To be considered warrior high material, someone needed rank B in at least 3 out of 5 categories. Somewhere in between all that, Saram's exact power level is still a mystery. Jaryong casually asks if this is what she meant by getting a physical done. Saram says it's kind of like that, but way more complicated after puberty kicks in. After that, she gets him suited up, and he finally understands why Saram did that little feeling check before they came inside. Then, the Gear Chrome Pro stands right in Jaryong's face, fully ready to get serious now. Part of it is because things are getting real, but mostly, it's because he's genuinely curious about finding out what kind of potential he's working with. Jaryong's all geared up and ready to take things seriously, determined to figure out what his real potential is, while the Gear Chrome Pro gives him a strange look. Meanwhile, the gym rat, Saram, is inside with the Observer who's going to monitor Jaryong's skills. Even the Observer notices how gutsy this guy is, especially since most people freak out and practically wet themselves before facing a golem. As young Yeoman calmly sips her tea, she listens to Jaryong's steady voice and hears the determination in his words about preparing to transfer to Warrior High. Yeoman, a golem expert and former adventurer now working with the research unit, just nods, kind of impressed. Saram can't help but agree with a nervous laugh. Then, Yeoman decides it's time to get things rolling and casually hits the button, letting the golem go completely berserk. The talent test usually happens around 6th or 7th grade, where the testee suits up in special gear to get detailed measurements taken. From there, they have to push their body past their limits in various areas, which makes it hard to get an accurate reading. It's especially tricky when someone has extraordinary talent or has been training for a long time, since they don't hit their limit easily. That guy's physique is almost professional, and Yeoman's pretty sure pushing him to the edge won't be easy. While Saram assumes he should be exhausted by now, Yeoman is sweating bullets. She confirms that Jaryong went to a regular high school because he failed to get into any of the special adventurer schools. After watching his performance, this nerdy scientist is practically dying to know what kind of school messed up badly enough to reject someone like him. Apparently, this ballbuster totally wrecked the golem. Even though the difficulty level was set low, Yeoman just witnessed the destruction of the golem model they normally use to train pros. On top of that, she notices how he read the golem's patterns, dodged a few times, and found the perfect opening to land a counterattack. That's more than enough to say this kid's insane, way better than the average pro, just with his senses alone. The real problem is, the measurement is getting really tough because he hasn't even hit his limits yet. Even if they raise the difficulty, Yeoman thinks bumping it up by 1 or 2 levels won't make any difference. Now it's time for the risky stuff. She's actually considering setting the golem to 100% power output instead of keeping it in safe mode. She just hopes Seiram realizes it's a serious offense to test an unlicensed adventurer like that. Still, it's a huge headache because there's no other way to figure out his limit. When asked, Yeoman admits there's only one option left. But just as she's about to go rogue, the lab doors fly open and the director storms in, scaring the life out of her. Zeke, the director of research, calls her out hard and reminds her she doesn't get paid to run unauthorized experiments. He scolds her like crazy and asks if she's really willing to risk prison time over this. That's when the no-skill girl steps up. Seiram walks forward and tries to take the blame, calling him uncle. But Zeke shuts her down instantly, saying it's not her place to take responsibility since that belongs to her father. Yeoman sees firsthand that all the rumors about Zeke being cold to Seiram since she was a kid are definitely true. Still, she knows adventurers use this facility all the time on weekends, so technically, nothing's out of line here. Now Zeke turns his attention to Jaryong, who's fully suited up, and Yeoman quickly explains that he's Seiram's friend, the one who failed all the special school admissions but still wants to become an adventurer. She also adds that the guy's measurement data got lost. Seiram's just trying to help her friend out during his transfer. But while the girls talk, Zeke's eyes are fixed on the wrecked golem. Out of nowhere, he suddenly agrees to go through with the test, which shocks everyone in the room. He says if the safe mode isn't enough to push Jaryong to his limits, then he's going to fight him himself. That throws the whole group into chaos. Jaryong, on the other hand, has no idea what's going on. Turns out, in rare cases when a person's limits can't be found through normal means, they have to battle someone a few levels higher. That's the only way to accurately gauge their potential. Without any warning, Zeke drops down, saying there's no time for introductions. Jaryong's caught off guard but still gets into position. He doesn't fully understand the mess he's gotten into, but his instincts kick in fast, faster than his thoughts. Zeke makes it clear that no golems this time. Instead, they're going to fight. With that, the safety word is out, and Zeke calls this brat out for a fight. Zeke Esker Seiram, the director of the research institute and also Seiram's uncle, isn't just some office guy. He's Korea's 7th place ranker, part of the elite white-class adventurers. That alone makes this a massive mess. Jaryong's about to dive headfirst into. Among adventurers, the top 100 are called rankers, and they're divided by color tiers. Red is for ranks 76 to 100, blue covers 51 to 75, green goes from 31 to 50, black is for 11 to 30, and the highest of all, white, is for the top 10. Jaryong's all set to face Zeke, and it's looking like serious trouble. In a flash, this limitless adventurer shoots into the air like lightning, aiming to land a solid blow. But luck's not on his side. He can't spot a single opening, so he's forced to make one himself. His plan is simple. Go all in with one heavy strike right after dodging Zeke's first counter. The idea is that if he dodges right, he'll create an opening to slip through and land the real hit. But a move like that doesn't fly against someone like Zeke. With just one hand, Zeke blocks the attack and grabs Jaryong's staff like it's a toy. He scoffs, saying Jaryong is even more reckless than he thought. Then, without warning, he slams a brutal kick into Jaryong's gut, sending him flying like a busted-up rocket. Jaryong's shaken, unable to figure out why his plan went so wrong. Meanwhile, Zeke mocks him for thinking a basic tactic like that would ever work. The kid's in over his head now. Zeke also calls out his sloppy mistake, dropping his weapon without even losing consciousness. Just then, Jaryong picks up his metal rod again, ready for round 2. But Zeke's patience has run out. He let the kid mess up twice already, and now he's done holding back. Right then, this mastermind means serious business. He warns Jaryong that one more dumb mistake, and he can kiss his dream of becoming an adventurer goodbye. Suddenly, Zeke's aura flares up, thick and heavy, while Jaryong shifts into position. Even though this smooth operator can tell Zeke's holding some bad blood toward him, he doesn't let it shake his focus. And just like that, Jaryong bolts in, flashing toward Zeke's side at high speed, looking like he's repeating the same move as before. But then, out of nowhere, Jaryong makes a sudden step that completely shocks Zeke's nerves, catching him off guard in a way he didn't expect. Out of the blue, Jaryong fires off 2 attacks at the same time, trying to catch Zeke off guard. For a second it almost works. Sun-kissed striker raises an eyebrow, noticing the new ranged move and admitting it's a decent surprise. He even calls it a pretty standard approach for someone trying to mix things up. But still, it's not enough. This pale knight barely flinches, already reading through the attack like an open book. Jaryong knows this man isn't satisfied, and things are just getting started. He powers up his metal rod and fires off a move that actually takes Zeke a moment to catch. Zeke looks a little impressed, but blocks the whole thing with a clean barrage of punches. Yeoman is in shock watching what feels like a battle between seasoned pros, and she still can't believe this guy was rejected from every school. Saram can only laugh awkwardly. Honestly, Yeoman doesn't think Jaryong is perfect, since she spotted a pretty clear weakness. She even says Saram is way better in that area. That little bombshell makes Saram a bit concerned, realizing Jaryong might be missing something important compared to her. Still, from the looks of it, she can't deny Jaryong is holding his own against her Uncle Zeke like a real pro. Her mind's racing to figure out what could be wrong with this almost too perfect adventurer. Just as Jaryong dodges one of Zeke's punches and loses his rhythm, he suddenly swings back and smacks Zeke right after. Zeke takes note of Jaryong's new attack, which actually caught him off guard. He's impressed to see the kid managing to keep control of his weapon now, but to return the favor, Zeke fires off a couple of punches straight to Jaryong's gut and face, launching him like a rocket again. Yeoman watches closely and sees that even while holding back, the chief is showing some serious skill. Then this sun-kissed beater tells Jaryong not to take the loss personally, since it was clear from the beginning he wasn't going to win. Still, the way Jaryong's handling the loss is just kind of pitiful. Right then, Zeke flat out says Jaryong lacks basic training. Yeoman explains that his talent and battle instincts are top tier, but his fundamentals are all over the place. His stance, his basic understanding of offense and defense, all look like he's never trained properly in his life, and that just makes her more disappointed to see such rare talent being wasted. If only he had the basics down, he would have been way stronger by now. Before walking off, Zeke admits he's seen a lot of people like Jaryong. Even if the kid has the kind of talent most people would kill for, it doesn't mean anything if he's not willing to put in the effort. Zeke's ready to hand over his numbers, but he suggests Jaryong give up, saying someone like him is bound to get killed if he keeps relying on raw talent alone. Just then, Jaryong gets back up, feeling like this blonde has been throwing some seriously harsh shade at him. He straight up asks Zeke if he hates lazy people. Zeke's honestly stunned to see the kid still standing, especially when that last hit was meant to wrap things up. Then, this smooth operator blurts out that he doesn't care about the outcome anymore. He just wants a second round to show what his effort can really do. While watching the screen, Yeoman has no idea what's even going on anymore. She contacts director Zeke inside, telling him there's no need for any more fighting since she's already gathered enough data. There's no point in getting all worked up now. Meanwhile, Saram also tries calling out to Jaryong, assuring him that it's alright and everything's done. She says it's enough for him to get his results, but that doesn't stop Zeke from tossing in his own opinion, saying it's all pointless, no matter what Jaryong wants. This pointy-eared guy makes it clear that nothing's going to change, no matter how many fights he picks. Or maybe, he adds, this brat just wants his validation or wants to be acknowledged. Jaryong's had enough of this pale jerk's nonsense. He fires back that he's seriously pissed now, and the only thing he needs from Zeke is for the guy to get beaten to a pulp. The only reason Jaryong agreed to come here was something else entirely. Little Jaryong never had anyone like a teacher or an instructor to begin with, so he had to rely on himself from the very start. He started from zero and learned everything on his own. Being born with natural talent isn't something that happens every day, but thanks to that gift, he managed just fine, training by himself. The guy filled in all the blanks of basic training on his own. On top of that, he had way bigger chances to gain better experience in the field, with the freedom to do whatever he wanted. From battling monsters to straight up slaughtering them, he made up his own rules and followed them, all while making miraculous progress. Jaryong never thought he was better than anyone, but when he finally met real adventurers, he was disappointed by the fakes who turned out to be weaker than him, like Pilgyu and the Madman. While Zeke admits he made a mistake, Jaryong sees this pale knight in a whole new light. Out of nowhere, Zeke's aura surges like he just unlocked his Saiyan powers. The man is raging now, fired up to put Jaryong in his place by beating him down so hard he'll lose the will to fight or even feel angry. With his pure talent, Jaryong can transform into a monster way beyond his level, especially now that he's facing someone he considers the real deal. His blood starts boiling without him even realizing it, and in that moment, Jaryong becomes the shadow of his father. Meanwhile, Yeoman and Saram are seriously freaking out about how far these two are taking things. They don't get why the chief is reacting like this, and it only adds to Yeoman's growing concerns. At the same time, Saram notices something off about Jaryong's stance. It's totally different from before. His posture and weight balance have shifted, and he's not holding his staff the same way. It's like the guy turned into a completely different person. After taking a deep breath, Jaryong launches himself into the air and flashes straight at Zeke. Yeoman is stunned by how clean his movement is, while Zeke's sharp eyes catch every shift as he dodges. Compared to earlier, Saram finds Jaryong's movements rough and simple, but there's absolutely no opening to exploit. Yeoman's jaw practically hits the floor as she wonders what kind of monster taught this brat. Turns out, little Jaryong used to secretly watch his father train since he was young. Like a total peeping Tom, he'd copy the moves every day. Now in the middle of the fight, Zeke can't find a single opening to land a hit. And back then, when his father caught him spying, he just smiled and gave him a pat on the head. Right now, Jaryong's going all out on Zeke, fighting like crazy to show everything he's learned so far. Amidst all this, the sun-kissed striker spots an opening and mentions he's about to land a solid blow. At the same time, the big shot is fully convinced that Jaryong won't be able to dodge it anymore. But Jaryong stands his ground, ready to face him head-on and show exactly what Zeke's been dying to see. As the battle reaches its peak, the girls are left with their jaws practically on the floor. When the smoke clears after the final strike, Zeke calmly says that if Jaryong didn't rely on that unfitting staff skill, he might have actually won had he kept going. Then he asks if that was Jaryong's final show of pride. On the ground, Jaryong catches his breath but can't help smiling. He admits he just ran out of moves, he'd memorized all he knew, and that was it. He ended up getting beaten even more, but strangely he doesn't think it's all that bad. Deep down, he knows exactly who Zeke Eskersaram is, the sharp-tongued legend among the highest-ranked adventurers. Saram bursts in, trying to stop her uncle, but Zeke tells her to stay put. Nobody ever dared complain about this sun-kissed jerk, because his overwhelming skills always backed up his attitude. With just one hand, Zeke heals Jaryong in seconds, casually reassuring Saram that the kid will be fine. Then, he confirms Jaryong's name with her, clearly surprised, because he never expected to meet a certain someone's son here, of all places. Turns out, Zeke is one of the top 10 rankers in the white class across the whole nation, and also Korea's greatest healer. It's evening, and Zeke Eskersaram casually strolls in, looking forward to meeting someone. As he reaches the spot, this dude immediately starts whining about Zeke not being considerate enough to send a quick text if he was going to be late. He grumbles that it wouldn't have hurt to wait with some coffee and chill for a bit. But now, thanks to Zeke, they're about to be late for the briefing again. Still, this muscle man already knows the others will probably blame him for it. Zeke casually apologizes, saying something urgent came up and took longer than expected. The guy brings up Zeke's little spar with some kid, figuring it had to be more than one. That's when this nerdo spots something that completely takes his breath away, but it just confuses Zeke. He points at the small cut on Zeke's cheek like it's some kind of emergency. The guy can't believe what he's seeing, shocked that a 16-year-old looking to enroll in school managed to land a hit like that. Zeke corrects him, saying the kid is actually 17 and is probably trying to get into Warrior High this winter. The nerd remembers hearing about some recruiters at Warrior High, but says that nobody has passed the criteria for the last 3 years he's been attending. Even then, he still thinks the kid's got a shot. If that brat could land a cut on Zeke's cheek without even having an identity, there's definitely a chance. He admits the younger generation is getting a whole lot scarier, so they better stay sharp. Zeke doesn't like being compared to elves, but he joked that there might not be much difference between this nerdo and that kid. Of course, the guy refuses to be lumped into the same category. This is Kang Gaeonho, the 19th ranker of South Korea from the black class. He also happens to be the leader of Korea's #1 attack squad, NICS. Giano believes he's ahead of that kid in both age and raw talent. Turns out he's 21 and graduated from Warrior High about a year and 7 months ago. Oh, and he casually confirms he just got this new car, ordered it a while back. He doesn't really spend much these days, but yeah, the car cost him $3.5 billion. Zeke is done hearing this nonsense and pushes him to change the subject back to the kid. Meanwhile, Jaryong finally wakes up and notices all his injuries are gone, no more pain anywhere. Just then, Saram walks in with 2 cups in hand, clearly relieved to see him awake. She teases him, asking if he really thought he could win against someone like Zeke. Jaryong comes clean and admits that Zeke really pushed his buttons and pissed him off, because to him, Zeke started it. That confuses Saram, so she tells him there's no way her uncle would just pick a fight like that. Jaryong is caught off guard hearing that Zeke is actually her maternal uncle. After handing him the cup, he points out that she seems to have a healthy relationship with her uncle. From the way Zeke treated her, it looked like he genuinely cared. Jaryong figured Zeke got all worked up seeing some shady-looking guy hanging around his niece and felt the need to check him out. To be fair, the guy had every right to be concerned. Saram explains that her uncle's just a stern kind of person. Right then, Yeoman suddenly walks in to check if Jaryong's hurt anywhere. With a smile, she casually mentions that their chief just so happens to be the greatest healer in Korea, so of course he took care of all his injuries. That hits Jaryong like a ton of bricks. He's shocked to realize that Zeke is a healer, yet his power is still that insanely strong even when healing isn't his main focus. Afterwards, Yeoman says it's time to share the results. According to the report, Yu Jaryong has strength ranked B, intelligence C, stamina A, magic D, agility A, and patience B. Saram is thrilled to see such amazing stats, but Jaryong's not too sure if it's actually good enough. That makes Yeoman worry, wondering if this guy even wants to join the school in the first place. To become a first-class adventurer, one needs to get at least a B in ability stats, and that B means superhuman. But it's not just about having high stats, there has to be balance too, to make the body work more efficiently. There's no point in having insane agility if you don't have enough stamina to back it up. And even with crazy strength, you can't show your full potential if your agility is low. Even regular folks manage to get C rank or above in their stats, but if the stats are all over the place, it just doesn't work well. Things really start to change when someone has more than 2 key stats, strength, stamina, and agility, at a decent level. People with all 3 of those at C rank are 1 in 10,000 and usually end up working as solid combatants. But if someone has all 3 at B, then they fall into the 5,000 adventurer category, putting them among the best out there so far. Now Saram's concerned because this kid has an A in all those stats except for strength, which is a B. That means his raw stats are already insane, and on top of that, he's well balanced. From what she knows about the first years in the dungeon raid department, Saram thinks Jaryong might end up on the same level as that one monster from before. Still, this weirdo has the nerve to expect even better results. Yeoman decides to throw in an interesting fact. Director Zeke doesn't have a single A in any of his stats. That little info bomb nearly knocks the wind out of Jaryong. She adds that stats show your innate talent, but they don't reflect your actual skill. Even with the best stats, there won't be much of a difference between an A rank and a D rank if someone doesn't put in the training. Jaryong gets that some things just can't be measured, like whether a skill actually fits someone, or their natural sense in battle, or even the kind of experience they've been through. Then Yeoman, with a cheeky grin, says that plenty of adventurers have managed to close that gap with nothing but sheer determination, and she throws a playful wink at Seiram, who instantly blushes like crazy. That's when Jaryong thanks them for the story, but admits that he doesn't really understand any of this stuff yet. He opens up a little, saying there's someone he really looks up to, someone whose strength he hopes to match one day. Compared to that guy, he knows he's still got a long way to go. Yeoman figures that must be someone seriously famous if this kid is so motivated. Jaryong says maybe she's right. After that, Seiram decides to wrap things up, saying they're done for today. Out of nowhere, Yeoman asks if the two of them are leaving already, since they could check out the production department while they're still here. Seiram shuts that down quick, reminding her that she's got no business there and doesn't want to risk pissing off her uncle any further. That makes the scientist crack up, and she casually drops the bomb that the director has already given his approval. Seiram is totally floored to hear that Zeke actually gave his consent to let Jaryong visit the equipment production department as his guest, and that they're even planning to craft a custom weapon for him, for free. Equipment, like weapons and armor, is basically every adventurer's dream, especially when it's high quality. Even if someone is insanely talented, if their gear is low grade, it won't be able to handle their strength or skill properly. That's why having good equipment matters so much. As an adventurer's skills grow and level up, their equipment needs to level up too. Only when the quality of the gear matches the user's ability can they truly bring out its full potential and use it the right way. Jaryong understands this much, so he is thankful for it as long as it doesn't cost him anything. However, he asks if it's really that important to get it right now. Seiram shoots him a narrow-eyed look, clearly not buying it, and says that it's definitely necessary. He reminds this bimbo that Warrior High is still a school, and the school will provide usable equipment anyway. Yeoman and Seiram are left with their jaws hanging in shock. Seiram, wiping the sweat off her forehead, admits it's her fault for not explaining earlier. Then she points out that this guy is actually planning to join Warrior High. She adds that the criteria he's talking about apply to regular adventurer institutions. But for students, to keep things fair, each academy follows its own rules about what kind of equipment can be used. This stuns Jaryong, and he asks if Warrior High wouldn't just get more funds that way. Yeoman lets him know that the school is built on different ideals, so they already have enough funding, but it's not about that. Young Yeoman, who's actually a graduate of Warrior High herself, explains that talent and ability are totally different things, and getting good equipment is considered an ability too. That's exactly why students are expected to bring their own equipment to Warrior High. All that talk about ability aside, Jaryong points out that it sounds like the system just favors the filthy rich even more, like being rich is somehow part of your skill set. Yeoman agrees with that, but also says it's not that hard for students to get good equipment, even if they don't have any money. She goes on to explain that just getting accepted into Warrior High already proves that someone is a first-class adventurer. Basically, the student has the potential to become a star, and when that's the case, there are always people and companies ready to invest in that kind of talent. Once someone gets into Warrior High, tons of companies with deep pockets will be dying to sponsor them. Also, those companies are often interested in potential modeling gigs or taking a percentage of an adventurer's earnings after graduation. There will be all kinds of offers and options in exchange for funding once someone gets into the school. From there, Yeoman starts gloating about how she got a scholarship from the Jinsung group and even secured a guaranteed job as a researcher until retirement. Jaryong claps for the nerdo, which Seiram finds kind of weird. That's when the nerdo assures him there will be plenty of opportunities to prove himself among his peers. But first, Jaryong has to pass the transfer exam, which is way tougher than the normal entrance exam. To prepare for that, he needs to get his new equipment as soon as possible. That's why Chief Zeke permitted him in advance, so he could get ready in time. Since Yeoman already explained everything in detail, she suggests the two of them head toward the underground refinery. With a charming smile, she says she hopes Jaryong makes it. Afterwards, Jaryong mutters that the whole thing would have gone south, and Seiram's confused look confirms he's right. She clearly didn't expect her uncle to help them out in the end. The transfer test is now sounding like a big deal to him, something that really needs serious preparation. Seiram lets him know it is serious, which is why she was planning to spend her own money to help him through it. Jaryong is totally shocked and amazed, reacting like a girl who just heard a love confession, which Seiram finds pretty annoying, judging by the face he's making. Now they get on the elevator, and Seiram brings up the next important matter, which is that the creator of the equipment matters even more than the money. For that, the Jinsong Group's production department just so happens to be one of the best in the entire world. Then they arrive at the Forge, which turns out to be the underground blacksmith facility of the Jinsong Group. This boiling mess of a place used to be called the Boiling Abyss Dungeon. While the guy is taken aback, Seiram adds that this isn't a place where you just place an order, pay, and get your equipment. All of a sudden, a massive shadow looms over the two of them, catching Jaryong completely off guard. A one-eyed figure appears, clearly pissed off that Zeke woke him up from his weekend nap and then didn't even bother to show up himself. This monster, wearing a lab coat, is weird enough on its own, but Jaryong is already ready to take it head-on. Seiram recognizes that he looks and quickly jumps in front to hold him back. She tells him that he is the team leader of the production department, but the one-eyed monster snaps back, calling her a Twinkie and insisting he's not just a leader, he's a monster in the eyes of humans. Thunderhammer Argeus is from the species of Elder Titans and, interestingly, is eligible for special naturalization in the Republic of Korea. He sits down before them and asks which brat Zeke was talking about. When the monster seems confused, Saram gets worried and explains that the details, along with data and battle footage, were sent from upstairs. Argeus dismisses it all as nonsense made up by humans, something he couldn't care less about. He says that kind of stuff is for his lackeys, but they've all taken off for the day anyway. Still, since it's a special request from Zeke, he's fine with it. Then the giant starts talking business. Suddenly, Argeus notices Jaryong's weapon and challenges him to try hunting him down. Saram panics while Jaryong quietly thinks it over. The one-eyed entity explains that aside from humans, it's natural for their species to test if someone is worthy of their blood, sweat, and tears before making their weapon. But Argeus also notices Jaryong's abrupt dodging style after sensing his presence, which makes him think this kid is different from the other young ones. Also, the brat's eyes are sharp for hunting, showing a repressed yet refined sense of a warrior's hostility. So the monster wants Jaryong to beat him up. Jaryong is quick to agree, saying he never backs down from offers like this. Right then, Jaryong charges at Argeus full speed, which totally throws the monster off guard. In a split second, Saram has his metal rod pressed against the tip of Jaryong's chin. The monster is shocked to his core and asks where he got that weapon. While keeping the tip of his metal staff pressed against the one-eyed monster's chin, Jaryong felt a wave of confusion. He was sure his strike had hit the Titan with his sharpest needle, and he knew there were monsters he couldn't defeat with just one hit. No doubt about that. But right now, it felt like he was climbing a wall, hitting something that wasn't even alive in the first place. Standing there in front of this hellish abysses monster, the brat couldn't help but wonder who this creature even was. Meanwhile, Saram was seriously chilled, worried that Jaryong was about to piss off this giant. There was another reason for her concern too. It turned out that all monsters were ranked by danger using stars. A mantis fly was a 1-star threat, which meant it could kill humans, but could be defeated by a normal adult male with a weapon. Next up was the cluster raptor with 2 stars, which trained military personnel with guns could handle. Then came the juvenile titan ape with 3 stars, which armed troops with armor could take down easily. The Democulus, with 4 stars, caused a high rate of human casualties if they appeared. Ground troops would perform civilian evacuation to prevent chaos, and Democulus were usually taken down by long-range artillery and bombing strikes. The military could only handle threats up to 4 stars. Anything above that was a huge threat, something modern armies just couldn't deal with. Taking down those monsters would need extraordinary firepower, causing irreversible damage and chaos. So, to minimize losses, adventurers called the Attack Squad were sent out. They were necessary to handle these threats. Now, Argeus, with a danger rank of 7 stars, boldly asked the brat where he got that weapon from. Chills ran down her spine while Jaryong mocked Argeus, asking if it hit him so hard that he was now questioning his weapon. Argeus warned the tiny being to think carefully before answering, since he was the one who made it. When Jaryong stayed silent, Argeus got annoyed and decided to make one last effort to ask why the weapon wasn't in the hands of the person it was made for. Saram's worry shot through the roof, thinking that if Argeus built Jaryong's weapon, it had to be at least A-ranked. That kind of info should have been added to the association database as soon as it was created, along with details about the owner and where it was located. There was no way a smuggler could get such a weapon so easily. Saram started wondering if Jaryong had actually stolen it from someone. Meanwhile, Jaryong was quick to cut Argeus off, telling him it wasn't any of his business, which sent a shockwave through Saram's nerves, making her think this guy was completely out of his mind. Argeus considered that and leaned in to pick something up. The only thing going through Jaryong's mind was instant death, because that attack was impossible to dodge. If that were the case, there was no chance of blocking the attack. If he tried the needle attack, it wouldn't work because Argeus was like a wall. Nothing could pierce through him. And if Jaryong chose to swell up, it wouldn't do anything. Plus, absorbing the attack would kill him anyway. So this nomad has one last option that might or might not work. A move called the Last Technique, straight up stolen from his father, Yu Xiang. Jaryong knows the law of force is cold and unforgiving, especially when he's about to strike this one-eyed monster. When it comes to 2 forces slamming into each other, the stronger one always wins. But what really bugs him is what happens when the impact isn't head-on, even if he calculates the angle and position precisely. Without winning that clash, he can't redirect the force. That's what makes Jaryong's final weapon. And somehow, this kid actually parries the attack. That alone is enough to shock the rich girl, who can barely believe he just parried a 7-star monster's strike. On top of that, Jaryong figures out that the only real weak spot of this giant wall is his eye, which he plans to take out with the needle. But just as he goes in for the strike, Argeus grabs him tightly in his massive hand. That's when Saram jumps in, telling leader Argeus to stop, saying she gets why he's suspicious of this guy. But even someone like him wouldn't attack a human without knowing the full story. She reminds him that special naturalized species aren't allowed to hurt humans unless their life is truly in danger. If they break that rule, they lose their naturalized status and become just another monster. Hearing that, Argeus finally loosens his grip, letting Jaryong fall flat on his back. The Titan now understands why Jaryong has that weapon, and finally gets why Zeke went through the trouble of waking him up. At first, the monster seems like he's about to apologize, but instead, he says that Jaryong has every right to wield that weapon and insists on repaying him for his earlier mistake. Then, as he looks down at his bruised thumb, courtesy of Jaryong, he points out that it's the first time he's been injured in 30 years. Saram's completely confused, but the one-eyed being calmly says that this is actually the reason he started working with humans. Saram hesitantly asks if it's because of the Gabyuk attack squad that supposedly hunted him down 30 years ago, but Argius is honestly shocked by that, saying the story's all wrong. The truth is, they never even managed to land a hit on him. Except for one person. That's when he drops the bombshell. A single human cut off his arm and almost took his life, but spared him at the last moment. Jaryong's expression shifts, deadly serious now, as he realizes the monster is talking about his father, Yu Seong. Elder Titans are known as the strongest race among all the giants. They have an endless lifespan, and only 10 of them are known to exist, making their presence on Earth incredibly rare. Their pure physical strength goes way beyond what humans can even begin to understand. But what truly sets them apart is their unmatched craftsmanship. They are famous for being equipment creators. The process of crafting weapons with special powers or making powerful artifacts is their natural talent. Aside from the Elder Titans, dwarves are the only other race blessed with the ability to create weapons. However, unlike the Elder Titans, the dwarves eventually became fine with coexisting with humans. The Elder Titans, on the other hand, not only refused to coexist, but also saw humans as completely worthless. Then, 30 years ago, during the Argius subjugation operation led by the Gabyuk attack squad, things went south when Colossus B, Argius's automated doll rated at 4 stars, launched an attack. Osunga, the dealer of Team 9 of the Gabyuk squad, announced that communication with headquarters was completely down. Kim Youngmo, the team's utility and buffer, added that all communication lines were cut, probably due to some kind of signal interference. Then Park Jongman, the team leader and tanker, started freaking out, shouting that something big was coming and that they needed to brace for impact immediately. Colossus B slams its massive fist into the ground, shaking the earth like an earthquake. Meanwhile, Sunga tries to land a hit from behind, aiming straight for its neck. But the attack does absolutely nothing. It barely dents the helmet, and that alone is enough to shock her to the core. The doll turns its glowing eyes toward her and swats her away like she's nothing more than a fly. That alone makes Youngmo freeze in fear, shaking like a scaredy cat. None of this was supposed to happen. Gabyuk Attack Squad is known as one of the best dungeon subjugation squads out there. But here, in the Dungeon of the Boiling Abyss, ruled by the Elder Titan Argius, even they're struggling just to survive. Sunga hits the ground hard and blacks out on the spot, unable to move. And that's just one doll. There are 7 Colossus B units in total. Every time they manage to take one down or escape from its attack, another shows up out of nowhere. Youngmo is starting to realize that if even the main team can't handle this, the backup teams don't stand a chance at all. Out of nowhere, a mysterious man tells Youngmo to get out of there fast, because it's already a miracle if even one of them makes it out alive. Right then, another Colossus B charges at the man, but he stands his ground and blocks the blow using a skill called Potential Trigger. This skill burns up all the user's remaining energy to boost their physical abilities to the max. But once the effect wears off, the user is left completely incapacitated. Right after that, he follows up with a shield slam to block the incoming blow from one of Argus's dolls. Youngmo, totally freaked out, yells that if the team leader uses Potential Trigger now, they're all done for. But the leader calmly tells him that there's no way everyone's making it out of here alive. He admits he doesn't have enough energy left to finish off the enemy, but he can at least hold them off long enough for the others to escape. With a slight smile, he tells Youngmo there's still a chance for him. And just then, a massive shadow looms over them, heavy enough to stop their hearts. Argius steps out, annoyed that his minions still haven't cleared the pests from his domain. At that moment, both of them know death is staring them right in the face. One last time, the leader orders the idiot Youngmo to run, while he takes on the giant himself. Deep down, he's hoping that if he charges in head first, he can at least buy them a little more time. Meanwhile, Argius, the one-eyed monster, holds a blazing sword ready to wipe out the roaches in his path. With a single slash, he burns the team leader to a crisp, calling him nothing more than an inferior pest. He mocks their equipment, saying it's absolute trash, especially in the hands of such weak bodies. To him, they're all pathetic, every being that dares to claim this world as their own. And with that, it seems clear to him that this world is bound to be doomed, which makes it all the more ironic when a so-called scaredy cat like Youngmo is suddenly standing right there, pointing his weapon at Argius. Argius, amused, remarks on his loyalty, saying it's heartwarming, even if meaningless. As the Colossus B dolls close in, Youngmo, clearly shaken, has no idea how to take down the things even the team leader couldn't handle. Then, out of nowhere, a voice echoes through the chaos, reminding them that he did say this palace wasn't safe. A casually cool guy with muscles swoops in beside Youngmo and calmly tells him that if they gather enough intel, they might have a shot at turning things around together. There's no point in rushing to be the first to clear the dungeon anyway. Still bawling, Youngmo blurts out and asks who he even is. That's when the musclehead casually reveals he picked up a distress signal, so the association sent out a rescue team. He introduces himself as Yu Seong, 32 years old, one of the volunteers. And, as if the timing couldn't be more ridiculous, he mentions he's wearing a heavier chest plate this time, just making small talk while literal death is standing right in front of them. Argius teases Seong, saying he better not have come here all by himself, but Seong casually replies that for now, he's the only one who managed to make it. Right then, a Colossus B swings its massive blade, the hit landing just inches away from connecting. Youngmo is still bawling and practically pissing his pants, knowing full well how tough these things are to take down. Meanwhile, Seong is already calculating how many more of these monsters might be lurking nearby. At this point, Seong was just some no-name adventurer, not very famous to begin with. But the first-generation adventurers know him well. They remember the guy who once single-handedly cut the arm off a Colossus B-doll. Unlike others who chase fame and accomplishments, Seong has always focused on rescuing others, which is why he stayed under the radar. But this moment, this battle, was where everything really started. In a flash, Seong charges forward and slashes a Colossus B clean in half with one insane blow. Just like that, one down. Argyus sees it with his own eye, watching as Jaryong's father, Yu Seong, makes his entrance. And Seong, not even fazed, turns to Argyus and notes that this one looks like a much bigger deal. That was the day the world started to learn who Yu Seong really is. Youngmo, witnessing the whole spectacle, has his jaw drop in shock at what a single man, Yu Seong, is capable of. Chills run down his spine as he comes to terms with the reality. This guy just took down the same monster his entire team couldn't even scratch. And Seong did it with a single blow. Suddenly Seong turns to Youngmo and asks if the magician still has any leftover mana. Hesitant and still sniffling, the crybaby admits he doesn't have much left but agrees to buff him. Seong immediately shuts that down. Instead, he asks if Youngmo can use levitation spells. Turns out he wants Youngmo to retrieve Sunga and Jongmin, who are still breathing and alive, even if unconscious. Argyus, the boss of this dungeon, finds it amusing that some little fry is sending his lackey off to rescue the others. It bruises the monster's ego to see a human so arrogant, thinking he can escape just by taking down a few dolls. Holding his blazing sword, Argyus doesn't take Seong seriously at all. But the power figure isn't backing down. Seong powers up and looks the giant dead in the eye, telling him straight up that there's no way he's letting this thing lay a finger on the kids without his permission. That's enough to piss off this one-eyed freak into unleashing his full wrath. Even then, Seong levels up like he just unlocked his Saiyan form or something. With his weapon charged, he blocks Argyus' blazing attack without even breaking a sweat. Meanwhile, Youngmo, on his way to retrieve his teammates, is left in complete shock at the spectacle unfolding in front of him. 10 years after the adhesion, most adventurers had hit a wall, but thanks to the newly unlocked potential brought on by the adhesion phenomenon, they were finally able to edge closer to the realm of superhumans. Technology also made huge leaps during that time, rapidly evolving to develop gear that could actually keep up with their boosted stats. Unlike the progress in stats and equipment, their adventurer execution was still lacking, so the real solution lay in human development, like a new kind of martial art that didn't follow common logic. Only a few people saw the need for it back then, but from that point on, they started researching and developing it. Right in the field, Seong leaps into the air to unleash a final blow, catching Argyus completely off guard. Yu Seong is one of the few who saw the endgame from the start. That strike did the job, and Youngmo jumped with joy, seeing that this man really pulled it off. After taking a solid hit to the gut, Argyus admits that this so-called small fry is turning out to be way different from the rest. He figures Seong knows exactly how to make use of what he's got. The one-eyed freak even adds that if Seong had been holding his weapon at even half his full power, things would have turned out very differently. Simply put, Yu Seong isn't famous at this point, and yet he's already starting to build a whole new name for himself. The truth is, Seong was never able to afford the top-tier equipment that was considered the best back then. Suddenly, the door bursts open as reinforcements rush in, but just as they arrive, another attack comes flying at Seong, which he blocks with full force. The monster notices that Seong has some kind of skill that not only blocks but also redirects attacks. He calls the skill inferior compared to the ones he's seen used by other humans, but even as he says that, everyone around starts preparing to strike. The monster, landing what should have been an absolutely deadly hit, says it's the end. But Seong has other plans, delivering a blow at insane speed. Somehow he blocks it again, leaving Argyus in total shock. At this point, Argyus finally realizes that the attacks weren't being redirected, they were being fully blocked. That moment marks the beginning of the skill that Jaryong will one day learn. It's the origin of the swell, a technique that takes the strength of an opponent's attack and rebounds it back with precision. Unlike most skills that rely on raw power or flashy moves, this one is built on physical strength, experience, and flawless execution. Back then, it existed on a whole different level. Argyus stands face to face with Yu Seong, who now has a burst of aura flowing from his muscular body, and what he's seeing is the martial art of a true hero. Honestly, Argyus figures there's probably a well-known story among humans where a hero finally takes down a monster, just like this. He recalls that long ago, his own father landed a strike that killed a monster from the inside. After losing to him, Argyus' life was no longer his own, but his father had a change of heart and chose not to end his life. The dungeon's clear attempt by the Gaebyuk squad looked like it was going to be a total flop, and even though the members were taken care of, the real kicker is that a single member of the rescue team ended up clearing the dungeon alone. That's one ridiculous ending to what was supposed to be a grand story. Fast forward to the important part, Elder Titans never bow to anyone they consider inferior, and yet Argyus made up his mind to ask for time to be exiled by humans. Seiram remembers that day clearly, when the entire world was left in shock. Even so, Argyus got his citizenship sorted out soon enough, thanks to his no-kill attitude. But that doesn't erase the fact that he committed crimes. To make amends, he was hired to work in the equipment department. Still, hearing that a single person cleared that dungeon is news to Seiram. Later on, to honor the man who defeated the monster inside him, Argeus created the staff that Jaryong now carries, just to pay tribute. He never asked for anything in return, but in Argeus's eyes, Jaryong seemed worthy. Jaryong never knew any of this. When he was a kid, the staff didn't seem like it had any special powers, but it felt solid, which is probably why the debt collectors decided to leave it alone. The monster even agrees that it's not really special. The staff's only real use is hitting things with blunt force. Seiram is left completely confused about the whole debt part. Right then, Argeus demands to know if Jaryong's father ever used a staff like that as his weapon, which suddenly triggers a certain memory in Jaryong's mind. The monster admits he once thought about creating an axe for Seong, but he was waiting for his father to bring back the material needed for the blade. At some point though, he lost all communication with him. Since Argeus isn't allowed to leave this place, he ended up sending the staff instead. He doesn't know all the details, but one thing is clear. He won't be able to finish the weapon for Seong now. Then the one-eyed freak turns to Jaryong and demands that he hand the incomplete weapon back. He says he'll finish it, not as a masterpiece for Seong, but as one for Jaryong himself. Seiram looks at Jaryong with a lot on her mind and asks if he's feeling okay. The smooth operator assures her that he's fine. It's just that monster making sure everything's wrapped up right, just like the last time. Turns out, Argeus didn't know exactly how long it would take, but he swears he'll finish the weapon as soon as he can. The one-eyed being suggests Jaryong be patient and wait for it. He even gives the weapon a name, the Master Piercer, which apparently is going to take some serious time and effort. Afterwards, Seiram brings up her Wednesday holiday and asks if he wants to meet again. The bimbo is thinking about hanging out that day so they can study for the written test together, and maybe take a practice test too. The chill guy is totally fine with the plan. Then, sliding in something that's been on her mind, Seiram says his father must have been an amazing person. She never imagined her own father would be the one who cleared that dungeon. She asks if Jaryong's father is in the hospital or something, maybe resting after retirement. Jaryong looks at her for a moment and says he's going ahead to be alone for a while, and she doesn't need to worry about him. Seiram, completely stunned, lets him go. Back in her elite car, Seiram checks the case summary about the Gaebyuk attack squad clearing the dungeon of Boiling Abyss. It states that, despite some minor issues during the investigation, the 5 individuals who led the charge successfully captured the dungeon's owner, Argeus. Though that's what Seiram had always believed. If what Argeus said is true, then the whole story is a lie. The 5 adventurers from the Gaebyuk attack squad are still considered legends, but those jerks might have stolen the achievement of another adventurer. Even if it's hard for her to wrap her head around, she's pretty sure Argeus has no reason to lie. And if Jaryong really inherited that kind of skill, it makes sense to think his father was incredibly powerful. Things like this have happened before. Once adventurers go into a dungeon, there's no way to really know what happens in there. She remembers the famous case of the so-called fake dragon slayer, Yu Seong. He was once considered one of the best adventurers in Korea, praised for his insane skills. But later, it came out that all his accomplishments were built on false reports and blackmail. The case only came to light when Seong himself revealed the truth after getting seriously injured. Right then, something clicks in Seiram's head as she reads a related rumor tied to the fake dragon slayer story. It claimed that Seong had actually defeated Argeus personally, but that theory was supposedly debunked by the Gaebyuk squad. Suddenly, she wonders if that man could actually be Jaryong's father. But before she can dig any deeper into the thought, her phone buzzes with a message. Apparently, her practical test scores have just been released, so she quickly checks to confirm. Meanwhile, over at Warrior High in the Dungeon Raid department, a woman in the office points out that Mr. Kang hasn't gotten a single moment of rest all weekend because of her. That woman is Cho Sehaya, the teacher for Warrior High's Room 1 and Room 2, and also a magic instructor. Kang doesn't give her too hard a time, especially since it's her first year teaching. Plus, he takes matters involving the first-year students pretty seriously. Sehaya says that everything feels out of the ordinary this year. The students' performance rates and levels are way above what she has ever seen when she was a student here. She also asks if Kang had expected that kid to take first place in the practical test. Kang says it's never that easy to predict how things will turn out. Meanwhile, Seiram is in shock after seeing the midterm results. Her mind feels like it's about to explode. Among the first years at Warrior High, there are 3 students who are considered geniuses in their class. What's ironic is that all 3 are half-bloods. First, there's Diav Choi, who inherited his swordsmanship talent from his father, a current white-class adventurer. Diav also carries the magical abilities of his elven mother, making him the perfect magic swordsman. Then there's Anisha Eskersaram, a half-blood with a huge mana pool and better mana control than most full-blooded elves. This witch easily has the potential to reach the level of grand magicians. The third is a boy born from a human and a dwarf, someone who turns heads whenever he walks in. He inherited the strength and durability of a dwarf combined with the flexibility and reflexes of a human, giving him a body with only the best traits of both species. His name is Tyr Velkason, but he goes by the Korean name Seok Cheolkang. At Warrior High, this guy seems to have the strongest physical body in the school, and actually placed first in the second semester midterm. Still, Sehaya isn't underestimating his abilities compared to the other 2. However, she's heard that the top spot in the practical test went to one of the 2 cliques. Even though the test was easier, it's hard to believe that he took first place as a solo adventurer. Kang believes that this macho freak isn't just blessed with physical strength. Sehaya feels concerned for the big guy. wishing he would open up more, especially when he clearly has the talent to become a great leader. Honestly, this hybrid doesn't care about making friends with any of the other students. Most kids, both in and outside the dungeon raid department, are scared stiff just being near him. But in the long run, especially by the second year, there's a limit to how much someone can do solo. That's why Sehyo wishes Chael Kang had at least one friend who understood him, but she can't think of anyone. Kang brings up the things that go unnoticed behind the scenes. He admits there's a limit to how much teachers can worry, but he prefers to believe in his students rather than just worry about them. He's confident Chael Kang will figure it out eventually. 4 days later, on a Wednesday morning, two jerks are goofing off and laughing until Chael Kang walks by. The moment they see him, his overwhelming presence makes their smiles vanish as a chill runs down their spines. They freeze, stiff with fear. But before they can even react, Chael Kang suddenly bows and apologizes for not noticing them earlier, explaining that he was just a little zoned out. These two dumbnuts, already on edge, start begging for forgiveness like their lives depend on it. Turns out they accidentally spilled juice on his shirt. What they don't know is that behind that rock-solid body, this so-called King Kong is actually a softie. Deep down, this hardball carries the weight of a tough life and quietly misses his mom. Back in his childhood, this King Kong was actually a cheerful kid who absolutely loved his mom's tteokbokki, even though his mother, Seok Yubin, always told him she couldn't cook, which is probably why he never got to taste it again. Seok Yubin is a well-known Korean adventurer who made her name in Northern Europe. She used to tell her son all kinds of stories about her memories from her home country, and those stories sparked a deep admiration in Chael Kang for Korean culture and people. Thanks to his natural talent and the way he grew up, Chael Kang ended up getting into Warrior High after passing the special transfer test. But the kid came with one big issue: he was extremely introverted. He could barely hold a conversation and was often overlooked. Deep down, he really wanted friends to talk to, but he wasn't confident in his Korean, which made him worry that people would think he was a joke. There's this thing about introverts: if they know a foreign language, speaking it isn't as easy as people might think. And while everyone else was scared of his intimidating vibe, Chael Kang actually hated his own personality. Because of his fear, Chael Kang unintentionally became a lone wolf by the time the first semester had passed. One day, while walking alone like usual, he noticed two friends heading into a personal computer zone to grab a spot. That's when he suddenly remembered his mom's stories about hanging out with her friends at karaoke and personal computer bangs. She'd play games, order a ton of food, and just have fun. Feeling anxious but a little inspired, Chael Kang hesitantly stepped inside to try booking a room for himself, even though he had no clue how any of it worked. While he was fumbling with the system, some guys nearby started throwing shade, saying he was taking all day. Now feeling like he's holding up the line, Chael Kang decides maybe it's better to just leave. That's when a guy suddenly speaks to him in English, telling him that what he's using is just the payment counter, and points toward the actual register on the side. Then the guy asks if Chael Kang even knows Korean. Turns out that guy is Jaryong, and he steps in to help this King Kong figure things out, telling him to follow along so he can show him how to register properly. From there on, Jaryong shows Chael Kang that it's not necessary to fill out every single thing for the registration. He points out just the important parts and guides him through it. Once the registration is done, he tells him he can pay at the machine up front. After that, Jaryong walks him through the rest, saying all he needs to do is pick a seat, log in, and he's good to go with his personal computer ready for games. Chael Kang thanks him, and the guy just lets out a sigh and relaxes into his chair. Jaryong tells him to have fun, but can't help noticing how this Korean-speaking foreigner is acting like it's his first time stepping into a personal computer bang. Meanwhile, Jaryong keeps checking the time, wondering what's taking Serom so long. She's super late, and he never expected this bimbo to be the type to keep someone waiting. If he'd known she'd take forever, he would have just gone to the black market first instead of showing up this early. Also, he has no clue what this black item in his hands even is. Back then, it was inside the chest with the royal jelly, but judging by how smooth it feels, it definitely doesn't seem edible, not that he'd dare try. Jaryong noticed it when he was all bandaged up at home and figured he'd get it appraised when he had the time. For now, though, he plans to avoid selling anything related to the Imperial Wasp. On the other hand, he's seriously thinking about selling Enkil's blood pendant for some solid cash. The tyrant of the land, Enkil, is one of the great disasters lurking in the Igar jungles, and the threat it poses hasn't stopped in decades. Over all those years, not a single squad has ever successfully subjugated it, even though countless attack teams were sent out to hunt it down. Adventurers tremble at the thought of this monster. The best those squads have ever managed to collect were a few loose scales and a tiny amount of blood. The government straight up banned hunting Enkil after that, making anything related to the beast worth a fortune beyond imagination. Jaryong had planned to meet up with Serom first, and then head to the black market at night, but this totally wrecked his schedule. Out of nowhere, Chael Kang came over and sat next to him since all the other spots were taken. Introverts tend to stress over stuff that doesn't even matter, but Jaryong figured noon was just a busy time, so he let the big guy chill beside him. After logging in, Chael Kang quickly realized there weren't any special games to play here, and his own computer actually had better specs. Then, Jaryong spotted him playing Heroes of Chaos and mentioned that he's around the same rank too. This smooth operator casually added that he had no one to play with at the moment, so he invited Chael Kang to team up for a duo match. Somewhere in a small region of Seoul, there are these abandoned bits of land called scars. Back during the adhesion phenomenon, entire cities that used to be massive were destroyed. While many of those areas were restored over time, the zones closest to dungeons were left alone. These deserted zones, which sit between the dungeon walls and city borders, still serve a purpose. They act as a second line of defense in case monsters break out of the dungeons. In the past 20 years, there haven't been any cases of monsters breaching the walls on their own. MGX 877 is a special vehicle used to transport medium-sized monsters, and today it gets permission to enter Gate S11. The driver of this vehicle always regrets coming to this place. He hates just sitting around doing nothing while his friends are out there making money hunting monsters. The man with the eye patch is sick of his whining and tells him straight up to quit this job and go hunt with his buddies if he wants. This eye patch girl is Jo Yena, a 31-year-old former gold-class adventurer who retired after an eye injury. Now, she works as a special operator for the Adventurer Association. Yena asks Sun Changwoo, a 22-year-old former bronze-class adventurer who's still perfectly fine, why he's even here. Yena points out that this whiny guy doesn't have a full license and doesn't have the skills to form a proper party. She figures the only reason this guy is even around is because he's stressed about not making enough money. Changwoo tells the eye patch to quit with the facts and just let him vent for once, but the one-eyed warden has had enough of his whining. As they drive ahead, something strange happens, and Yena wonders if the monster in the back somehow escaped or caused a ruckus. He tells Changwoo to inform headquarters they're stopping for a quick check, then jumps out of the vehicle without hesitation. While the crybaby radios in that Yena is doing a checkup, his mind spins with maddening thoughts about what could happen out there. Still, he believes Yena will be fine, but that confidence cracks when he sees a splash of blood on the window. Changwoo knows deep down that if it weren't for the eye injury, Yena would have made it to A rank. As the vehicle door swings open, Changwoo immediately starts praising Yena's swift work, only to freeze when he sees someone else standing there, blood leaking from her mouth. The strange woman smirked at the compliment, then said the girl had good reflexes for a government worker, hinting she knew why she wasn't in the field anymore. Without wasting time, she checks the list of what's inside the transport. Chills crawl up Changwoo's spine as he goes stiff with fear. The woman, looking like she was out for blood, gave him a simple order: either drive or die. On the other hand, Jaryong wins the match against Chilkang. After that, the two head out for lunch, and Jaryong calls it just perfect. He's genuinely impressed by both the food and the owner, and he never expected the guy to be around his age, especially with how tall and big he looks. But before he can ask more, something pulls his attention away as the entire place suddenly goes wild. It feels like an earthquake, followed by a loud explosion. Two random guys drinking in broad daylight stare in disbelief, wondering how someone just slammed a truck into a wall. One of them mentions calling the authorities, although he figures someone else must have already done it. Meanwhile, the strange bloodthirsty woman was already planning to pull something like this in the middle of Gangnam. She even announces to the people nearby that she hasn't done much since getting free, and yet here they are already trying to lock her up again. The guards warn her that adventurers will swarm the area the moment the alarm goes off, but Missy doesn't seem worried at all. She's confident that this time, she won't be caught. Just then, a crack appears in the truck, and Missy gives the green light to her crew to move in, casually announcing to whoever's listening that she woke all of them up. Afterwards, the whole crowd is stunned, frozen in shock as pure horror stands before them. Everyone is practically shaking, chills crawling down their spines as they stare at the creepy-looking man with a single horn. This turns out to be the Horned Horror, a monster whose power grows along with its horn. Nearby, the blood-hungry woman grins wickedly, betting that this freak will wipe out at least 50 people without breaking a sweat. She's so into it that she raises the stakes, laughing as she says 100 will drop before the rescue squad even shows up. That's when the panic really hits. The whole crowd takes off, running like their lives depend on it, which they do. Their eyes are wide with terror, but it's no use. The Horned Horror grabs victims by the head, ending them one by one without mercy. Just as the creature closes in on more helpless people, Jaryong bursts in out of nowhere with lightning speed and lands a brutal kick straight to the monster's face. A bunch of people have their jaws hitting the floor as they witness a young lad tossing around that demon-looking monster, the Horned Horror. Jaryong wastes no time and yells at the stunned crowd to pull a swift escape and get out of there. Suddenly, a memory clicks, and Jaryong realizes he's seen some of these people around a few times before. Aside from that, he knows the one-horned horrors aren't too tough to handle. Out of nowhere, he senses something speeding toward him. Turns out it's a heavy bike coming straight his way. It gets close, but Jaryong manages to dodge it just in time. That's when he spots a two-horned horror, cocky and charging at him. Without missing a beat, he smashes it in the face with a hardcore kick. He knows the lifespan of a horned horror is usually around 5 to 6 years, and most of them die off before growing a second horn. But about 8% of them do grow that second horn, and when they do, they can reproduce, live longer, and power up beyond anything considered normal. Just as the monster lets out a furious scream, Jaryong knows one thing for sure. These two-horned freaks are insanely fast and strong, but they're not unbeatable. He's totally down to take them on if he can. The real issue is their durability. Thinking back to Old Man Pilgyu, who always bragged about being a great tank, Jaryong figures these two-horned horrors are at least 3 to 4 times tougher than that guy. The problem is, Jaryong isn't even geared up. No armor, no weapons, and without them, he feels incomplete. Still, he knows he could do something if he had at least one piece of equipment. As the two-horned freak throws a punch that smashes straight through a wall, Jaryong does a double backflip just in time to dodge it. This thing's danger rank is 3 stars. Then Jaryong spots a stop sign and gets an idea. He stomps on it and breaks off the metal rod. The freak suddenly goes wild and leaps into the air. In that moment, Jaryung infuses the rod with magic, ready to smack the monster down. But before he can, the monster launches off of him and rushes toward a group of kids up ahead. The lad is caught off guard when he realizes the monster is completely ignoring him. Up ahead, the kids are frozen in fear, trembling where they stand as the terrifying creep charges at them at full speed. When it comes to danger ranks, the gap between 2 and 3 stars is pretty big. But in terms of sheer destructiveness, both are monsters that go way beyond what any normal human can handle. Against things like this, ordinary people wouldn't stand a chance. They'd be slaughtered without even knowing what hit them. Even if a skilled adventurer knows how to handle these freaks, there's only so much they can do without proper gear or support magic. But there's one exception. Out of nowhere, Kang jumps in and blocks the two-horned horror's punch using nothing but his own body. This King Kong of a guy delivers a brutal punch to the monster's gut, sending it flying like garbage. Turns out, the only ones who can pull off something this wild are those who've trained their bodies to inhuman levels, the elite tankers. Come to think of it, Kang could probably toss that thing aside with raw strength, but finishing off a 3-star monster without any weapons is still next to impossible. The monster tries to speak in some kind of gibberish, which only ticks Jaryung off. He leaps into the air and lands a clean hit straight to the back of the freak's neck, instantly taking it down. Right after that, Jaryung and Kang lock eyes, and both look totally shocked to see each other there. Before they can say anything, an explosion shakes the place. Jaryung can't believe how much damage these monsters have already caused. Kang mentions that the rescue team will need a few more minutes to arrive. On top of that, the emergency alarm has gone off, something no one expected. And while all this chaos unfolds, people are still being crushed and injured everywhere. This King Kong knows how to use the taunting call, a basic skill every tanker should learn. It's basically a scream at a high frequency that grabs the attention of any monsters nearby. Kang, who's been dreaming of becoming an adventurer, has already made up his mind. He's going to draw all the monsters toward himself and hold out until the rescue squad shows up. Until then, he tells Jaryung to get inside the building to stay out of the chaos. Deep down though, Kang doesn't have the guts to ask someone he just met to risk his life. All they've really done together is play video games and eat a few meals. Out of nowhere, Jaryung tells him to go ahead and use his taunting call, basically confirming that Kang is a legit tanker. Jaryung already figured out the plan was to lure the monsters in, and he wants the big guy to follow through. Kang, being the softie he is, says it's too risky, but Jaryung points out the obvious. He was planning to do it solo anyway. Then the man of staff adds that if he were in Kang's shoes, he'd do the same thing too. But he's not alone. He even praises Kang's gaming skills, saying he always did a great job protecting others in game. And then he drops a little truth. They don't have time to stand around talking. As the heat of the moment kicks in and the pressure of his father's shadow looms over him, Kang doesn't feel so bad about stepping up like a real adventurer. He's fired up and ready to give it his all. Everything is a complete mess inside a supermarket, where a young lad is hiding under the sink, shivering like he's in total shock as a one-horned freak chokes the life out of another guy. Just as the monster smashes the sink to crush his next victim, King lets out a taunting call with all his might, loud enough to reach far and wide. The sound waves hit the ears of every nearby monster, busy hunting humans. Even the strange, bloodthirsty woman hears it clearly, and wonders what's up with that scream. After that, King Kong is all set to take on the incoming horde, as monsters charge at him like brain-dead, high-functioning zombies. With just one finger moved, the monsters rush at the big guy like he's a free buffet. At first, Kang dodges a pitiful monster's blow and then smacks it back to show it who's boss. Another wave of two-horned monsters rushes him, and Kang's all geared up to beat them to a pulp. But suddenly, one of the monsters senses something's off and looks up, just in time to spot Jaryung diving down from above, ready to land a hit. Turns out this lad did his best to evaluate the situation, and spotted two-horned freaks hiding among the pile of one-horned monsters. Meanwhile, his eyes catch a weirdly slammed truck off to the side, and something feels off about it. It looks like they've been stacking dead bodies in the truck, which explains why there isn't a single corpse lying around on the streets. Out of the blue, the monsters dash toward Jaryung, but the lad kicks into gear, knowing that the usual methods won't cut it against these creeps. Kang figures they're all close-range fighters, but this time they're out here with no ranged support or equipment. Right now, the two of them aren't exactly a dream team either. They've got no gear or magic to back them up, and it's turning into the worst kind of match. They're gonna need to find some way to gain the upper hand. As a tanker, Kang decides to charge into the weaker ones and hold them off, while Jaryung, being the damage dealer, goes for the two-horned freaks. As Jaryung drills a hole into one of them, he figures this guy is way weaker compared to the monsters he's handled using his needle technique. Honestly, he's sure that if he had the Staff of Argues, he would have already stacked these monsters up like trash. But right now, all he's got is this beat-up old rod that's hanging on by a thread. Just as the monsters are inches closer to this guy, Jaryung is fully aware that this rod isn't his staff, but he confesses to getting the hang of it. Also, in the back of his mind, he recalls Zeke fighting barehanded and completely dominating Jaryung in every possible way. Aside from a couple of hits that landed, Zeke's strikes weren't exactly the fastest or strongest. Even so, each one seemed to slow Jaryung down, little by little, like his whole body was getting heavier with every blow. Another monster gets kicked in the face, and Jaryung narrowly dodges an incoming attack. He knows full well that even the smallest slip-up could be the end of him today. Like before, Jaryung is pushing forward, trying to level up and get stronger one step at a time. He lands a solid blow that breaks off the two-horned freak's horn and tosses the thing aside like garbage, but another one is already charging in. He's been closely watching Zeke's fighting style and now tries to mimic that same rhythm. After his father, Zeke was the first person he saw with such overwhelming strength, and thanks to that intense experience, he managed to unlock a fourth skill, Harpoon Rain, a rapid barrage of attacks that overwhelms the enemy. But just as things start to shift, a monster sneaks up behind and grabs him, slamming him into the ground so hard it knocks the wind out of him and makes him cough up blood. Now he's stuck fighting two monsters at once, and it's rough. Jaryong knows it isn't fair, but fairness doesn't matter in a fight like this. It's not some clean match between humans. It's a full-on brawl against bloodthirsty monsters. In a flash, Cheol-Kang swoops in from the side and punches that monster away like it's nothing. That's when Jaryong realizes having good teammates is a skill too. At the restaurant, a guy is filming Cheol-Kang and Jaryong beating the crap out of the monsters like it's just another part of their day. It's honestly big news that two guys managed to wipe out a dozen monsters without using any equipment. Pigface can't believe he caught it all on camera without a single glitch. He's pretty glad he decided to stay behind just to witness this heroic moment. That guy is Cho Dong-yoon, a 23-year-old college student and the president of the Dungeon Research Club. But the other dude quickly gives Pigface a dose of reality, saying he only stayed back because he was too scared to run. Kim Chang-yoon, also a college student, watches in shock, wondering where these young guys with that kind of raw power even came from. Judging by the number of high-danger monsters they just crushed, he figures they're strong enough to be ranked gold. Chang-yun guesses they might be students from Warrior High, or maybe some kind of super rookies who haven't hit the spotlight yet. When he sees Dong-yoon fumbling with the thumbnail, he's caught off guard to realize the guy is already uploading the video. That's when Pigface drops the obvious line that the news will blow up sooner or later, so he might as well be the first to post it. He's dead set on this being his shot at 1 million views or more on a viral hit. Meanwhile, on the ground, Cheol-Kang had expected the rescue squad to show up much earlier, but there was still no sign of them. All around, the remains of the horned horrors are scattered across the area. He can tell that the two of them really managed to wipe out every last one. Suddenly, Jaryong walks over, looking a bit guilty for ruining his cool moment by asking for a hand. Without missing a beat, Cheol-Kang turns and grabs his hand, helping him up. He asks if Jaryong is okay, and Jaryong leans on him a bit while saying he's pretty sure he's got a couple of fractures here and there, but it's nothing too serious. With a smile, the big guy praises him for taking down 2 of the 2 horned horrors all by himself. But Jaryong shakes his head and says that handling 9 of the 1-horned ones is actually way more impressive. He gives Cheol-Kang full credit for taking care of every single one, and even helping out with the tougher ones too. Still, Cheol-Kang looks kind of shy about taking all the praise and tries to shift the topic by asking which school Jaryong goes to. He admits he never really believed the rumors, thinking Korea didn't have schools that could produce kids this strong. But before Jaryong can even answer, Cheol-Kang gets awkward, thinking maybe he just offended him by calling his school bad, and starts fumbling for an excuse. Deep down though, he's pretty convinced Jaryong has to be from Warrior High, since his skills speak for themselves. But instead of answering, Jaryong flips the question back at him and asks Cheol-Kang what his rank is and how many people his age are actually stronger than him. He feels a little embarrassed admitting that he hasn't gotten close to anyone rank-wise yet. He did take a couple of tests, but they didn't really reflect his actual skill. He figures he's somewhere in the middle. That honestly shocks Jaryong, making his curiosity bubble up. It feels way lower than he expected, and now he's starting to worry he might get rejected before he even gets the chance to prove anything. Meanwhile, he also notices that the one-horned monster is still standing frozen in place. He wonders if it plans on staying like that forever. From the looks of it, they figure it's the same one that wasn't affected by Cheol-Kang's taunting call. When Jaryong's asked about it, he doesn't think the species itself has anything special going on, but whatever's stocked up in that truck might be a different story. Cheol-Kang suggests keeping an eye on it, since dealing with a single horned horror would still be manageable even if it goes wild. But then, out of nowhere, something inside the truck grabs the horned horror and yanks it in like it's being devoured. That instantly puts the two of them on high alert. Cheol-Kang starts to get uneasy, knowing that horned horrors usually live in tribal societies where a two-horned one acts like a parent, and also the chief. That chief usually leads a group of 10 or so, and when they merge with other tribes, they help expand the numbers and reproduce. But even that kind of growth has its limits. Within the cruel environment of the dungeons, the horned horror sits at the bottom of the food chain. Their numbers are kept in check thanks to stronger predators roaming the area. But on rare occasions, under very specific circumstances, a mutant can emerge from the surface, one with the potential to grow 3 horns. Unlike the usual 2-horned that leads a small tribe, this one doesn't just command a few followers. He becomes a king, capable of leading an entire army of hundreds. This rare monster is known as the Horned Horror Rex, carrying a 5-star danger rating. Suddenly, Rex bursts out of the truck, and the moment his eyes lock onto the two men, everything shifts. Jaryong and Cheol-Kang freeze in shock, both stunned to their core as they realize a 3-horned nightmare is heading straight for them. Without warning, Rex charges in with blazing speed, and they barely manage to dodge in time. But he quickly shifts his focus to Jaryong, who is completely caught off guard, and tries his best to block the incoming hit. In a split second, Rex's brutal punch shatters his rod and slams straight into his gut, knocking him out of the way like a rag doll. Without missing a beat, Cheol-Kang rushes in, putting himself between Jaryong and Rex to stop the monster from landing a killing blow. With all his might, he's doing everything he can to push Rex back. But out of nowhere, Rex grabs Cheol-Kang like he's nothing more than a rag and slams him into the wall, leaving a giant crack spidering across it. It's clear, they're running out of time. These two, often called geniuses and believed to be destined for greatness, just aren't there yet. No matter how much resolution, strength, courage, or instinct they throw into this fight, there's still a huge gap in experience and growth that they simply can't bridge right now. Jaryong forces himself to stand again, yelling at this hideous freak to stop, but Rex moves like he weighs nothing, slipping through the air and smashing his full body into Jaryong. Right then, Rex senses something off. On this very day, before everything went south for the man named Yu Seong, back when no one really knew much about him, something was left behind, something that no one talks about. And now, that same thing begins to rise again as Jaryong suddenly starts emitting a purple aura that screams danger. 11 years ago, Yu Seong stood before a press conference, confessing everything. He is admitting to the mistakes he made and apologizing for all of it, hoping the people can forgive him. His public confession shocked the entire world. 12 hours earlier, while Chilkang and Jaryong were out facing a horde of horned horrors and putting their lives on the line, Sarum was left alone with her thoughts. She was stuck in a state of confusion, convinced there had to be a reason behind that strange and clearly false confession. Her mind kept spinning non-stop, trying to process everything she had learned since last Sunday about how Yu Seong was suspected in several major incidents. As a result, she had spent the last 2 full days digging deep, researching old records, and trying to uncover the truth. She was convinced that Jaryong's father, also known as Yu Seong, had been framed for crimes he never committed, though the reason behind it was still a mystery. One thing she understood clearly was that a lot of people got greedy, wanting to take the #1 spot after the strongest adventurer had lost his powers. Now, the only thing left to figure out was how it all actually went down when it happened. According to the records, it said that Seong forged 43 accomplishments, and Sarum is completely thrown off by how such clear forgery shows up in the reported data. The whole case is just insane, and even the public at the time didn't fully buy into it. People weren't all on the same page, because even with those supposedly forged documents, Seong's reputation was still solid. She tries putting herself in his shoes and thinks she would have fought back all the way to the end too. But what she just can't wrap her head around is why Seong didn't fight back, and instead accepted every single accusation thrown at him. After the press conference, any voices that supported him were silenced, and ended up turning against him, feeling betrayed, which made Seong look like a huge liar overnight. Still, Sarum can't figure out why he would make a fake confession like that, even if something or someone forced his hand, because admitting to everything would only make things worse for him. And yet, when she watches the video, the look on his face doesn't scream injustice or anger. It just looks like a man who has accepted his fate. All of a sudden the answer clicks when she digs deeper into the basic details and finds out that Yu Seong never officially had a family. That completely throws her off, making her question if Yu Seong is even Jaryong's real father. But then it hits her. It actually makes sense not to report his family on paper, especially when Jaryong and Seong look so much alike. That leads her to the conclusion that there's a good chance Jaryong's existence had something to do with Seong accepting all those allegations. Meanwhile, Jaryong had no idea about any of this, and he's just as clueless about what's happening to his body as it starts glowing with a purple aura. At that exact moment, Rex comes charging at him like a bloodthirsty butcher. Still, if there's one thing Jaryong knows, it's that his body can finally move. And just as Rex gets within inches, Jaryong's purple mode suddenly kicks in, and he delivers a jaw-cracking punch straight to Rex's face. Being able to move was all he needed to keep going, and now that he can, he's not planning to stop. Rex's face says it all. This new version of Jaryong is in serious trouble. Right then, the lad activates his 4th skill, Harpoon Rain, unleashing a wild barrage of attacks like a madman. With that, he steps back up just as Rex is about to explode with rage over the humiliation. Rex fires off a brutal kick, but Jaryong dodges it like a pro, and watches as Rex comes diving down from above with another attack. In that moment, Rex sees the demonic form of Jaryong, and it's enough to send chills down anyone's spine. Just like that, Jaryong counters with a savage kick that blasts the 3-horned freak like a rocket, slamming him into the wall and leaving an even bigger crack than before. Still, the lad knows it's not over yet, but with his last 2 hits, he managed to carve out a weak spot. Turns out, Rex's chin is vulnerable, and Jaryong figured it out using his needle technique. Rex is completely pissed now, while Jaryong's confidence is riding high, thinking he's about to beat the crap out of him. But his luck runs out fast, and his purple aura vanishes, probably for talking too soon. Out of fuel and panting, Jaryong watches Rex pull himself out of the wreck in an even worse mood. Meanwhile, Jaryong is cursing his luck for running out of energy at the worst possible time. Just as Rex charges straight at the lad, a whole truck comes flying in and crushes him from the side. There's a reason why adventurers have different roles, and this tanker just proved it by tossing an entire truck to stop the monster. Everyone has a role that fits them best, but even then, Rex shakes it off just a second later. With his rage completely out of control, he goes straight for Cheolkang, who throws everything he has into blocking the blow. Even when a tanker's body is on the verge of breaking down, they fight with the will to stand tall until the very end. That's what it means to be a tanker. As Rex closes in to finish Cheolkang off, Jaryong jumps at the chance and delivers a devastating punch right to Rex's chin. That's the job of the damage dealer, to strike hard when even the smallest opening appears. In that moment, Rex's facial veins burst from the inside, and his head blew apart, finally putting an end to the monster. Turns out, a vehicle carrying a load of monsters had been stolen, leading to dozens of civilian casualties. Cheolkang helps Jaryong stay on his feet, since he can barely stand now. Chael Kang lets out a laugh when he sees the rescue squad showing up, like it's perfect timing. It takes less than an hour for the whole world to hear about the insane events that just went down. But what really spreads like wildfire is the story of the two boys, better yet, the two heroes, who made it happen. The news even reaches Broken, who's still trying to figure out why his dear smuggler suddenly changed careers. One day, little Jaryong hurt his elbow, and his father helped him bandage it. Jaryong kept insisting on letting it heal on its own, but his father told him to relax and let him treat it properly, even if it was just a small injury. He explained that small wounds can get worse later and end up hurting even more. That made the little guy ask if it hurts when his dad fights monsters and bleeds a lot. His father gently admitted that he does get scared, just like Jaryong, whenever he gets hurt or bleeds. But he said he tries harder to hide the pain so he can do his job, because if he can't handle it, someone else might get hurt instead. Ever since that moment, Jaryong had always dreamed of growing up to be just like his father. He wanted to tell him that, but something always stopped him. Deep down, he felt like his father didn't want him to follow the same path and instead wanted him to find a different life. Whenever his dad talked like that, his face always looked like he regretted everything and was filled with sorrow. Because of that regretful look on his father's face, Jaryong once decided he would never become an adventurer. He always thought that maybe one day, when he grew up, he could ask his father for the real reason behind it all, but now, that day would never come. Soon after, Jaryong wakes up in a hospital bed, feeling strangely nostalgic. Out of nowhere, a familiar voice teases him, asking if he's messing with him by saying things like that. Jaryong is caught off guard when he sees Zeke casually peeling an apple. Zeke explains that the reason he passed out was that he had made up his mind. Just as he says that, Jaryong gets hit with a nerve-wracking pain all over his body. Zeke tells the brat to take it easy and avoid moving around too much for now. Then, in a gentler tone, he mentions that the injuries Jaryong had were serious enough to put someone into a coma, but thankfully, the treatment worked. He also reassures him that he'll be fully recovered by the end of the month, and firmly orders him to focus on resting and regaining his strength, since he's going to need it for what's coming next. Right then, Jaryong smirks and says that thanking Zeke would be too boring for a moment like this, then wonders if he can ask him something. Zeke already knows what's coming and answers flatly with a yes. He did know Jaryong's father. Zeke calmly mentions that he and Jaryong's father used to work together. In a flash, Jaryong makes a quick move to catch the peeled apple slice from Zeke's hand, and surprisingly, Zeke doesn't even flinch. Though he stays cool on the outside, he didn't expect such a sudden reaction from the kid. As Jaryong munches on the apple, he shows interest in knowing more about his father. He also points out how different Zeke is acting now compared to when they first met, which makes him think Zeke and his dad were more than just co-workers. Before Zeke can respond, Jaryong mimics exactly what Blondie probably expected from him. He shoots a sharp glare into his eyes, saying he could tell him to leave and die, or maybe even cut his arm with a knife in his hand just to prove a point. Zeke is clearly thrown off, while Jaryong mocks how he's trying his best to act all serious and dramatic. With a sigh, the sun-kissed half-blood admits he thought Jaryong would lash out a lot worse after hearing the truth. On that note, Jaryong says if that's what he was expecting, he should have shown up 3 years earlier, back when his head was full of rage at the people who stood by and let his father suffer. He says he was already on the path of revenge back then. When asked what changed, Jaryong says he's matured and now focuses on better things. Plus, he jokes that he must have been out of his mind back then, since he isn't even strong enough to beat Blondie right now, so there was no point going after revenge with skills like that. He also says he's been focused on paying his father's hospital bills and is busy searching for a cure, which in his eyes matters way more than anything else. Just like that, he's dead set on doing whatever it takes. And if anyone gets in his way, he swears he'll do whatever it takes to carve his path forward. On that note, Zeke explains that he has no intention of standing in his way. He's only here to look into why Jaryong isn't legally registered as Yuseong's son. Plus, when things got ugly with his father's condition and how he ended up like this, he just wants to know who was there taking care of him. That's when Jaryong says that Yuseong raised him as a single father and did everything on his own. His father knew there were people out there who would cause trouble if they found out he had a kid, so he kept it quiet and raised Jaryong in secret. From there, Zeke suddenly asks if Jaryong knows anyone named Duganawig. When Jaryong says he doesn't, Zeke drops the bomb that it's not just a name, it's the official title of a world-ending dragon, and it's the very source of the poison that's killing his father. Not only that, it's the world's most dangerous elder dragon, one that still exists to this very day. Over the past few decades, that name has become something people fear across the globe. After a few years of the adhesion phenomenon, the Otherworlders helped construct the wall, and adventurers started rising in huge numbers. Dungeons and monsters stopped being a major threat to humanity's survival, but there were always exceptions, like powerful beings that could tear through the walls, like dragons, a species stronger, smarter, and sneakier than anything else out there. On top of that, this higher race had a twisted attitude, showing open hostility and superiority toward humans. That's the most dangerous kind of species, not the ones who hate or ignore humans, but the ones who actually target them to wipe them out completely. But those beings seriously underestimated humans. The dragons assumed the dungeons would be enough to bring about humanity's end, but things didn't go the way they expected. Zeke says that all law and order disappeared from their world once dragons started playing God, offering protection in exchange for total control. Jaryong jokes that maybe people should thank them, but Zeke points out that it was the appearance of adventurers that really started clearing out the dungeons. When things didn't go the way the dragons planned, they went berserk and decided to take matters into their own hands. using brute force to threaten humanity. That's when his father stepped into the chaos. The man had the right strategy and the guts to follow through, proving that dragons could be defeated. That news spread to every corner of the world and changed everything. Jaryong says he's heard about that and how dragons supposedly went into hiding after. But Zeke corrects him, saying dragons didn't hide, they just changed tactics. Those sly creatures can even shift their appearance to blend in. After realizing that their power wasn't enough to wipe out humanity, the dragons started changing their appearances to blend into human society. That news hit Jaryong like a ton of bricks. Blondie only shared all this classified info because Jaryong is Yu Seong's son and he's set on becoming an adventurer. On top of that, he calls Duganawig one of the leaders of the dragons, and the very target Yu Seong was chasing before his downfall. If Jaryong can somehow take down that beast, there's a real shot at creating an antidote for his father. For that to happen, Zeke tells him he needs to grow even stronger as an adventurer, while Zeke himself wants to create an opportunity for him to end Duganawig once and for all. Afterward, Jaryong stands by the window of his hospital room, holding Zeke's card in his hand. Zeke's last words keep echoing in his mind, saying that Jaryong has every right not to trust him and live however he wants. But Jaryong is fired up and totally on board with the plan. The lad gladly jumped at the opportunity. Zeke reminds him that it's not his call to make, because he already told him to climb to the top if he wants to make it happen. He describes the dragons as sly creatures hiding within human society, wearing masks and waiting for the perfect moment. There's no point in trying to dig up evidence to prove their existence, because that won't help capture them. Once they're exposed, they'll just come up with a new plan and disappear again. From there, things will only grow worse, more fear, more distrust. To fix this mess, one must be clean, quick, and precise in cutting out the root of the problem. Zeke advises Jaryong to act fast and come up with plans to eliminate them before they get the chance to run, hide, and come back even stronger. Not only that, he pulls out a car while revealing a team that's been in the making for the past couple of years to take down Duganawig, a group made up of trustworthy, skilled adventurers capable of defeating a dragon. But he makes it clear that if he's not strong enough to stand beside them, then there's no place for him on that team. Blondie doesn't want to recruit someone who could end up causing the mission to fail and putting everyone's life in danger. That said, Jaryong figures they don't seem like the type to wait around for him, so he asks how much time he has. Turns out, he has about 2 years to find Duganawig's current location, though there's a chance they might find it a little sooner. Still, Zeke agrees with Jaryong. They're not going to wait. Whether he chooses to join or act like this never happened, Zeke wanted to let him know that either way, he's hunting Duganawig down. Later, Jaryong couldn't stop shaking when he found out there was actually a way to heal his father. He splashes water on his face to take in all this sudden news, wipes it off, and wonders if deep down he's afraid he won't be able to climb to the top and earn the green flag to get into the top dog's team. He's got a shot at revenge for his father, but part of him is scared he might not make it. But she shakes it all off, saying with determination that he's going to make it. No matter what it takes, he's dead set on reaching the top. Honestly, he finds it kind of delightful to finally have a shot at the sweet revenge he's worked so hard for. Not to mention, he's been waiting his whole life for this team to come together without even a sliver of hope, and now he finally has the chance to do something about it. For the first time, he feels a small flame starting to build inside him. It fills Jaryong with excitement and thrill. Out of nowhere, a woman barges in to check on him. She asks if he's feeling any pain in his arm or anywhere else. Jaryong tells her his muscles hurt, but she reassures him that the doctor will explain everything. She reveals that the soreness will stick around for a while since they had to rebuild his arm from the ground up. That news sends a shock through his system when she tells him his arm was in a seriously critical state when he arrived. She even adds that one wrong move could have cost him the entire arm, but thanks to a high-ranking healer, Zeke, they managed to rebuild it completely. On top of that, Jaryong asks what happened to his friend who came in with him. She remembers that the guy actually checked out the same day he arrived because his recovery rate was incredible. This makes him wonder how much time has actually passed since then. All of a sudden, the nurse, blushing, awkwardly asks if she can take a photo with Jaryong. He feels a little weird about it, but goes along with it like a clueless dude. After that, Jaryong checks if he's good to leave, and the nurse gives him the green light, but she warns him to avoid the main doors to stay out of trouble. When he asks why, the nurse drops the bomb that the whole hospital is swarming with journalists and reporters desperate to get an interview with him. Jaryong has no idea why they're so eager, so the nurse shows him a video that's gone viral. Turns out, his face-off with Rex and the army of horned horrors got posted online and blew up. It could have easily ended in disaster, but the two of them did so much to prevent what could have been hundreds of casualties. Since then, everyone's been dying to know who he is, and people have been coming non-stop for the past few days. After that, the nurse hands him something his friends left for him, which sounds like it came from Seiram. She gave him a disguise so he could slip out the back of the hospital without drawing attention. Jaryong figures Seiram probably enchanted it with some kind of identification disruption spell, along with a rope for climbing. Even though his muscles are still sore, the guy manages to jump out of the building using the rope. The nurse promises to post the photo when he becomes a really famous adventurer, and Jaryong responds with a warm smile. From there on, Jaryong finds Seiram's car and starts whining about her choice of using a rope, but Seiram just says it was the best way to keep his identity hidden. When he asks about it, she admits she went shopping for him. She also mentions that she didn't know his size, so she had to improvise, and yeah, she got him a new phone too. As she looks at him, Jaryong is giving off this puppy smile, almost like he's about to burst into tears of joy. On top of that, Seiram can't believe he got himself into such a huge mess, but also that he managed to take down that monster. Jaryong just shrugs it off like it's business as usual for him, since his life is full of random accidents and crazy incidents. Saeram says they should take a break for the day and thinks Jaryong should rest too, but they don't really have time, so they need to get his measurements done for clothes today. When he says he already has enough clothes, Saeram calls him a buffoon and tells him she's talking about adventurer wear. She wishes he understood just how lucky he is to be getting gear from the world's best tailor, someone who actually agreed to create armor just for him. There are 3 main types of armor, based on the materials used to make them. The first type is fabric. It's basically just clothing, and when it comes to protection, it's the weakest. But it's super easy to process in different ways and works really well with support magic. It's lightweight, flexible, and can be layered or enchanted depending on what the user needs. That's why it's mostly worn by healers and magicians who stay in the backlines. The second type is metal, and it goes without saying that it's the strongest material for defense. But the problem is the weight, especially metal pulled from dungeons, which is way stronger and a lot heavier. No one can wear this kind of armor unless they have serious strength and stamina to support it. Some adventurers even do special training routines or take mana-infused supplements just to get used to the weight. It gives a good balance between protection and movement, so it's great for fast-paced battles or skirmishes. Then Saeram moves on to leather, which sits right in the middle tier of armor types. The material is solid and just heavy enough, making it perfect for a close-range damage dealer like him. Jaryong says that fighting without any armor is pretty tough, and he had to learn that the hard way, all while powering on his phone. Saeram then asks how he managed to pull off what he did during the Horned Horrors fight, especially how the 2 of them took down all those opponents. Jaryong tells her that the video taken during the battle explains it better than he can, but Saeram points out that the recording starts from the middle, and she only saw the parts where they were fighting 1 or 2 of the horned ones. She adds that his battle with the 5-star Horned Horror wasn't recorded at all. Jaryong thinks back to the 5-star Horned Horror and how insanely strong it was. Even if he and Chaelgang had been perfectly prepared, they still wouldn't have been able to beat it. He still doesn't know where that power came from. That moment doesn't make sense to him, like something outside of himself had taken over. Saeram asks him to explain how he did it, but he just says he's not sure. It just happened, and that's really all he can say. Saeram stares at him, thinking there's no way she can just believe that, especially when even seasoned adventurers need a full raid party to take down something that strong. But looking at him, he doesn't seem like he's hiding anything either. She watches him mess around with his new phone and quietly wonders if he really did defeat a 5-star monster. She tells him to be careful, warning that things are about to get hectic for him, and he needs to understand just how serious this is. There's nothing funny about what's coming. She mentions that the reporters already found out about Chaelgang and how he's been stuck doing all kinds of interviews for the past 4 days. But even then, he never mentioned Jaryong's name, even when everyone was pushing him to. Jaryong remembers that he had asked Chaelgang for a favor, to just say he wasn't sure what happened that day, because he didn't want people finding out about him. Saeram huffs and says the 2 of them are already acting like close friends. She tells him that no one can know about this until he transfers schools. As she keeps talking about how hard she looked into his performance and how complicated things are, Jaryong quickly messages the boss to meet up later that night. She keeps pressing about how difficult it is, but he argues that it's probably the people who were unqualified who still applied and made things worse. He assures her that he'll be fine, especially since she got in. As they walk ahead, she tells him he's clearly the best among the groups, but he should try to understand the others too. He asks if she means people are forming alliances for the exam. Saeram explains how, over the past few years, their school has taken in more and more second-generation adventurers. Most of them have at least one parent who's an adventurer, and all the parents know each other already. There are tight-knit connections and unspoken pacts between families, which give their kids a serious advantage. That helps them form parties for their kids in advance, and more than half the students already belong to those kinds of groups. Saeram tells him he needs to realize that what's going to happen once everyone finds out he's the talk of the town, he's going to be targeted. But Jaryong refuses to let that bother him. He says he'll make it on his own no matter what, and he's ready to do anything to surpass everyone and get accepted. Looking around, he asks where the bathroom is, and Saeram points him in the right direction, telling him to meet her back in the hallway. She heads off to the reception, where the person in charge informs her that the president won't be able to meet her due to something urgent. She protests, saying he's fully booked on every other day. The person replies that the president will pay the breach of contract fee. Frustrated, Saeram insists that they can't just cancel her appointment without even telling her. Just then, a voice cuts in. It's Han Gayun, the current president of Yongsa High School. She steps forward and says that Saeram should give up her meeting with her uncle, the president, for her. That's the best she can offer. Saeram tries to reason with her, but her thoughts wander to how Han Gayun is seen as the pinnacle of their generation, someone idealized and practically untouchable. Suddenly, Jaryong walks in and says there's nothing they can do. Saeram has an emergency. As a senior from their school, she has every right to take a stand for herself. He tells Gayun to stop trying to pull anything and just get lost. The receptionist looked nervously at Jaryong, then turned her eyes to Gayun. Gayun let out a small snicker and said Jaryong seemed like a go-getter, then asked if he really was one. Saeram tried to step in just as Gayun's expression twitched slightly, and suddenly, Saeram felt a sharp, slicing pain, like a paper cut, but 100 times worse, cutting across her skin. She flinched, snapping out loud, confused by the sudden jolt. Gayun tilted her head and said it was strange. Why was she even hearing Saeram's voice? Saeram looked down, eyes wide, questioning whether what she felt was real, or just some twisted result of Gayun's intimidation technique. Without breaking her cold expression, Gayun said she hadn't asked anything from her and called her Miss Bottom of the class. telling her to stop acting out of line and keep her mouth shut for her own good. Her voice was full of venom, every word steady and sharp like a blade. Jaryong steps in, casually telling her his age, his blood type, and where he lives, then adds that his favorite food is stir-fried sausages with vegetables. He asks if that much information is enough, or if he forgot to mention something important. His tone stays light, almost playful, but there's a steel edge hidden just beneath his words. Then he says he's preparing to take the transfer exam for Yongsa High School, but it's kind of disappointing to see seniors trying so hard to act like gangsters, enforcing some weird hierarchy like it's an old delinquent movie where punks ruled the hallways. Gayun bursts into hysterical laughter, and with another twitch, Jaryong suddenly feels the sharp sting of invisible cuts ripping through his body. He staggers a bit, one hand going to his ribs as the pain hits. Gayun smiles and says she doesn't exactly hate people who speak their minds, but he seems to disqualify himself right from the start. She asks if he seriously wants to transfer to Yongsa, and if he even realizes how arrogant he sounds for someone who's just an unqualified, defective product. Her words hit like knives, sharp and impossible to ignore. Jaryong straightens up and sends the same piercing sensation back at her, catching Gayun off guard. She stands frozen as he asks if that's how the trick works, and says he only took one lesson, but he's not sure she'd like it. His eyes gleam with challenge, his body slightly hunched like a cat ready to strike. Just then, a voice calls out Gayun's name. Sungwoo, the president, steps out of his office, his expression sharp as he demands to know what she thinks she's doing. He tells her she can't just barge in while he's working and act like it's her playground. The hallway, thick with tension a moment ago, now hums with authority. He brings up how she stormed into his office and told the receptionist to lie to Saram about him being busy. He reminds her she was already in trouble just a week ago and warns her to stop stirring up more chaos, asking if she's really trying to drive her father insane. He turns to the others and gives a polite bow, apologizing on his niece's behalf and saying that managing her is practically impossible. Saram quickly steps in, telling him it's all right and that he doesn't have to apologize. But in her mind, she wonders if Gayun was just being reckless, or if this is how she always is. It's a relief that the situation didn't spiral further, but the whole encounter still rattled her. Gayun is even worse than she imagined, and the thought gnaws at her as her heart keeps pounding. Her uncle scolds her again, telling her to grow up, while she just nods with clear disdain. Saram watches, thinking how Gayun only ever interacts with elites unless someone is just as good as the student council. Just then, Jaryong gestures for her to come closer, and quietly asks who Gayun is at their school, saying she doesn't seem like just an ordinary senior. His voice is low, like a whisper over an incoming storm. Saram leans in and whispers back that Gayun is the student body president and holds the most power out of all the students at Yongsa High. At adventurer training schools like theirs, every student is issued a temporary license, which lets them accompany professional adventurers on low-difficulty explorations, usually during holidays or school breaks. It's part of how they prepare for the real world, giving them a taste of what it's like to be a professional. These field assignments aren't just for experience, they're considered a rite of passage. But there's one big exception to the rule: the student council at Yongsa. Made up of the most elite students, they're unofficially acknowledged as professional-level raiders. They even have the right to give opinions directly to the board of directors, and can join actual pro-raid parties. Everyone calls them rankers to be. He asks if Gayun is 2 years older than they are since she's the student body president and in her senior year. Saram whispers back that that's how it should be, but Gayun's actually a junior. She took over the position from the previous president. Jaryong looks surprised and asks what she means by that. Saram reminds him how their school only respects skill, and that students can join the school council from the first semester of their junior year. Gayun did just that as soon as she became a junior, and on top of that, she immediately drew her sword. It turned into the biggest incident in the school's history. Gayun challenged every senior council member, and before her first semester ended, she had defeated all of them, including 10 former presidents, and became the youngest student council president ever. Just as Gayun turns to leave, Jaryong stops her and tells her to make a bet, saying he heard she's in a hurry, leaving Saram completely stunned. He says from what he's heard, she sounds like a big deal at their school, and he's sure she had her reasons for throwing tantrums in front of her juniors, so one simple bet shouldn't be a problem. His voice carries a strange kind of boldness, like someone who's already stepped halfway across a bridge with no plans to turn back. Saram tries to stop him, but Gayun looks at Jaryong and asks if that means she has to give up if she loses. Jaryong smirks and says she's smart. He tells her there's a technique called snatching steps, a basic player versus player training exercise for adventurers, rooted in Koryu martial arts. The rules are simple. If you make contact with your opponent first, or trap them in a position where they can't dodge, you win. It's all about timing, movement, and above everything else, pressure. He tells her that if he loses, he'll give up his appointment slot, but if she loses, he'll be taking over as student body president next year once he's accepted. Saram thinks he's completely lost his mind, but she also knows this kind of challenge would drive Gayun just as crazy if she let it go. Sure enough, Gayun smirks and says it sounds fun, then takes his bet. Jaryong stands in the durability testing room, facing Gayun, who looks calm and fully prepared. The two of them lock eyes, tension thick in the air. Off to the side, Saram watches with her arms crossed, feeling like she's witnessing two lunatics about to go off the rails. She remembers how just a few minutes ago she had tried convincing him to back out. She'd told him there was still time, that Mr. Han was a reasonable man, and would probably let him go if they just apologized and slipped away quietly. She'd even pointed at his broken arm, reminding him that he wasn't in any shape to fight, and even if by some miracle he won, Gayun wasn't the type to actually hand over her title like that. But he had cut her off, saying he already knew he couldn't beat her. That had stopped her cold. He said even at his best, the odds would still be against him. There was no denying Gayun's insane strength. She asked him if he knew he was going to lose. Then what was the point? Why not just walk away now? But he just grinned and said he understood why she was freaking out, and that it made sense. Still, he needed her to trust him on this one. And even if the whole thing looked reckless, he believed it was going to be worth it. Seoram watches Jaryong standing in the fighting ring, her thoughts circling back to what he said earlier. She wonders what he could gain from a fight he's clearly going to lose. Maybe, she thinks, he's just trying to win Gayun over by letting her crush him. But then she immediately shakes the thought away. He definitely doesn't come off as the type to suck up to anyone. He's not an ass kisser, and she's never gotten that kind of vibe from him. Her train of thought gets cut off when Mr. Han speaks up beside her, letting out a tired sigh and saying how embarrassed he is by the whole situation. He says that Gayun's supposed to be leading the student council, yet somehow she's always acting like she's on the edge of a cliff. He bows slightly towards Seoram, apologizing again, but she quickly waves her hands and tells him not to, because this really isn't his fault. She tells him Jaryong brought this on himself, he's just as ridiculously stubborn, and it makes no sense. Mr. Han glances back at the ring and says quietly that even so, he doesn't think Jaryong's doing this for nothing. He admits he doesn't know much about the boy, but from what he's seen, Jaryong looks like someone who knows exactly what he's after. In the fighting pit, Gayun tells Jaryong that she won't be using her hands either, saying it's only fair. He smirks, brushing it off, saying he doesn't care what she does, and he gets that she probably wants to have an excuse ready in case she loses. As the wind shifts through the room, she suddenly appears right in front of him, and he barely dodges by a hair. The room freezes in shock. Mr. Han and Seoram both stare, stunned, though for different reasons. Seoram thinks about how Gayun isn't even using that much power, but her speed is terrifying, so fast that she couldn't even see her move. Gayun's aggressiveness, that speed, it rattles her. Snatching steps is supposed to be a careful and defensive training technique. To make contact, you have to take a risk. That's what the move is about. But Gayun doesn't seem to care about risk at all. She charges in with nothing but precision and raw speed, letting her skill speak for her arrogance. Seoram feels a chill. She watches how Gayun's body moves, like water sliding downhill. Effortless, fast, impossible to pin down. It makes her heart skip. Then Mr. Han, standing beside her, speaks again, breaking through her spiraling thoughts. He says he might not be the first to ask, but he wonders if she's really sure that Jaryong is just a student trying to transfer into Yongsa High. He thinks back to the data he's seen. Sure, Jaryong seemed impressive on paper, but seeing him in person, he realizes Jaryong might be far more than anyone expected. He thinks Jaryong isn't acting like this out of pride or because he underestimates Gayun. He just wants to understand. He knows Gayun is already way beyond the level of other teenagers and could easily beat a lower-ranked adventurer, but he wants to see it for himself, how far she's willing to go, and how he can reach her, not to overtake her, but to close the gap. Jaryong studies her moves carefully, then copies them and launches his own attack. She smirks, saying it's a refreshing change to finally have someone actually putting up a fight. She makes sure to say out loud that it hasn't taken her this long to beat someone since she started high school. She didn't expect him to last this long, especially given his condition right now. He looks at her, panting, and stays quiet. Then Gayun asks if his arm is the only thing that hurts. She adds that his movements and stamina must be less than half of what they usually are. He smiles and replies that she wouldn't know because she hasn't seen him at his full strength yet. Gayun smirks and says she knows he was much faster when fighting off the horned horrors, adding that she's rewatched the videos of him probably 100 times in the last 3 days. She suggests they call it a draw for now and save the real match for after he's been accepted into the school and fully recovered, because it would be a waste of talent to end it like this. Just then, Jaryong stands up and says she really is something, having a sharp eye for detail but also strangely confident, and maybe she doesn't fully get what's going on. Then he declares that he doesn't do draws and isn't planning to give up, so they should stop dragging it out and start the fight for real once he's gotten the hang of it. Everyone thinks he's bluffing, since he has nothing to gain from this fight and even turned down the best opportunity he could get. Gayun gets into position, teasing him that it's bad, he just revealed how stupid he is. He takes his stance, and Seoram thinks maybe he's about to make the first move. Moving with the wind, Jaryong rushes toward her, kicking at full strength. Gayun manages to dodge, leaving even her surprised. Mr. Han says that Jaryong wasn't just saving his strength and that his goal wasn't simply to get a sense of Gayun's abilities. He realized that Jaryong had learned all of Gayun's attack patterns. It became clear that Jaryong's goal wasn't to win at all. The only thing on his mind was to steal Gayun's skills. He moved past her easily and declared that he had figured out how she dodges like that. Jaryong started working as a smuggler at a young age, but there are principles he never breaks. He got into position and called Gayun out, telling her not to zone out and to keep this going because he still had a lot more to show her. The only rule he follows to this day is that he never makes a deal that doesn't pay off. Technique isn't just about a single powerful attack that can take down an opponent. It's about posture and movement, all fine-tuned to bring out the best in a person based on what they want to achieve. It includes everything from how you control your breathing to even the smallest step you take. Building these details takes time. Some people spend their entire lives gaining experience, learning through trial and error. What they learn gets passed down to the next generation, and the cycle continues. No matter how naturally gifted you are, you can't beat generations of experience without help in just a few years. It's not just about how you throw a punch or swing a sword, but how you live every movement, each action telling a story of practice, patience, and perseverance. Even though Jaryong was incredibly talented and kept improving on his own, when he turned 17 and stopped growing, he hit a wall. To get better, he had to find a way to overcome new challenges. He gets into a stance and asks what Gayun is waiting for, reminding her that she said they could have a rematch once he gets accepted to her school or whatever. He adds that if he were her, he'd welcome the chance to teach a thing or two to a future freshman. But if she has nothing left to prove, he can understand that too. Gayun is speechless for a moment, then smirks and reminds her uncle of the favor he asked last time she caused trouble, the one about the raiders wanting to sign a contract. He told her to meet them so she wouldn't start on the wrong foot with people in the industry. She tells him she'll take that offer, and in return, he won't try to stop her in whatever she does from now on. Her uncle tries to stop her, asking what she's planning to do, but she turns her full attention to Jaryong and asks if he still wants to see how she dodges. His breathing is steady and controlled, neither rushed nor heavy, with each inhale and exhale carefully measured to conserve energy while staying calm. In a flash, she's right in front of him, delivering a high kick aimed at his face and challenges him to try and dodge it. Jaryong thinks about moving right, but instead turns left. There's a natural flow to a person's movement, where every action connects smoothly to what came before and what's coming next, so people tend to subconsciously predict the next move. Han Gayun's secret is how she tweaks this flow. She skips certain movements in the sequence, tricking the eyes of anyone watching. This makes it nearly impossible to guess her next move, and makes her appear much faster than she really is. Even the way she shifts her weight from one foot to the other has been drilled to perfection, the result of years of quiet, relentless practice. And that's the technique Gayun's father created and perfected 20 years ago, which brought him great fame. But then Jaryong moves, using a technique called strobe motion. As Gayun stands her ground, there's a spark in her eyes, not just determination, but a playful challenge daring him to push past his limits. Mr. Han thinks about how Jaryong used the same technique twice in a row, and even applied it differently from how Gayun showed it. To be able to copy it just from that is almost impossible, especially in such a short time, because it takes flexibility, lightning-fast reflexes, and above all, perfect timing. Missing even one of those elements would make it all fall apart. It's a rare moment, both fierce and oddly respectful, like two storms recognizing the power in each other. Mr. Han remembers when he was in his early 20s and first learned strobe motion. He was in his prime in every way, and it still took him 3 months just to get a feel for it. Meanwhile, Jaryong just managed to pull it off while fighting Gayun, and he's not even at his best right now. Jaryong is in terrible physical shape at this point. The fight has completely drained him, but despite everything, he keeps pushing forward, lunging at Gayun using her own technique with one clear goal: to become stronger. This might not be the usual way to learn, but he's found motivation, a purpose to aim for, and a path to follow. His whole body aches, yet his determination burns even brighter, as if the pain itself reminds him that he's alive, growing, and evolving. There's a strange joy in that sense of self-completion, so he forgets about the pain and exhaustion, and keeps moving toward Gayun with careful, clever moves. Each moment between attacks feels stretched out in his mind, slowing time down into a surreal bubble of focus. Then, they all hear a loud thump. Mr. Han rises from his spot as Gayun reminds him of his promise not to step in. She adds that luckily, it looks like it's already settled, glancing at Jaryong lying on the ground. At the same time, both of them call each other the winner, leaving everyone stunned. She tells him that she broke her own rule about not using her hands, so he's the winner. He reminds her that those were her own conditions, so technically, he's the one who lost. Then he adds that he gets why she feels embarrassed for not keeping her promise, but it's better if she doesn't insist she's that strong, catching Gayun off guard. Mr. Han steps in, saying it's not really about winning or losing and that he probably should have stopped the fight from the start. He suggests they call it a tie or an exploratory match and have a real one once Jaryong is back in proper condition. Jaryong accepts, and Gayun calls out to him to listen carefully, saying she'd better see him at the school. If he doesn't get accepted, or if someone else beats him before she does, there's no way he'll be able to get away from her. The match leaves Jaryong feeling satisfied. He's met someone his own age with talent beyond anything he imagined. In that clash, more than just fists and feet collided. It was conviction, experience, and raw ambition all mixing in a brief but explosive dance. Then Gayun asks Saram her name and if she's Jaryong's sponsor. She apologizes for assuming Saram wasn't a good adventurer, but admits she doesn't seem completely incompetent. Jaryong had finally met his match. And it wasn't only Jaryong who felt this new thrill for the first time. Gayun walked out of the room with a fresh, bright smile on her face. Jaryong sinks onto the sofa, panting hard, and says he thinks he's dying from exhaustion. Saram looks surprised he's not already on his way to the hospital, and tells him no one forced him to do something so ridiculous. Jaryong begs her not to bring it up now since he's already wiped out and feels like he's about to puke. Saram admits she didn't expect the battle to turn out the way it did, especially that he accepted defeat so easily. Honestly, she thinks he's the real winner, because she was the one who made the rule about not using hands. Jaryong disagrees, saying he broke the rule first. After he took off his arm sling, their snatching moves became more than just that for both of them. He's the one who crossed the line. Saram thinks back and realizes she did feel something was off by then. Jaryong adds that he went full force with his last attack, and if she'd been hit, it would have been more than painful, though he knew she'd dodge. He says he would have used his hands too if he were her. She had to, and he thinks that was only fair. Saram asks what it would be like if they fought when they were both at their best. Jaryong laughs and reminds her that she asked him earlier why he did what he did. He stands up from his seat as Saram asks what's wrong. He says, "They're here." Just then, the office door swings open, and Mr. Han walks in with a delivery boy, apologizing for the delay. He's brought the food, and Seram and Jaryong start enjoying the meal. Mr. Han says with everything his niece put him through, he wanted to treat her to a proper meal. Jaryong tells Mr. Han he's not picky and prefers quantity over quality anyway. Seram points out that he just finished a large pizza in 2 minutes. She explains that an average adventurer, especially close-range fighters, needs at least 5 times the calories of a regular person. She remembers how Jaryong hadn't eaten anything before coming here because he was unconscious. Mr. Han moves closer to Seram and explains that what they handle here at Atelier isn't just leather, it's something far better. It's not cellulose fiber like what most other companies use. Instead, their materials come from fibers harvested from specific high-danger class monsters, like the bandit spider. He tells her that they process these fibers with their own patented technology, blending different proportions of ingredients depending on the wearer. Once the final coating is applied, the textiles they produce are much stronger and lighter than any leather. Then he turns to Jaryong, saying that for him, they already know exactly what kind of armor to make and the right proportions to use, based on data from the Jinsung Group research facility and what he saw today. But there's one problem. As he mentioned earlier, the final step in making the armor is the coating process, where they oil the clothes to boost durability and other resistances. Sairam says that's why she specifically requested grade A material for the coating, no matter the cost. Mr. Han replies that getting grade A oil right now is impossible. They normally use oil from the raven whales living in the deep sea. Their supply is limited but stable through an exclusive partnership, until recently, when a sudden anomaly stopped them from catching any raven whales at all. Then he suggests an alternative, saying he can guarantee the difference in performance won't be noticeable, but admits it's clearly a breach of contract and a mistake on his part for overlooking it. He understands if that means he won't get the commission and apologizes for that. Seram tries to tell him it's too late, but he offers again that if she wants, he can pull a few strings and introduce her to a craftsman who's much more skilled than he is, and he'll take full responsibility. Seram says that if this is what Jaryong wants, then she's fine with it too. Mr. Han stands up and says that since he's put all his trust in Jaryong, he'll just have to make the best armor he possibly can. Looking back, he admits he really should have gone to that big hunt last week, saying he was looking forward to it and might have found the material of his dreams. Then he asks if she's ever heard of a monster called sky hornets. Seram answers that she's heard about their royal jelly. Mr. Han explains that's what they're known for, but among armor designers, there's another substance they consider even more precious: black wax. It's a unique wax they produce that helps the queen grow and protects her once she's fully grown. If he can use that for the coating stage, the result would be unlike anything else. Jaryong searches for something on his phone, then asks if this is what it looks like, showing the screen to Mr. Han. He says he had pictures of it before, but his phone got crushed, so he just drew it instead. Mr. Han asks if he's seen it in real life. Jaryong points towards Seram and says he saw it at her house, leaving out the more problematic details, which shocks Seram. Meanwhile, Jaewon takes a call as Jaryong fills him in on all the important information. Jaewon asks if Jaryong has eaten enough. Jaryong says he ate but still feels hungry. Jaewon tells him to eat before they meet and mentions he has to meet someone at the hospital. As he looks at a patient lying in a coma, Zeke enters the room. The two men, who used to work together, meet again. Jaewon greets Zeke curtly and warns him not to make a lot of noise in front of the patient. Zeke ignores the warning and says he doesn't care. That angers Jaewon, who snaps back that he doesn't care what Zeke cares about, but it's better for him to follow instructions, and then calls him a snake. At Atelier H, Jin Sairam is shocked to hear about the black wax, and Yu Jaryong asks if she didn't find it in that box when they first met. She immediately starts lecturing him, saying he should have told her about hiding something like that somewhere instead of just springing it on her out of nowhere. Sairam adds that he probably didn't know what it was good for and thanks her anyway for going along with it. After mentioning how their plans never go perfectly, she asks if he's busy today. He says he needs to be somewhere. Just then she gets a call from Uncle Zeke and leaves. While Jaryong is texting someone, Han Sungwoo walks in and asks if Sairam has already left. Jaryong says she's on a call and will be back soon, but Sungwoo says he's only here to smoke. Sungwoo then tells Jaryong the name of the movement, which Jaryong just learned is called strobe motion. He explains that it was invented by Gayun's now retired father, with Sungwoo's help in improving it. Feeling bad for not knowing the origin, Jaryong quickly bows and apologizes for being unaware, promising never to use the technique without Sungwoo's help. But Sungwoo clarifies that he didn't mean it that way. He says the technique isn't owned by just the inventor, and though they rarely teach their moves, anyone who discovers it on their own is welcome to use it. After talking about how extraordinary the skill is, Sungwoo admits that he used to think Jaryong lacked fundamentals because he never had formal training. But after what he saw yesterday, he can't believe Jaryong never had serious training. He advises Jaryong to put in time and effort to improve his skills, which will make it easier to get into Yongsa High School or become one of the best adventurers ever. However, Sungwoo warns that this world is harsh for people like Jaryong. While many will recognize his skills, others will envy what he has and try to take him down. When Jaryong asks if he's being told to lay low, Sungwoo says it's actually the opposite. He tells Jaryong to show his skills and his true self to the world, so they learn to respect him. He advises him to keep stealing as many skills as he can without apologizing and make others think it was their mistake to underestimate him, because in the end, only the strongest get to decide what's right and wrong. Sungwoo tells Jaryong that he can truly own a stolen technique by upgrading it and making it his own. He laughs, saying he probably shouldn't be giving this advice as an adult, but that's just how things work for adventurers. He talks about his niece, Han Gayun, whom he can guide and teach but can never fully control because she's too fierce. Just then, Saerim rushes back, telling Jaryong that her uncle is calling him. She hands him the phone and explains that her uncle knew Jaryong was with her, and now he wants to speak to him directly. Uncle Zeke says he hadn't planned to talk to Jaryong so soon, but really wants him to come over right now. Jaryong is surprised that Saerim's uncle wants to meet him, but agrees to go. When Jaryong and Saerim arrive, they find themselves at an abandoned, wrecked building with a secret passage leading to the dungeons. Saerim asks about it in disbelief, and Jaryong explains that this isn't the only one. There are several unofficial tunnels and closed-down subway stations, each controlled by different people, and this particular tunnel is owned by his boss. As they keep walking, they come across Zeke standing with a shirtless, muscular man beside him. Zeke tells Jaryong that he never wanted to call him over, but his boss didn't want to get Zeke's help. Jaryong notices some tension between Zeke and his boss, Jaewon, and wonders if they've fought before. The man next to Zeke jokes that he should have asked Jaryong to bring a shirt and looks him up and down, asking if he's the one who beat Zeke. He then says that Jaryong is famous among the raiders as the teenager scarier than a high-rank monster, and mentions that the captain is interested in meeting him. Zeke says their business is done, and he doesn't want to stay longer than necessary, then leaves with Saerim, leaving Jaryong alone to meet Jaewon. After they're gone, Jaryong steps inside and sees Jaewon sitting at the edge of the ground. He lets out a sigh of relief, seeing that Jaewon is okay, and says he thought he might be in serious trouble. Without turning around, Jaewon complains about how much his body and pride are crushed, calls Zeke a coward, and says he regrets not realizing sooner that Zeke wasn't really alone when he followed him here so easily. Then he asks Jaryong to grab a light from the fire below to light a cigarette. Jaryong is shocked to see the town burning and asks what happened while they were fighting. Jaewon tells him he tried to burn Zeke alive, but the guy with Zeke had amazing balance and defense skills, even though he's not a tanker. Still, he says that guy could never be as good as Jaryong's father, even if he trained for 10 years. Jaryong tries to bring up something he wants to talk about, but Jaewon cuts him off, saying he knows Jaryong wants to stop smuggling and that he's allowed to do so. However, if Jaryong wants to become an adventurer after quitting, there's a condition. When Jaryong asks what it is, Jaewon tells him that he wants him to master everything he will be taught in the next month, but if he fails, he can't become an adventurer. He also warns that this will be very different from Jaryong's natural talents and reveals that he will be teaching him magic. Lim Jaewon stands up and the cigarette slips from his hand. Jaryong says he can't quite wrap his head around the situation, but suddenly Jaewon staggers, and Jaryong quickly catches him before he falls. Jaewon starts panting and shivering, and when Jaryong tells him he should have stayed seated, he notices how cold Jaewon's body feels, so he decides to carry him. Flashing back to when Lim Jaewon was 26, he had a conversation with his father, Yu Sung, at their house. Yu Sung talks about how he would have loved to grind coffee beans and brew coffee as a hobby during his active duty years, but Jaewon dislikes the way his father says it, making it sound like he's already retired. Yu Sung insists that he actually has retired and just needs to focus on getting better, but Jaewon interrupts, saying they need to catch Duganawig. He adds that all they need is to launch a raid. Yu Sung points out they still can't catch Duganawig since he knows about his health and will be lying low. Jaewon jumps up in anger, asking if his father is telling him to let Duganawig get away with what he's done, especially since it's not just about Duganawig, but also the rumors he spread about Yu Sung that should have gotten him killed long ago. Jaewon says once Yu Sung recovers, they will launch a raid to catch Duganawig. A kid, Jaryong, walks into the room after waking up, which shocks Jaewon. Following Yu Sung's instruction, Jaryong greets Jaewon. When Jaewon finds out that the kid is Yu Sung's son, he is completely flabbergasted. After Jaryong leaves to play outside, Yu Sung tells Jaewon that he doesn't have much time left. He explains about the painkillers Zeke gave him, saying that he's building up a tolerance to them. Along with that, his overall health and senses will keep getting worse, and within 3 or 4 years, he won't even be able to recognize people anymore. Jaewon insists that he won't let that happen, but Yu Sung interrupts and asks for a favor. He wants Jaewon to look after Jaryong if anything happens to him, and pleads that Jaryong shouldn't live a life like his, but instead, he wants Jaewon to help Jaryong find true happiness. This is the first time Yu Sung shows vulnerability and openly asks for help, so Jaewon ends up accepting the request. Jaewon wakes up in Jaryong's bed and asks what time it is. Realizing he's been out for 3 hours, he asks if Jaryong let Zeke treat him. Jaryong refuses and explains that instead of going to the hospital, he injected Jaewon with a first aid potion syringe, the same one Jaewon gave him on his first day when he was 14. Jaryong says the syringe detoxes the body and restores health for an hour or two. Jaewon tells him he can buy more later if he wants, since it's a luxury item meant for adventurers, and Jaryong starts to leave. Jaewon calls after him, teasing that if he's into it, he won't be able to stop. Then he adds that he's relieved he won't have to pay Yu Sung's medical bills anymore, but still feels bad that Jaryong's working as a smuggler when he was supposed to look after him. Jaryong says it doesn't matter since his father never paid Jaewon to watch over him, and besides, he needs to develop his own skills to take care of his father himself. Jaewon laughs, surprised Jaryong still had the potion, and jokes about it. He also says he would have kept paying Yu Sung's bills even if Jaryong hadn't taken the job. Jaryong replies that he knew that, which is why he took the job without hesitation. Jaewon regrets that he's already failed his friend by making his son a smuggler, but Jaryong insists it was his own choice, and that he would have found another way if Jaewon hadn't helped. When Jaryong wonders why Jaehwan was so eager to help him with his job, Jaehwan explains that his goal wasn't just to stop him from becoming an adventurer, as his father asked, but also because he didn't want Jaryong's talent to go to waste living a normal life. Then, surprisingly, Jaehwan admits he hates the world. He tells Jaryong about the people who dragged Yusung down, convinced others to abandon him, and the ones like Zeke who did nothing even though they knew the truth. Jaehwan says he hates all of them and wishes for their deaths. Jaryong tries to say something about Zeke, but Jaehwan interrupts, saying Zeke will never catch Duganawig because his plans are weak. He explains that it's not just about the adventurers who'd be sacrificed to catch a hidden dragon, since the dragon would have planned to avoid being caught. If dragons being more powerful than humans disappear, the world would fall apart. Only a few of Zeke's raiders are ready to face that, because most people won't risk losing everything to believe in something they don't agree with. Jaehwan adds that the higher-ups will keep holding Zeke back as long as he's tied to the law, and they will face the same chaos Yusung stopped 20 years ago. Fake heroes and their followers will bring the whole world down with them, and that's why Jaehwan didn't want Jaryong to become an adventurer. Jaehwan hands Jaryong a savings account slip with all the earnings from his job saved under Jaryong's name since day one. When Jaryong asks about it, Jaehwan explains that his plan has always been for Jaryong to start a business by learning the techniques and knowledge Jaehwan will teach him. He tells Jaryong that he needs to build practical skills to survive in the real world, and asks him to call once his cast is off so they can begin magic training. Just as Jaehwan is about to leave, Jaryong asks why he's helping if he doesn't want him to become an adventurer. Jaehwan replies that he could have stopped him, but his wishes don't matter compared to Jaryong's, just like they didn't 3 years ago. Haran walks into the ruins somewhere in former Yongsun and spots Odd Rock. She says that every time she looks at him, she thinks they really should have their own hideout. Odd Rock finds it funny since she rarely shows up to meetings. Seeing him alone, she teasingly asks why, acting like they're supposed to be inseparable. Odd Rock shrugs it off, saying he's got another job and goes back to reading his book. Haran interrupts, saying she was actually just complimenting him because she figured Odd Rock would be crying alone without her. That sets him off. He warns her he'll kill her if she keeps talking like that. Haran just mocks him for getting angry and calls him cute to push his buttons even more. Fed up, Odd Rock stands up ready to fight, saying they won't get punished since they're members, and it'll be her own fault. Haran gets ready too, scoffing at him for calling it suicide. Just as they're about to clash, their masked boss steps in, reminding them they were called here for a job, and that between their fighting and the messes they've already made, he's more than angry. Odd Rock raises his hand in mock surrender, almost ready to fight Haran, and calls her crazy. Haran ignores him and asks the boss why he ignored her texts. The boss replies that after what she did 3 days ago, killing the entire rescue team, he didn't feel like being in touch. Haran gets angry, but he explains she didn't need to go that far since their mission was already done. Odd Rock questions the idea of success, pointing out that only 12 people died, and someone else got all the attention. He says the news has been showing those kids' faces non-stop, with no mention of the dead civilians or the vehicle they hijacked. The boss says the Adventurers Association got saved from trouble because of those 2 kids, since the security guarding the vehicles with 5-star monsters was underqualified, which caused the civilian deaths. He's confident the association will win over the harmed civilians and the media, keeping the public distracted with the news instead of focusing on the association's serious mistake. Haran gets furious and wants to go kill those 2 kids, but the boss stops her, warning that if their identities get exposed, it would be seen as terrorism, and then everyone would come after them instead of the association. Still, if these little mistakes keep happening, the association will eventually lose. Odd Rock asks if they should just keep causing accidents, and the boss agrees. Their 4th member, Yoongyol, arrives, dragging a man tied up in chains. Bloodstains cover him, and he laughs, saying they should have told him everyone was here. The boss replies he didn't want to interrupt Yoongyol's hobby, but Yoongyol refuses to call it a hobby, saying he just enjoys his work. Odd Rock eyes the tied man, whose face is also covered, and remarks that he looks tough. The boss explains that the captive is a hard-working, low-ranked guy who tried to smuggle assets without his team knowing. To catch him, the boss disguised himself as a smuggler. The man, Oh Gangyok, is a main tanker known to be fierce, but he betrayed his teammates by smuggling into the Shadow. The Shadow is a secret hideout for adventurers, usually set up as base camps near dungeons they visit often, providing shelter safe from monster attacks and equipped with medical and other supplies. But some raiders misuse this safe place to carry out various crimes. Yoongyol orders Gangyok to spill the secret, and Gangyok says there's a party tonight at the Shadow with his teammates and some civilians, invited by their commander. Odd Rock wonders if it's about top raiders hanging out with smugglers, but Yoongyol laughs, saying that's boring, and tells Gangyok to keep going. Gangyok explains that their commander has ties with wealthy businessmen and celebrities, and they party together, using potions or plants that have pain-relieving or relaxing effects. The boss suggests these substances might be addictive, something they use in the secret hideout since adventurers protect them. Gangyok says this is how things are done, and that other groups do the same. Yoongyol pats Gangyok's head, reassuring him he won't hurt him again. Gangyok nervously asks if that's true, but Yoongyol says it's time to let him go. Without hesitation, their boss kills Gangyok. The boss announces that no one will leave that place alive and that those drug-abusing adventurers and civilians will be killed under the guise of a monster attack. Odd Rock and Haran get excited about the plan to hunt down the raiders, while Yoongyul mentions their main boss is missing. The boss declares they are going to massacre the top raiders of the generation, including 2 gold-class adventurers and 6 rankers in the team. The 4 of them then leave their hideout and head toward their target, ready to wipe out the raiders and bring about the time of the cicatrix. A month later, Jaryong is on the phone with Saeram, telling her he will arrive soon and that his grip strength hasn't fully recovered, so he's been advised to do neurological rehab for a week or 2. Saeram is relieved they still have time to get his equipment ready. When he arrives, he's shocked by the place and finally understands why Saeram asked him to come in an expensive cab. He asks if they will be staying alone for 2 days, and she says they only have the weekend before his transfer exam. She starts to say more, but then Cheol-kang gets out of the cab and Jaryong introduces him to Saeram, explaining he ran into Cheol-kang at the hospital and brought him along since he's also her department classmate. Saeram is shocked to see him, and Cheol-kang nervously keeps glancing at her. Saeram shows Jaryong around the athletic center, telling him it even has a built-in swimming pool along with other training facilities. Moving on, she points out the elevated lounge and assures him he can grab food and drinks there, joking that they have more nutrition than flavor. Then she shows him the weight room, explaining that it's AD spec, which means it's specially designed for adventurers. Later, in the elevator, she tells him the men's dorm is on the 5th floor, and each room has its own shower. She adds that he can also hit the spa on the 4th floor if he wants a proper bath. Jaryong cautiously asks if the place belongs to her uncle. She shrugs it off, saying it's not that impressive since some high rankers even transform whole mountains into training grounds. She mentions her uncle comes here with his colleagues, but has allowed them to use it for training. Then she glances at Cheol-kang, who's checking out the weights, and weakly asks what that's about. Jaryong tells her that Cheol-kang is her classmate and she can talk to him normally. She says she didn't expect him to come along, but she knows Cheol-kang doesn't really see her as a classmate. She adds that no one in their department talks to him because he's snobby and keeps to himself, that he doesn't even hang out with the top students, so there's no way he'd hang out with her either. Jaryong casually calls out to Cheol-kang as he walks over with a smile. Cheol-kang says they're here to practice and can check out the place later, which surprises Saeram. Jaryong thinks back to when he confirmed that Saeram is Cheol-kang's sponsor and asks if they're not on good terms. Cheol-kang admits he's basically friendless and that Saeram is both intimidating and impressive. Jaryong asks if they're talking about the same Saeram. Cheol-kang says even though he's not quick to read people, he can tell a lot of people don't really like her, but he's never seen her discouraged. She's always brave and confident. He also admits he doesn't understand how she does so well in school. Then Jaryong shares his idea about doing a group study this weekend. Saeram jumps in, suggesting they focus on exam prep instead. Jaryong argues that the two aren't unrelated. Even though it's a field test, it still requires analyzing and memorizing material. He adds they need to study past cases to understand where and how the test will happen. Saeram points out that they have the whole facility to themselves, so they might as well make the most of it. Jaryong then talks about how much he's improved over the last month, even fighting the strongest people who taught him a lot, and says he wants to keep training with them. Then Jaryong shoots an arrow, saying they're loners anyway, so this way they'll have friends. He tells them that once he gets into Yangsa High, he'll share what he learns with his trusted friends. He also reminds Saeram how important it is for her to be ready, because there's no point in him getting into the school if she has to repeat a year. Saeram looks down and admits she doesn't have much they could learn from her. Just then, Jaryong interrupts, saying she knows magic but is terrible at hitting targets. Cheol-kang quietly turns to her and says it would be a great chance for him to learn as well. 15 minutes later, Jaryong meets Saeram in the performance room and tells her Cheol-kang is on the phone with his parents. He adds that the place has everything they could need, including 20 sets of clothes in every size, and asks if he can borrow one. Saeram assures him he can. She then softly admits she understands that Jaryong was being thoughtful by suggesting the study group for her sake, and thanks him for letting her hang out with people from school, especially Cheol-kang. Jaryong assures Saeram that Cheol-kang isn't as scary as people think. He's about to say more when someone walks into the room. It's Anisha, smirking as she says she knew something was off and that she could have warned Saeram. Then she teases Saeram, saying she's clumsier than she looks. Saeram stares at her in shock and asks what she's doing here when even her uncle isn't around. Anisha just smirks and says that her uncle had allowed them to use the place for training. Jaryong thinks to himself that they must be cousins. Anisha laughs and asks if Saeram thought she got special treatment. Saeram quietly tells Jaryong that Anisha is her cousin, about the same age. Anisha waves her hand at Jaryong, saying she's relieved Saeram has friends. Then she introduces the people following her, pointing to one behind her named Sang-yong, a junior at Yongsa High. She explains that she invited everyone for a joint training session, and these are the ones who could make it. Suddenly, her expression turns a bit mean as she says she's just trying to be sincere by not letting Saeram embarrass herself in front of others. Jaryong quickly suggests they should join the group for training and shares their plan for group practice. Sang-yong asks if Jaryong goes to their school since he doesn't look familiar to them. Jaryong explains that he goes to a regular school and is in his first year. That shocks Anisha, but Jaryong adds that he's preparing to transfer to Yongsa, and Saeram offered to help him out. He admits he has a lot to learn, so he needs to put in the effort. Sang-yong steps forward and mocks him, telling him to go home before it gets dark. Anisha joins in, mocking Saeram and calling her desperate. She says a regular kid like Jaryong can't catch up to them and will only embarrass himself. Suddenly, Sang-yong punches Jaryong right in the face, shocking everyone, including himself. Jaryong whimpers in pain. Sang-yong didn't actually mean to punch him hard because assaulting civilians outside the dungeon is still a crime. Their friends call him out for hitting Jaryong, Sang-young had planned to stop just in front of Jaryong's face to humiliate him and had even calculated the distance. He wonders why Jaryong didn't move back like a normal reflex, and then realizes Jaryong actually stepped forward on his own, predicting his move perfectly. Jaryong weakly says he just wanted to train together, but Sang-young left him no choice. The multiple security cameras installed to cover every part of the performance room are for the adventurers' advantage. They record the room from every angle, so adventurers can study their movements from the footage. Seiram understands this and wonders if Jaryong did it on purpose because he's overreacting right now. Jaryong still whimpers in pain, saying what he did counts as self-defense. She figures it could get them out of trouble since the whole incident was already recorded, and it was clearly an unprovoked attack. It might even work as legal proof if things get worse, she thinks. Jaryong removes his hand from his face, saying he's timid and shy and gets depressed when something goes wrong, which messes up his sleep. Sang-young apologizes for punching him but says it wasn't even hard, so he shouldn't be a crybaby. Jaryong stands up and asks if Sang-young is calling him a crybaby. Then he tells Seiram that Sang-young is causing unnecessary trouble and calling him a crybaby. Jaryong threatens to call the police or the dean of their school, which immediately stops Sang-young in his tracks. He asks if Sang-young wants something from him, and tells him to let him hit back so they can call it even. Sang-young calls him a psycho but agrees, thinking it's better to settle things that way since it'll just be a blunt punch from a regular student anyway. Then he notices the aura around Jaryong's punching stance and thinks it's going to end with him getting hurt badly. He quickly steps back, making it look like he's mocking Jaryong. Their classmates think he should have just taken the hit. Jaryong stands there with murderous eyes and asks if Sang-young didn't mean what he said earlier, telling him his feelings are really hurt. He blinks slowly and deliberately, his gaze never leaving Sang-young's face. The silence makes the air feel heavier than it should. Just then, Anisha steps in, saying this isn't the way to settle things, and that seeking revenge is an excessive and totally inappropriate response. She suggests Sang-young should apologize and make up for Jaryong's injuries. Sang-young quickly agrees, saying he'll take care of it because otherwise it's going to be a fight, muttering something under his breath about how stupid this is, but nods anyway. Jaryong gets into position and says he'll let Sang-young choose if it's going to be a spar or a fight. They both start running toward each other. As Sang-young gets ready, he throws the first punch. Jaryong ducks down, avoiding it, and hits him hard from below. His eyes clearly mock Sang-young, pushing the Yongsa High student as he tries to land his punches with sharp, precise moves. Watching for the perfect moment, Jaryong strikes Sang-young's leg, making him fall, which shocks everyone. Some classmates think Jaryong must have gone easy on him, while others look away, not wanting to meet Sang-young's eyes after such an embarrassing fall. Jaryong steps forward and asks if he's really from Yongsa because this is nothing like what he imagined. He says he only meant to spar and offers his hand to help Sang-young up, promising not to use any recordings against him. Then he moves towards Seiram, saying they should have just left them alone, and tells her to get the footage to study it. He explains that he kept his moves slow so she could learn them and adjusted the speed frame by frame so she could rewind and copy them exactly. Seiram, shocked, asks if he did all that to help her. Jaryong asks if her cousin is holding her back since she clearly hates her. He says he can't just stand back when he can do something to help. He looks at her with something unreadable in his eyes, like he wants to say more but can't find the words. He assures her that Yongsa will be his high school. Just then, he turns around to see Sang-young charging at him full speed. There's no time to react. Sang-young's feet are already off the ground, arms raised mid-sprint. Anisha has had enough and uses magic to stop Sang-young right in his tracks. She says she had high expectations of him as a senior, but he's just embarrassing himself. A small spark crackles in her palm as a warning, though her voice stays calm, sharp like the edge of a blade. Seiram looks around, thinking Anisha hasn't changed a bit, then glances at Jaryong standing completely still. Even with everyone shouting and tension running wild, Jaryong doesn't move. His arms hang loosely at his sides, his eyes distant, and somehow that makes Seiram feel a strange tightness in her chest. 3 weeks earlier, Jaryong carefully cut open the package with his uninjured hand. As he pulls out the items inside, his mind is mostly blank, not thinking much at first. Then his eyes fix on the necklace, especially the vial of Enkel's blood. He realizes he can't use it anymore. He recalls the conditions for its power. When the wearer faces a shock that threatens their life, mana is automatically generated and absorbed. He remembers how it worked and its purpose. He also thinks back to feeling it activate in his pocket at that critical moment. Maybe that's why he survived without a scratch. But the power inside him surged strongly afterward. He still wonders if that was because of the Enkel's blood too. He knows there's no hidden power inside him or anything like that, so it's hard to explain. Still, he figures the item was expensive enough that it wouldn't be lying about its abilities. Back in the present, Jaryong watches the energy surging in his hand. He knows for sure it's the same feeling he had back then, but the timing doesn't make sense since it's not coming from Enkil's blood. Just then, Anisha calls him, asking how much Seiram is paying him because she thinks it's not enough. She offers him a new client and says no matter what Seiram pays, she'll give him 3 times that amount. Seiram calls her out, saying it's ridiculous to bring up payment and transfer fees like that. Anisha fires back that she's not being ridiculous, but actually quite reasonable. She tightens her grip on Sang-young and admits he's the worst student at their school, yet Jaryong managed to overwhelm him without any weapons. She wonders why he's still unknown, and suggests maybe there's a reason he can't fully focus on exams, like real-world problems that money could solve easily. Then she looks at Seiram, mocking her by saying money is all she has because she has no talent, no social skills, and no reputation to begin with. Jaryong says that patience is Saram's real strength because there's some weirdo trying to ruin her life at school, and he has no idea what her real motives are since she doesn't have the guts to say anything to her face and only schemes behind her back. He smirks and tells Anisha that she might actually know this girl too, since she's in the same grade as Saram. That really angers Anisha, and she throws Sang-young with full force before canceling the meeting. The girl beside Anisha asks what they should do about the upperclassmen and wonders if she can even still call them upperclassmen when they're this pathetic, and Sang-young is their team leader. She admits it was just her trick to make connections with the student council, but it turned out to be a waste of time. She suggests they just forget about it. Then she comes back to her offer, telling Jaryong to think carefully because she can offer him a lot more. He steps forward to answer, but Saram stops him, shaking her head. He tells her he'll just get on her nerves by sparring a little. After everyone left, Saram admits she doesn't want Anisha to find out more about Jaryong because she's not a good person. She's obsessive and will try to sabotage him somehow. She'll spread rumors about him to everyone taking the entrance exam this year. All Jaryong can focus on is that he can't feel the power anymore. He thinks about how the feeling stopped once Anisha stopped using magic, and wonders if that means the powers aren't really from Enkel's blood, but just got triggered by the influence of mana. Saram asks if he's really okay. He assures her he's fine and says he just needs to learn magic. Sung-young whimpers in pain as he starts to get up. He opens his eyes and finds Cholgang staring at him. He jumps backward as Cholgang calls out to the rest, saying Sang-young is awake now. Sung-young recognizes Cholgang and asks what he's doing here. Jaryong arrives and says it's good to see him looking okay now. He quietly adds that he didn't want to humiliate him like that. Sung-young smiles and says he asked for it anyway. He admits he didn't know who he was dealing with and is just glad he's not hurt badly. Jaryong looked around and said he wasn't sure he would win the fight because their speed and power were pretty close, but he wasn't good at hiding his expressions, which gave away his inner habits. Sang-young got confused as Jaryong explained that he analyzed his techniques from the recordings and pointed out exactly where and how he was lacking. Saram watched them, thinking Sang-young must be seriously shocked to get such a detailed breakdown and feedback, because you don't get that kind of insight even if you pay for it. But then she thought it wasn't surprising since Jaryong is sharp and really insightful. Sang-young asked how he could be so precise when he was just charging at him without thinking, and joked that if he was here to train, he should at least get something out of it. He offered to send Jaryong the recordings for further study later, and then complained to Cholgang about how rude it was to leave a senior behind like that. Cholgang admitted he must be pretty upset. The three of them met again as Saram started by teaching the basic concept of mana. She explained that mana is the fuel for magic, and that the mana talent grade shows the quality of that fuel. She said that a whole pile of newspapers can't do what a small amount of coal can, and that's how total mana is determined. She shared that her own mana status is C, which is the average amount needed to pass as a mage, and said it would be useful to learn about self-buffing, but warned they couldn't learn it in just 3 days. Just then, Sang-young stepped forward, offering to help, saying this was his specialty since he's the best self-buff expert in his grade. Under the blue moonlight, Jaryong is deep into his training as he manages to light up a low-level skill called Flare, an ability that creates a fire burning between 400 and 500 degrees Celsius, using the surrounding oxygen and the user's magic power. He looks amazed by even this bare minimum achievement and is overjoyed with his success, but his coach standing next to him quickly brings him back to reality. Sang-young tells him it's no surprise he could activate this ability, since it's just an F-rank spell that even the lowest level magic wielder can cast. Still, that doesn't shake Jaryong's confidence. He realizes he at least has some talent for magic, if nothing else, and eagerly asks what he should do next. Maybe create a bigger fire or try casting a water spell. But his coach knows he isn't ready to move on yet and tells him to focus on maintaining the flare he just created, to really concentrate inside himself and figure out how the magic flows within him. This guy is thinking to himself how stupid it is to teach someone to feel magic when they've never tapped into it before. But after seeing the flare Jaryong created, Sang-young decides to teach him anyway, saying that even though the spell isn't much, it's a sign that magic has awakened inside his body. He tells Jaryong to focus on feeling the magic burning inside him and to keep that flare going. Sang-young figures it might take Jaryong a long time to really sense the magic flowing through him, considering how small the flare is, but Jaryong surprises everyone by quickly feeling the magic like static electricity, starting from his core and spreading through his body along a network of circuits. As he taps into the details of his magic, he counts the circuits, 127 in total. Meanwhile, Saram and Cholgang are talking about instruments. Saram asks if Cholgang has ever played any, and shyly, he admits he hasn't mastered any, but he used to play piano until he was 10. Saram thinks that's perfect because she can use that as an example to explain magic better. She then casts a D-rank ability called Thunder Spear, which shocks multiple enemies at once. It's not lethal, but it can travel at speeds up to 200 kilometers per hour. Although it's not lethal, its large range makes it perfect for limiting the movement of multiple enemies. Saram tells Cholgang that some spells aren't as hard as they seem and can be cast without any movement or chanting, just like playing the piano. When you play a piece, you have to press specific keys in a certain order and at the right time to get the perfect sound. Magic works the same way. You have to think of the circuits in your body like piano keys. Each circuit needs to be tapped in the right order and timing to successfully cast a spell. Doing it this way makes sure the magic doesn't backfire on you. Small spells might not cause much damage if messed up, but harder spells can seriously harm the caster if done wrong. For example, the spell Seiram just cast isn't much. It's only a D rank skill, but if cast incorrectly, it could leave the caster paralyzed for half the day. Since it's a lower level spell, it doesn't cause too much trouble, but if someone messes up casting an A rank or B rank spell, that mistake could put them in a body bag. Magic doesn't come easy, huh? That's one way to teach people who are just starting to tap into it. Cheolgang admits he can feel magic, but feeling each circuit individually is still too much for him right now. Seiram, being a good coach, tells him to focus on the easiest circuits to identify for now, like the buffing circuits. As Jaryong looks their way, he thinks they're working pretty well as he dusts himself off, ready to stop training. But his coach tells him to keep going until he can fully control all his magical circuits. Showing his quick learning, Jaryong says he's already got the hang of it and that it was nothing more than child's play. This shocks Sangyong because he thinks Jaryong is messing with him, but Jaryong insists he's serious and even points out the circuits in his left arm, 8 in total, and 10 in his right arm. Sangyong can't believe it and calls him a liar, but Jaryong just tells him it's fine to say that and asks to be taught the next step. Then, confusing Sangyong, Jaryong calls him bro instead of using hey or his name, explaining that since he's not officially a student of the school, he can't call him by his name, and hey feels disrespectful, so bro works better. While all this is happening, the story explains that all human-like species have the same number of circuits, with only a few exceptions, which is why all circuits are numbered from 1 to 127. Meanwhile, Sangyong gets ready to show Jaryong something else as he raises his fist and tells him this is his fist when it's empty, then starts powering up. The circuits in his body light up, jumping from 0 to 62 as he activates his E-rank spell, Muscle Stimulation, which boosts his reflexes and stamina. He throws a punch that stops right in front of Jaryong's face, and even Jaryong admits that if it had landed, he would have lost more than just his nose. Sangyong goes on to explain that if Jaryong learns to use buffs together and figures out how their synergies work, he could reach an amazing level of power, even without natural talent. People with talent only need to cast 1 or 2 spells at most, so they don't bother diving deep into buffs. But since Sangyong isn't one of those people, he found a different way to keep up with them and gain their approval. He flashes back to the steps he took to impress others, which include bullying Jaryong in the past, and now he regrets those actions and apologizes. Just as he says sorry, he feels a hand on his shoulder, and the next thing he sees is Jaryong with an intense look, demanding that Sangyong teach him everything he knows for the next 58 hours. After 4 days of non-stop training, the team finally steps out of the building. As they breathe in the fresh air, Jaryong reminds everyone how good it is for their health right after working out. Seiram, looking tired and clearly low on sleep, jokes that Jaryong sounds like a walking relic giving the same old advice. Then, acting a little goofy, she asks the 2 guys why they aren't tired yet, even though they've been up and training for a whole week straight. Cheolgang and Jaryong both turn toward her, looking fresh and full of energy, like they just woke up and could keep going for days. They say it's because they're still young and have plenty of energy left. As they start getting ready to leave, Cheolgang mentions that he hasn't had that delicious rice soup in a while. After some small talk and wishing each other good luck with the training ahead, Jaryong tells Seiram to keep training hard, or he'll tease her if she fails. Then he asks Cheolgang to get along well with Seiram and treat her right from now on, before waving goodbye to both of them. Seiram thanks Sangyong for teaching her so much, and he smiles gently, saying he learned a lot from her too. Jaryong and Sangyong then take a taxi and leave, leaving Cheolgang and Seiram behind in an awkward silence. Jaryong and his coach manage to dodge all the traffic and arrive at their destination faster than expected. As they settle in, Jaryong tells Sangyong that this week has been one of the best he's had since he was 5 years old. He says he's learned a lot, not just about buffs, but also a special skill. Sangyong, sounding a little nervous, replies that it's not really a special move, but more of an idea he hasn't even tested yet, so it might not even work. Jaryong seems a bit doubtful but still hopeful that if he masters this skill, it could be really useful in an actual battle, maybe even in a revenge match. Sangyong, confused by the term, asks what a revenge match is. Jaryong says it's a long story but promises to tell him the results if he succeeds. Then Jaryong suggests grabbing a quick meal before they go their separate ways, but Sangyong declines, saying he won't hang out unless Jaryong transfers to a better school. He feels it doesn't fit for him to spend time with people from regular schools. It might seem like Sangyong is being a bit arrogant or looking down on others, but Jaryong understands the encouragement behind it and thanks him. With that, they part ways. The sun shines bright in the morning as Jaryong finally returns home, thinking about getting some sleep and skipping school. But his shock grows when he hears someone say he doesn't have to go to school, and there's no time for sleeping either. He looks straight ahead and sees the manager standing right in his house. Jaryong insists he has to go to school today, but the manager tells him there's no need, because he already called the school and got him a month off. Confused, Jaryong asks why he's skipping school. The manager reminds him that he's preparing for the transfer exam to Warrior High School. He adds that there are no points for attendance anyway, so Jaryong should just pack his bag and get ready. The manager also mentions he can sense that Jaryong has unlocked magic, even if it's just basic level, but his circuits are definitely active. Jaryong says he's been preparing because he knows what he's up against, but the manager tells him that while it's good to prepare, it won't be much use. Jaryong feels a bit down, like all his effort was wasted, but the manager quickly reassures him that his efforts won't go to waste. He explains that this isn't a private lesson, but a test of Jaryong's determination to live as an adventurer, one that will push him to his absolute limits. The manager says he's not sure what will happen on the test, but he's sure about one thing. Jaryong will soon realize he's not as talented as he thought. After this conversation and learning where they're headed, they both pack up their things and get ready to leave. Before they go, the manager tries to open a casket. Curious, Jaryong asks what's inside, and the manager tells him it's nothing other than his new weapon. When the casket opens, they find a long metal-like stick inside. Jaryong grabs it, holding it in one hand, along with a notebook that looks like a guidebook on how to use the weapon. Without wasting any more time, the manager tells Jaryong it's time to head out and that they'll figure out how the weapon works once they get there, checking if it changes anything important in his stats. Suddenly, Jaryong finds himself facing a strong 4-star monster called the carnivorous ENT. It looks like a crooked old tree possessed by some ghost. Talking to himself, Jaryong remembers being told to stay away from rank 3 monsters and avoid rank 4 monsters at all costs. But the manager interrupts, saying that might have been the rule when he was planning to be a smuggler, but now things are different. His new goal is to become an adventurer. The manager adds that if Jaryong ever feels too scared to move or thinks he's about to kick the bucket, he'll step in to help. He thinks to himself that he hasn't seen Jaryong's skills since last year, and this monster is really dangerous in close combat, so if Jaryong hasn't improved, he'll surely meet his maker. Just then, the battle starts. The monster launches its first attack, and even with full focus, Jaryong barely dodges it, getting scraped on the cheek. This is only the second time Jaryong is facing a rank 4 monster. While it's true that monsters of the same rank can vary in strength, the rule is the same for him. One mistake could mean the end. As the fight continues and Jaryong prepares to finish the battle quickly, he keeps in mind that the main difference between a rank 3 and a rank 4 monster is intelligence. Some monsters are as dumb as rocks, but others have human-level smarts and can play mind games with their prey. The monster suddenly creates a shield with its branches and gets ready to attack. Jaryong leaps forward, bonk stick in hand, ready to strike. The manager worries that Jaryong might not finish it, and raises his hand to help. But to everyone's surprise, the weapon shows its true power. A thunderous beam shoots out and hits the monster, leaving both Jaryong and the manager shocked. After landing a fatal blow on the monster, Jaryong looks down at his stick and notices that the blade, which had appeared during the attack, has now faded away. The manager examines the weapon with great curiosity, trying to figure out how it works, and asks Jaryong how he feels after using it. Jaryong, huffing and showing signs of exhaustion, replies that he feels a little out of breath, but it's more from excitement than fatigue. The manager pops a cigarette into his mouth and thinks about the weapon's ability before explaining it. The weapon's power is supposed to be long forgotten, an ancient technique from a time when rare materials were much harder to find. But this blade manifestation doesn't come without a cost, as the user's stamina drains rapidly whenever the ability is active, and the stamina keeps getting consumed for as long as the blade remains formed. The manager tells Jaryong that he's lucky to have that weapon. Otherwise, he would have learned his lesson the hard way by now. Jaryong admits that he was weaker than the monster and basically lost the fight. Even though he managed to defeat it, it wasn't his own strength, but the power of the weapon he was wielding that won the battle. The manager, now perched on a tree like a monkey, looks down at Jaryong and says he didn't expect him to win. He tells Jaryong not to take it the wrong way. He's talented, even on par with gold-class adventurers, but the manager can name a dozen others who were far more gifted, yet still met their end at the hands of low-ranking monsters. Just as the manager finishes speaking, Jaryong senses a strong presence behind him and quickly dodges, narrowly avoiding an attack. Turning around, he expects to see another rank 4 monster, but it's the same one he had slashed in half only moments ago. Now standing tall with glowing red eyes, the monster lashes out with a whip-like arm. Jaryong reacts fast, swinging his weapon, but instead of the blade, it shifts into a hammer. With the hammer, he smashes the monster's whip-like arm into pieces. Watching closely, the manager realizes the weapon's true secret. It changes form depending on the stance and how the user swings it. Seeing the monster instantly regenerate its arm as if it was never broken, the manager comments that no matter how powerful a weapon is, it doesn't matter if the user can't figure out a strategy to actually defeat their opponent. After a long battle that seemed like it would never end, Jaryong stands on the battlefield, surrounded by an aura, but bleeding from multiple wounds and gasping for breath. Meanwhile, the monster stands still with a wicked look on its face, healing the hole in its chest like it hasn't taken any damage at all. The monster stretches out its hand with sharp claw-like branches toward Jaryong, but he's protected by a barrier the manager created. The manager steps into the fight, lighting his cigarette with his flare ability. He asks Jaryong if he was planning to block the attack and adds that in his current state, even dodging would be tough, let alone facing the attack head-on. Jaryong sinks to one knee, panting and gripping his weapon. He explains that he's been trying to destroy the monster's weak spots, hoping to find a weakness and end the fight, but he's failed. The manager suggests that running away might be the best option. This makes Jaryong angry, and he shouts at the manager not to joke around. He's serious and needs real advice. The manager then suggests running away and luring the monster to a place where it can't regenerate. That sounds like a winning plan to him. He goes on to explain the strategies to beat the carnivorous ENT, starting with the run and lure tactic. The carnivorous ENT needs to be lured to a place where it can't absorb nutrients from its surroundings. Since it's a tree, the soil provides the best nutrients for it to keep regenerating, which makes it nearly impossible to defeat. The manager adds that if Jaryong had managed to lure the monster to rocky terrain or inside a fallen mine, he could have defeated it 5 times over by now. He explains that only thinking about fighting the monster head-on is one-dimensional, and that to win battles, Jaryong needs to broaden his perspective. While the manager is giving this lecture, Jaryong interrupts, saying the monster has broken through his protective magic. The manager looks back at the monster, thinking Jaryong clearly lacks talent for protection magic, then raises his finger and turns the monster to ash with his C-rank flame magic. He then explains a second strategy, using any C-rank or higher flame magic to burn the monster completely. He goes on to say that if he were a flame magic specialist, defeating this monster would be as easy as taking candy from a baby. But since he isn't, the best plan for Jaryong is to run away and lure the monster. He keeps explaining that the monster is tough to take down with low-ranking spells, and for those who can't use magic, you'd need something like a military-grade incendiary grenade just to match a C-rank flame ability. He goes on to say that the first generation of adventurers didn't have polished skills, but it's thanks to their sacrifices and what they learned that we now know how to deal with these monsters using the strategies they came up with. A lot of adventurers lost their lives, even the really talented ones. These monsters are actually easy to defeat with a bit of planning, but the first generation didn't have that, and because of it, they died without ever reaching their full potential. Then he asks Jaryong how his first defeat against a monster feels, and Jaryong just says he feels like shit. Manager tells him that losing to a monster is worse than losing in a duel. You don't learn much from it. All you feel is loss and regret. That's the price of being an adventurer. If you're lucky, you go home with a minor injury. If you're not so lucky, you retire with serious damage, and in the worst case scenario, someone else pays the price with their life. The manager looks down like he's remembering something painful and keeps talking, saying that living because someone else died for you just makes you feel like shit. Not every price you pay teaches you something. If the only thing you lose is your dignity, that might actually be the best possible outcome. After that, they head deeper into the dungeon and find a stunning scene with rivers and trees all around. The manager points out that no matter how beautiful the place looks, even 3-star monsters are considered the lowest on the food chain here. He tells Jaryong that he'll be training him here for 2 weeks, teaching him during the day and protecting him at night. But once the 2 weeks are over, Jaryong will be on his own. If he can put everything he's learned to use, he'll pass the test. Fast forward a month, and it's now November, the day of the Warrior High practical test. Seiram steps out of a car, holding her phone and trying to reach Jaryong, but she can't get through. A few moments later, someone in ragged pants walks up and asks her if she's been waiting for him. The voice continues, apologizing for not answering the calls and explaining that he was in an area without any service for the entire month. As the figure steps into view, it turns out to be none other than Jaryong, now sporting a completely new look. He touches his hair and admits that he tried to cut it himself, while Seiram stares at him in awe. As Jaryong heads over to the car to get ready, Seiram walks up behind him, asking him to wait, but the moment she gets close, she's hit with a wave of intense bloodlust coming from him. Instinctively, she jumps back and prepares to attack. Jaryong quickly apologizes and explains that it's become a habit to react to anything approaching him from behind. After that, he goes to the car and pulls out the clothes he was supposed to pick up earlier, but had completely forgotten about. He says he spent the entire month trying out his new weapon, and now he's just as excited to wear the new clothes. Seiram isn't exactly alarmed. It's not like it's her first time sensing bloodlust, but what really bothers her is that the bloodlust she felt from Jaryong was exactly like the one she's felt from monsters. As Jaryong changes clothes inside the car, Seiram asks how they fit, and he says they fit pretty well. She tells him that if he had arrived a bit earlier, they could have fine-tuned the smaller details and made the necessary adjustments, because when it comes to high-grade equipment, that's what really makes the difference. Jaryong says he's really excited about going to Warrior High, since he's been hearing about it non-stop since last September, but never actually had the chance to visit. As the two of them continue their journey toward Warrior High, a bit of its history starts to unfold. In the north, between Yongsan-gu and Jung-gu, in a small area where a mountain and a park once stood, a dungeon known as Mountain Drawig appeared, classified as Danger Level A. It quickly became the highest elevation region on the entire Korean peninsula. What made it even more notable was that, despite being close to Seoul's largest dungeon, the Igar Jungle, Mountain Drawig was confirmed to be a completely separate dungeon. Taking all that into account, about 30 years ago, the government and the Adventurers Association joined forces to fully clear the dungeon. Participation from adventurers was voluntary, but no one backed down, and it took an entire year of preparation for the large-scale raid. The mission demanded a massive investment of both resources and funding, but in the end, Mountain Drawig was successfully cleared and officially became part of South Korea. However, a small dilemma came up right after. Mountain Drawig wasn't just a single peak. It turned out to have vast plains hidden within the region. What was the best way to make use of that land? An unknown adventurer came up with the idea of building a school there for adventurers, and just like that, what could have turned into a huge territorial control issue was solved with one person's suggestion. There had always been a need to establish a proper school where future adventurers could train and practice, but finding the right location had always been a problem, which kept delaying the plans. Since Drawig was considered ownerless territory, the ownership of the land was given to the adventurers who risked their lives to secure it. And while it's not a well-known story, if it wasn't for the one adventurer who donated his portion of the land, Warrior High might never have existed. Anyway, back in the car, Jaryong chats with Saerom and tells her that he doesn't really expect to do anything big there. He just wants to visit the place. He jokes that if they sold merchandise, they'd make a fortune. While going on about his reasons, he suddenly realizes they're actually leaving Seoul, even though Warrior High is supposed to be in Gangbuk. He asks Saerom about the detour, and she sighs softly before saying a lot has happened during the month he was gone. Then she asks Jaryong if he's heard of Jay. He replies that of course he has. It's a popular attack squad, and some of his friends are big fans. Saerom tells him that the entire squad was wiped out. Their public hideout's lock was broken, and high-level monsters got in and attacked them. It seemed like a tragedy at first, but a large amount of drugs was found at the scene along with the bodies of celebrities instead of adventurers, which is what's causing all the controversy. Saerom explains that because of this, the Adventurers Association decided to reveal all the secret plans and projects they had been working on, and as a result, the testing area was changed to the Pangyo Labyrinth. It's the second completely cleared A-rank dungeon after Mountain Drawig, and was once the home of the infamous dragon Vasuka. Meanwhile, in a different place known as the Jinseong Group Research Facility Underground Smithy, Zeke is seen talking to a Cyclops demon. Zeke casually asks how the demon managed to finish all that alcohol in just one night. The Cyclops grumbles that he hadn't tasted real alcohol in a long time, and says there wasn't even that much of it. So of course it didn't last. He complains that whether it's elves or humans, they're all bad at making things, and their alcohol is even worse. After venting, he finally gets to the point, and asks Zeke why he's down there, and if he has any news about that kid. Zeke replies that he's actually here to talk about Vasuka's labyrinth, and brings up the time the Cyclops was asked to help the Adventurers Association 20 years ago. The Cyclops, clearly still a bit drunk, says he remembers that time well. The adventurers wanted to build an advanced training zone to help sort and select promising adventurers, but the Cyclops thought the whole idea was a bad idea, waste of time, and told them to get out of his sight. When Zeke asked why, the Cyclops explained that dragons tend to get fixated on things, and once obsessed, they show extreme greed and attachment. Vasuka was known as a huge labyrinth fanatic. Even though he was one of the strongest dragons, he made his nest as complex and confusing as possible, using techniques from titans, dwarves, elves, and humans to layer complications. The Cyclops added that it's impossible for humans to truly take advantage of a monster built on obsession. When Zeke mentioned humans planned to hire a master dwarf from overseas to clear out the dangerous parts, the Cyclops, while chugging another barrel of alcohol, said Vasuka had kidnapped thousands of dwarf masters over the years. He's sure humans didn't capture Vasuka inside his nest. They must have lured him out first, and then taken him down. If Vasuka had stayed inside, humans wouldn't have stood a chance. Even after 20 years of clearing it out, that's barely scratching the surface. Once adventurers actually start exploring that nest, there's no telling what might be waiting for them. The Cyclops continues, predicting that humans have already made a foolish decision by sending adventurers into that nest, but if one of them is lucky enough, they might even be able to control the entire dungeon. Meanwhile, Jaryong and Saerom finally arrive at the testing site. A speaker announces that students here for the Warrior High practical exam can come to Area B1 to receive their test papers and contracts. Suddenly, another announcement says there's a labyrinth that changes shape with various difficulties and themes. Saerom mentions this is the first time the labyrinth is being used as a testing site, but Jaryong cuts her off, noting there are a lot more people than he expected. He also realizes that Anisha, Saerom's cousin, has been spreading rumors about him because almost everyone there is staring at him. Saerom seems confused and says she can't tell if anyone's staring. Jaryong explains that it's not just their gaze, it's the feeling of being targeted, like someone opening a window on a hot afternoon. The entire month he survived in the dangerous dungeon taught him many things, including how to avoid any situation where he's being targeted. Still, he feels compelled to go introduce himself and wish everyone good luck. His whole body is glowing with a blue aura, and his bloodlust spikes to a new level. Meanwhile, over at the Pangyo Comprehensive Training Center in Conference Room 1, a meeting is taking place between some of the top elites, including Choi Seong-ho, the current Adventurer Association president, Go Doksu, the current Warrior High principal, and Seo Yura, the chairwoman of Warrior High's board of directors. President Choi thanks everyone for their participation and support in making these changes possible, but Principal Go Doksu says he never really supported these rushed ideas, and that if Choi wants to show gratitude, he should direct it toward the person sitting across from him, Seo Yura. She responds calmly, saying she knows the principal doesn't mean any harm, but it would be better if he avoided comments that could lead to misunderstandings. She adds that the decision to change the test site came after a lengthy discussion within the board. Go Doksu replies that it seems even pointless matters can feel stretched out when it comes to time, and says that in a small country like this, he's not sure there's any real value in holding on to first place through showmanship and politics. The room grows tense as Patchface sits silently with his eyes closed, while Gingerhead leans over and whispers, asking if it's really okay for the principal to say something like that. Then, with a loud thud on the table, Cho Youngle speaks up, saying he was trying to be understanding, but it looks like Go Doksu is going too far. As he keeps shouting that the test isn't even a proper one and is just a pointless transfer test to pick a couple of idiots, Go Doksu cuts in and calls out Cho Youngle. He tells him that unless he's got dementia or has somehow forgotten the last 30 years of his own experience, he should just shut his mouth. Not a single student who showed up for the entrance exam deserves to be talked down to like that. Then Seo Yura steps in between the two and says she understands it's tough to get everyone's support, and that Go Doksu might be feeling some regret about how things turned out. But if he'd rather argue than take the chance to share what he really thinks, she's more than willing to go along with that. The way they clash shows that the principal and the director clearly have a long-standing issue with each other. As the tension grows in the room and everyone braces for what might come next, something unexpected happens. An intense wave of bloodlust suddenly comes from one of the students, snapping everyone's focus away from the argument and stopping things from getting worse. Seo Yura backs off and says she gets it. He's frustrated and wants to complain about the situation, but in the end, she admits she's the one who should be taking the heat. She goes on to say that there's no reason for warrior high models to fight among themselves. With that, the meeting wraps up, and Go Doksu walks off with Patchface, casually bringing up the situation. He tells Patchface that among all the Korean adventurers, everyone knows the association president is basically Seo Yura's lapdog. Then he asks if Patchface thinks he was being too aggressive during the meeting. Patchface starts to reply, saying that his words were definitely a bit too harsh, but before he can finish, Go Doksu jumps in and thanks him for agreeing. He keeps chatting and starts ranting about Seo Yura's schemes. He says that when it comes to fresh graduates, she keeps saying that talented people deserve proper treatment and always scouts the best students to join her personal attack squad. Even though they're just warrior high kids, she spoils them with money and all kinds of special treatment. Those students end up soaking in the luxury and the flashy life that was handed to them through connections, not through hard work. Over time, the same adventurers who once had real passion in their eyes end up becoming adults who only care about what benefits them the most. He also points out that this whole test is rigged because only a handful of people actually know the secrets to clear this dungeon, and those people just so happen to be the parents or relatives of a few students taking the test today. Go Doksu asks Patchface again if he still thinks he's being overly aggressive, then continues explaining that Seo Yura isn't just targeting the recent graduates anymore. She's trying to take over his school and clearly doesn't expect much from them. Patchface clenches his fist and says he's not going to let that happen. The test is already dangerous enough, but holding it in an unknown location just makes things even riskier. Go Doksu responds that she doesn't care either way, and while praying isn't really his thing, he'll just have to act fast if something goes wrong. He then brings up that moment when he felt that intense bloodlust earlier, saying he couldn't say anything at the time, but he knows everyone there felt it, even the students taking the test. Patchface calls it immature, unrefined, and foolish considering the time and place, but Go Doksu only half agrees. He insists that what he felt wasn't immature or unrefined, the kid was making it rough on purpose. He then turns the topic to Patchface's reputation, pointing out how strict he is with talented students. He says Patchface shouldn't let personal feelings get in the way, but he hopes that the student passes. As the principal, there's not much he can do in terms of direct instruction, but he admits he really wants to teach that kid himself. Meanwhile, the test is about to begin as all the candidates gather in the briefing area, where they're informed about the rules and conditions they'll need to follow in order to clear the test. The condition of the test is that there are treasure chests hidden in different parts of the dungeon, and students will be sent in one by one at random locations. Each student must find a chest and bring it safely to the exit. While the challenge is designed to be manageable, there's always the risk of minor injuries like broken bones, bruises, or cuts, and sometimes unexpected situations can lead to even worse outcomes. The Gingerhead explains that to pass the test, each adventurer must secure one chest, and she assures everyone that there are more than enough chests for all participants. With that, the briefing comes to an end as she tells the candidates that they'll be entering the dungeon based on their test admission numbers, then calls for Group A to head to the locker room. Jaryong moves through the crowd toward the locker room and notices a small argument happening in the distance between three people, two tough-looking guys and one fragile-looking guy with a broken leg. As they cross paths, the guy with the broken leg accidentally bumps into one of the tough guys and drops his book. The tough guy, already tense about the test, snaps at him to watch where he's going. But the injured guy calmly says it was the other way around and questions why he should be the one apologizing. He explains that with his broken leg, there's no way he could move fast enough to bump into someone on purpose, let alone catch up to them. He says he understands that bumping into people can happen in a crowded space, but asks that they not get mad at him over something like that. The tough guy, annoyed at this fragile-looking guy talking back so much, glares at him and asks why he's running his mouth and acting bold enough to take on both of them. But before things could escalate, Jaryong steps in from behind the fragile-looking guy, holding his book in one hand. He calmly tells the tough guys to step aside and stop blocking the path. One of them snaps back, demanding to know who he thinks he is and telling him to get lost, asking what he's going to do if they refuse to move. Jaryong replies that while they're still technically minors and bound by certain limits, the law still exists. Since they're all in the middle of an important exam, he wouldn't do anything drastic, but he might cause them some serious discomfort. And if he happens to run into them on a testing ground, he might just accidentally go too far. That unsettling remark sends a chill down the bully's spine, and both he and his buddy quickly walk away without another word. Jaryong hands the book back to the guy with the broken leg, shares a brief conversation with him, and then they go their separate ways. The test is about to begin as Jaryong waits in the entrance area, surrounded by dozens of capsules that serve as elevators for each participant. He steps into capsule A079 and looks down at his wrist, watching the countdown tick closer to 0. As soon as it hits 0, he feels a crushing pressure surrounding him. This is the Pangyo Labyrinth, a place once called Vasuka's Abyss. It was proposed as a suitable training location, but even those who approved it could never have imagined the true horrors hidden within its depths. Still, who could have imagined that the labyrinth would have a will of its own, turning against the very humans who tried to exploit it? Jaryong stands there confused, unsure if the test has officially started or if something else is going on. At the same time, alarms start blaring as the tracking system loses all signal from the participants inside. The announcer urgently calls for everyone to leave the facility immediately, but every entrance is already sealed shut. The labyrinth, having waited patiently, now welcomes its prey, gathered neatly for its feast. But just as some will be devoured by the labyrinth, some people are born to challenge it, natural enemies hidden among the crowd, and that, the labyrinth has no way of knowing.